Chapter 126. Vuum. Kevin's entire body was enveloped in a golden luster. Soon after, Kevin appeared in a whole new place. Where am I? Glancing around in confusion, Kevin once again found himself in the middle of a forest. However, this time, in front of him, stood a large majestic palace that towered in the middle of the forest. It reached all the way to the sky as green vines entangled themselves on the side of the walls. At the front of the palace were two giant golden doors that sealed the entrance of the palace. As Kevin looked at the palace from the distance, he was so shocked that he thought he had actually gone back in time. He felt like he had traveled back to the medieval times. The palace still felt as majestic and grand as it would have back when it was just built. This must be the place Ren told me about. Noticing the palace, Kevin remembered everything that Ren told him before entering. From what he would see upon entering the dungeon to what things he needed to avoid, and what areas were strictly forbidden. Collecting himself, nodding his head, Kevin walked all the way until he reached the entrance of the palace. According to what Ren had told him, behind the golden doors of the place was where the 5-star sword art that he was looking for was located. Halting his steps for a split moment, the images of what happened between him and Gilbert replayed in Kevin's mind. As he recalled those images, Kevin couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Never again did he want to be humiliated like that. Arriving in front of the two golden doors, taking a deep breath, and placing his hands on the door, Kevin proceeded to open the two enormous doors. As he opened the door, a dazzling glow nearly blinded him, making him unable to open his eyes. Covering his eyes to mitigate the impact of the light, with great difficulty, he forced his eyes open and saw vast sculptures sitting in the palace. Each sculpture was different from the others. There was a golden armored knight, an enormous dragon, and all other sorts of fantastical creatures. Under the feet of these giant sculptures was a path that led ahead where the statues of two angels holding onto two harps could be seen. Walking around in a daze, Kevin followed the path and reached a strange altar, where on top, all kinds of books and scrolls that were written with powerfully dense words appeared. Squinting his eyes to get a better look, as Kevin observed the books and scrolls, he could feel the powerful intent in each and every word written inside of those scrolls. Boundless. Those were the words that perfectly described how he felt as he looked towards the books and scrolls. He could practically envision an old man sitting on a large spacious desk writing those scrolls with every last part of his remaining life. In the midst of admiring the scrolls and books, sensing something, Kevin noticed that at the very center of this altar was a golden book that shined a golden luster. It pulsated a dense and majestic golden light that almost made it feel as if it was alive. Moreover, compared to the other books, this one seemed to be far more complex. Touching the book with his hand, Kevin's eyes soon became entranced by the two words engraved on it. Levisha style, Grandmaster Levisha. As if everything started to click, Kevin instantly realized what sword this was. Recalling the legends of Grandmaster Levisha, a smile inadvertently appeared on his face. Elegant, precise, and concise. This was the perfect sword art that he was looking for. Vuum. Just as Kevin was about to open the book, strange golden energy spread throughout the mysterious book as Kevin's hand became stuck on top of the book. It soon enveloped Kevin completely. Soon after, like a flood, strange images inserted themselves inside of Kevin's mind, causing his eyes to turn white. Shortly after that, Kevin's pained scream resounded across the empty space. Thud. Darkness enveloped Kevin's vision as his body dropped to the ground. Everything turned silent and the book lost its golden luster. Yawning like there was no tomorrow, I checked my watch and stared at the dungeon behind me. 6 hours. That's how long Kevin was inside of the dungeon. If I wasn't wrong, currently, Kevin was going through Grandmaster Levisha's trial. Though it was a tough trial, back in the novel, Kevin successfully managed to pass the trial without much difficulty. Moreover, only upon succeeding would he finally be able to get his hands on the sword art. I doubt he would give up halfway just because the trial was hard. Though he was weaker as compared to the time he actually got the sword art, I wasn't worried. More so than him being the protagonist, I had faith that he could succeed. After all, Kevin's strength 2 months from now shouldn't be that much different. I was sure of this as for the next few months, there were no major events circling him after all. This part of the novel was supposed to be a time skip that directly skipped all the way towards the inter-academy exchange. By the time the arc started, he was still ranked D-, halfway towards D rank. Knock. Standing up and walking around the place, recalling something, I knocked on one of the gargoyle statues next to the portal. As I did, I couldn't help but admire the amount of fine detail that was put into them. From the way they were carved and shaped, they almost seemed to be lifelike. Moreover, what made them especially unique were the two ruby red eyes that were deeply imbued in the areas where their eyes were supposed to be. It made them look more alive. Still, without caring too much, putting my hands on top of the heads of the two gargoyle statues in front of the portal, channeling my mana into them, they soon shrank and disappeared from where they were, leaving behind nothing but the portal. Clapping my hands together in satisfaction, I gratefully looked towards the portal and thanked Kevin. We'll be taking this, thank you very much, Kevin. Extending my hand forward, a miniature version of the gargoyle statue appeared in my hand. It looked exactly like the sculpture from before. However, it was much smaller compared to before. Taking a good look at it, I couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Biting the tip of my finger, I placed my finger on top of the statue and let the blood dripping from my finger drip on the statue. Shin. Thereafter, as my blood touched the statue, the gargoyle statue's ruby red eyes shone brightly as white steam rose from its body. As white steam released in the air, suddenly, a blinding light covered the whole area around me. Unbothered by the blinding light, my eyes remained fixated on the statue as a blue text appeared on top of the statue. Twin gargoyle statue, E rank. There we go. An artifact that was originally supposed to belong to Kevin back in the novel. However, although the statues were indeed taken by Kevin, he actually never used them as I practically forgot about them. Actually, more than me forgetting about them, it's more like they were useless to Kevin. After all, they didn't have any outstanding effect apart from the fact that upon setting them on the ground, they could target a specific person and stun them for a split second. Sounded pretty strong there, but there was a critical flaw that made me, as an author back then, unable to properly use them and hence discard them. The problem was that setting them up and activating them from the distance required a lot of effort. It required the enemy to stand in a specific area where the gargoyle's eyes looked towards and had to be set up in advance. This required you to either predict where the enemy was going to stand or lure them there. Both were extremely hard things to accomplish. Moreover, for someone like Kevin who liked to fight face to face, such an artifact really didn't suit him. Wasn't really sure as to why I even created them in the first place. I guess back then I just really loved overgearing him with artifacts and useless stuff. If I had to say, even for me, the statues weren't really that useful. Considering that I had to set them up beforehand, I doubt I had a good use for them. However, it could still serve as a nice souvenir for my mercenary group office. Moreover, just in case someone comes in, I could activate them and deal with the intruders. Though it was only a split second, for most people it wouldn't mean much, but for me who practiced the keiki style, that split second could turn out to be devastating. Putting the statue away, and noticing a slight fluctuation in magical energy in the air, I turned around and glanced at the portal behind me. The portal was currently fluctuating wildly, as the magical energy in the surroundings intensified by the second. Voom. Soon after, the portal shone brightly as a dark silhouette weakly walked out of the portal. Recognizing the silhouette as Kevin, I stood up. Walking towards him, I couldn't help but ask, "Did you get it?" Stopping right in front of the gate, glancing at me, after a couple of seconds, Kevin smiled. "Yup, cool." However, shortly after Kevin exited the portal, stumbling a couple of steps, face first, he fell towards the ground. Grabbing onto Kevin's weak and haggard figure, I looked at his tired figure. Shaking my head, I patted him on the back and slowly said, "You did good." Smiling slightly, before passing out, Kevin softly mumbled, "Thanks." Chapter 127. Inside of a white space was a tall man with a long gray beard. His shoulder-length white hair gently cascaded over his broad shoulders. His towering back proudly stood like an immovable mountain. His muscles, which despite his age, seemed to show no sign of aging as hidden within them was a boundless power. Standing shirtless with only a set of long worn-out brown pants, in the white void, a broadsword appeared in the man's hands. Gripping onto the broadsword with his two hands, the old man's muscles bulged. His green veins continuously wiggled as his back expanded, casting a large shadow over the area in front of him. Exhaling, turbid air escaped from the old man's mouth as his grip on the sword intensified. Slash. Thereafter, the sound of his hand slowly slashing through the air resounded across the space. His every movement left a faint trace whenever his hand moved. It almost felt as if another illusion of him was mimicking his movements at a slower pace. Slash. Slash. After the first slash came the second, then the third, then the fourth. And then after a while, came the 64th movement. Tiss. Raising his sword in the air, behind his back, the old man held onto the sword with both hands as his grip intensified. The veins on his hands and muscles became even more prominent as steam slowly rose from the man's body. Shortly after, the man's body started shrinking as his hair became whiter, and his skin became even more wrinkly. A couple of seconds after, the muscles of the old man's body shrunk completely, leaving behind an old husk of a man that was a far cry from what he was before. Tiss. Facing the changes happening to his body, the old man's face remained stoic. Retaining the grip of the broadsword in the air, the old man's weak yet steady figure fiercely stared at what was before him. His gaze, which was full of determination and insanity, stared at the void before him. Gya. Screaming at the top of his lungs, the old man slashed. Kacha. As soon as the old man slashed, everything froze. Shortly after, the white space disappeared, and the world started to crumble. Ugh. Opening his eyes wide, Kevin sat up straight as he screamed. "My God, can you not scream like that?" Covering my ears with my hand, I couldn't help glare at Kevin, who seemed to have just woken up from a long nightmare. Ha! Hearing my voice, blinking a couple of times, Kevin massaged his forehead. After making sure that everything was within his mind, Kevin glanced at me and asked, "How long was I out?" Taking a look at my watch, I responded, "About 2 hours? If we include the 6 hours you were in the dungeon, I've pretty much spent 8 hours in this place." As I spoke, the annoyance within my voice couldn't be hidden. I mean, I literally waited for almost 8 hours. If not for the gargoyle statues keeping me entertained, I would have long been bored to death. In fact, at one point I did want to wake Kevin up, but no matter what I tried to do to wake Kevin up, his body refused to budge. Be it kick, slap, or scream, nothing worked. Having exhausted all means, I eventually just gave up and sat down in defeat. Sitting up straight, Kevin asked. Where are we? Seeing that Kevin was still disoriented from what he went through, I pointed towards the purple portal and said, we are still at the entrance of the portal. Entrance. Looking around, Kevin soon noticed that he was indeed back inside of the cave that led to the portal. Glancing at the purple portal that shone brightly, a complicated look appeared on Kevin's face. As he recalled the old man in his dreams, he couldn't help ask to himself, was that the true Levisha style? After going through numerous trails, Kevin passed out and found himself inside of a strange white world where an old man stood. Shortly after he appeared in the world, Kevin witnessed the old man perform every stance of the Levisha style, including the last stance, the 64th stance, and last stance of the Levisha style. I am boundless. Recalling the 64th strike performed by Grandmaster Levisha, as he used all of his life energy in order to perform it, Kevin couldn't help but shudder as he thought to himself, can I do it? Closing his eyes, Kevin imagined himself performing the 64 stances. Closing his eyes, he tried recalling the sensation that Grandmaster Levisha felt as he performed the last stance. From his muscle movement, breathing pattern, his demeanor, Kevin tried to recall everything that he saw within his dream. Now that his mind was lucid, he tried his best to engrave every minute detail into his brain. Shortly after, Kevin envisioned himself performing the 64 stances. However, right after the 8th stance, Kevin's brows knit tightly. As he continuously practiced the Levisha style in his mind, the only thing Kevin could envision was his body exploding into millions of pieces as soon as he finished the 8th stance. The 8th stance, that was his current level. Frowning hard, Kevin shook his head. He still had a long way to go before being able to come close to performing the 64th stance. Moreover, unlike Grandmaster Levisha, who had to sacrifice his life in order to perform such art, Kevin wanted to do it without sacrificing his life force. He wanted to perfect it. Oi, answer me. Snapping Kevin out of his thoughts was my annoyed voice. Calling out for Kevin, who was deep into his own world, I shook my head and said, I don't know about you, but if I'm late for class, I might get myself in an annoying situation, so hurry up and get ready. We have one day to get back to the academy. Oh, sorry. Let's go. Nodding his head, Kevin was reminded of the fact that the lectures indeed resumed tomorrow. Thus, without complaining, Kevin stood up and patted his body. After making sure I didn't forget anything, looking at Kevin, I nudged my head and walked towards the tunnel that led to the pond. Let's hurry up, or we might miss the train. Coming. Nodding his head, Kevin followed me towards the path. However, just as he was about to leave, Kevin recalled something. Halting his steps and turning around, he bowed towards the portal and softly said, Thank you. I will make sure to carry out your legacy spectacularly. Thereafter, he left and entered the dark tunnel. Silence and tranquility once again returned in the surroundings. Kacha. However, a couple of hours after Kevin left, the purple hue around the portal started fluctuating madly. As the portal, everything started to tremble. Rumble. The cave shook and everything started to slowly crumble as large rocks fell down onto the ground. After almost half a day of walking, Kevin and I were finally in the clear as we exited the dungeon. This time, because I wanted to get out as fast as possible, using the book, I avoided all possible dangers and chose the fastest possible route to the exit. Moreover, as I knew the way back due to me remembering how we got here, I was able to save time as I didn't need to constantly look at the map. Thus, not long after we left the dungeon, we were already back in the town of Rawa. Rawa was a small town that inhabited 50,000 people and was built on the Clayton Ridge. The town was fairly beautiful as greenery could be found everywhere. Moreover, the fresh air and beautiful architectural structures of the town made this place look extremely lovely. The whitewashed houses that filled the town were especially beautiful, but that wasn't what made this town stand out. No, it was that the structures were built directly into the rocky cliffs surrounding the Clayton Ridge area. This resulted in a beautiful natural rock formation hanging over the streets, providing shade and stunning views of the mountains and scenery below. Admiring the scenery and walking along the cobblestone streets of Rawa, Kevin glanced at me and asked, What time is the train? Checking my watch, I calmly responded, In about an hour. Nodding his head and placing his hand on his chin as he fell into deep contemplation, Kevin thought for a moment before suggesting, Should we just wait at the train station then? Similarly placing my hand on my chin, I nodded my head. Let's do that then. Though we could have gone to eat at a restaurant nearby, because the train was in an hour, it was better to just directly go to the train station. Didn't want to lose the train ride, because the food took too long to arrive. Plus, I wasn't even that hungry, to begin with. As we were walking, glancing towards my surroundings, I couldn't help but notice that there were fewer and fewer people on the streets. Soon, a couple of minutes after I noticed this fact, no one was within our sights. Everything was deserted, almost as if every person from the face of this world disappeared. Frowning deeply, I couldn't help but say, Why is everything so quiet around here? Glancing around, Kevin too noticed the changes as a deep frown also appeared on his face. Now that you mention it, it is indeed quite. Not even halfway through his sentence, the world around Kevin and I distorted. Bwom. Thereafter, a large invisible dome appeared covering the area where Kevin and I were. Seeing the dome, Kevin couldn't help but shout as he quickly summoned his sword and took a stance. A dimensional space. Crap, it's an ambush. Opening my eyes wide, I couldn't help but freeze for a split second. Shortly after, looking at Kevin next to me who was ready in a battle position, I couldn't help but think to myself, Why is this happening? This scene never appeared in the novel. Chapter 128. Shit. What is going on? Recovering from my daze, I quickly drew my sword and calmly looked towards my surroundings. I needed to remain calm. I could not let my emotions get the best of me like in the past. Exhaling, I tried to analyze what was going on. Currently, Kevin and I were trapped inside of a dimensional space, with no idea about who was targeting us. Moreover, this was not something that was supposed to happen in the novel. Once again, reality and the plot were distorted. What was even more unsettling was the fact that this happened despite the fact that no one knew that Kevin and I were going to the Clayton Ridge. Someone must have tailed us. But who? The first name that came up in my mind was of course Gilbert, someone with whom Kevin just recently got into conflict, but I quickly discarded such a notion. Gilbert was currently under strict watch from certain professors. Therefore, any move he made was extremely risky. If someone found Kevin dead, the first person people would look towards would be Gilbert, and he knew that. Hence why it could not be him. If it was not him, then who? Michael Parker? GHH. The more I thought about it, the more I could not help but be confused as the frown on my face deepened. Just what in the world is going on? Bwom. Glaring towards one of the houses in the distance, Kevin pointed his sword in that direction as a red hue enveloped the body of his sword. Thereafter he shouted, "Get out. I know you are hiding there. Keek. Guess you found us out." Chuckling, a black humanoid creature with 2 horns on his head and bat-like wings showed up from behind one of the houses. Demon. Noticing the identity of the creature that came out, Kevin's whole demeanor changed. His body shook as veins appeared all over his face. The red hue around him intensified uncontrollably. "I will kill you all." Oi, calm down. Noticing Kevin's unstable mind, I quickly headed in his direction in hopes of calming him down. Kevin's state was not good. His hatred towards demons was on another level, as his mind right now was clouded with nothing but rage. If he did not get a hold of himself now, things could get quite messy. However, just as I thought Kevin was about to explode, stopping me with his hand, Kevin took a deep breath and said, "Phew, I am okay." Shortly after he said that, the red hue around his body stabilized. "Are you sure?" Nodding his head, Kevin's demeanor turned incomparably serious as he looked at the demon in the air. "Yeah. Moreover, we have a bigger problem to deal with." Fway, fway, fway. As soon as Kevin finished speaking, as if on cue, appearing from nowhere, multiple black humanoid-like creatures with bat wings and horns on their head appeared in the surroundings. A twisted malicious smile appeared on each of their faces as they looked down on the both of us like a ripe fruit ready for the taking. "Who sent you?" Standing his ground, unfazed by the demons that had just shown up, Kevin's cold and emotionless voice resounded across the area. "Who sent us?" Glancing at each other, the demons in the air merely laughed at Kevin in ridicule. "Keek, why must we tell you? You are merely our prey. What right do you have to ask who we are? Just stand there quietly and let us feast on you." Nodding his head, Kevin looked at the demons in the air. There were about 15 of them. Moreover, from what Kevin could tell from judging the fluctuations they released, most of them seemed to be E-ranked. Very well. Exhaling deeply, Kevin's grip on the sword strengthened as the red hue around his body shot up like a comet falling in the sky. Thereafter, he fully released his D- ranked pressure. Bwom. "I do not know why you are targeting me, but you will regret coming after me. Especially not after what I have just been through." Feeling Kevin's pressure, the demons did not even flinch. Chuckling, the foremost demon, the first to have shown up, and the one that seemed to be the leader of the group, slowly caressed his chin as he observed Kevin from above. "Keek, Kevin Voss, you are quite popular among us demons, but unfortunately for you, you are not our main target." Frowning, Kevin was taken aback. Thereafter, he turned his head in my direction. Me?" Opening my eyes wide, I could not help but point at myself. Smiling widely, all of the demons turned their attention towards me. "Keek, you must be renned over." Stepping forward, the leader of the demons directly called my name, and as if a thunderclap had descended, my mind instantly entered a state of turmoil. What is happening? How did he know who I was? Were they really after me? A million questions emerged in my mind as I could not help but look at the demons above me in shock. I do not ever recall provoking demons. No way. Stopping my thoughts there, my mind raced as multiple scenarios replayed in my mind. The further I thought about it, the more I realized my arrogance and complacency. I in fact did interact with demons before. Not once, but twice. Once with the Baron of Everblood back in the dungeon, and one more time with the Matriarch, when I killed Elijah, though indirectly. Thinking thus far, everything started to click. If it was indeed like I thought it was, then it was either the Matriarch or Everblood who was targeting me. Now the real question was, who of the two was targeting me? Licking his lips, the foremost demon, the one that seemed to be the leader of the pack, cruelly smiled as he turned his attention towards Kevin. "Well, although we were originally targeting the kid called Ren, now that we have seen you, Kevin Voss, you may as well stay and play with us, no? Or are you perhaps interested in making a contract with us? If you say the word, we can make one here and right now." Ignoring the leader of the demons, Kevin turned around and looked at me. Holding tightly onto his sword, he said, "Ren, I attack from the front, you cover me from behind." Taken aback for a moment, I proceeded to nod my head. "All right, Fwop. How dare you ignore me?" Noticing the fact that Kevin had ignored him, the leader of the demons flapped his wings. Thereafter, like a bullet, his body shot towards us. Attack. Fwop, fwop, fwop. One after another, more and more demons shot down towards where Kevin and I were. Watch out. Watching the demons dive towards us, moving backward, I proceeded to draw multiple circles in the air. Vroom, 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 vroom. Shortly after I drew the 5th circle in the air, revolving around me, 5 circles quickly encircled the area I was in. Ready, boom. Shooting upwards, Kevin's body flew in the air as he met the demons mid-air. Who, appearing before one of the demons, Kevin quickly attacked. Spurt, slashing his sword forward, as if he was cutting through butter. One of the demons in front of Kevin split in half. What? Opening their eyes wide, all of the demons around Kevin looked at him in shock. Ignoring their shock, Kevin looked towards me as he shouted, "Ren, on it!" Swoosh. Moving 2 rings upwards, Kevin quickly stepped on one of them and proceeded to acrobatically move in the air. With every step he took, his blade would reap through a demon. Spurt, spurt. Staring at the rings beneath Kevin's feet, one of the demons could not help but turn their attention towards me. Thereafter, extending his sharp claws towards me, the demon flapped his wings as his body shot toward me like a bullet. "I will kill you." Matching Kevin's tempo as I moved the rings beneath his feet, I soon noticed a demon quickly heading in my direction. Shaking my head, I proceeded to ignore him and kept moving the circles beneath Kevin's feet. "You will pay the price for ignoring me, human." In a matter of seconds, the demon appeared right before me. As his sharp nails neared my face, the demon could not help but smile maniacally as he shouted, "Die." Click. However, right before his nails were about to dig into my neck, a clicking sound resounded in the area I was in, and the demon froze in midair. Opening his eyes wide open, the demon looked at me in horror. He could no longer feel his body. Trembling, he pointed at me as he weakly said, "Impossible. Weren't you supposed to be F-ranked?" Thud. As soon as he finished those words, he dropped dead on the ground. A small hole appeared on the top of his forehead. Glancing at the demon beneath my feet for a brief moment, I proceeded to turn my attention back towards Kevin as I softly said, "Sorry, but you are a week late." What? What happened? Looking at the scene below them in a daze, some of the demons in the air could not help but freeze for a split second. Was he not supposed to be weak according to the reports? According to the reports they received, the student named Ren Dover was supposed to be F- rank at best. Yet, staring at the dead horror-stricken demon beneath his feet, the demons in the air could not help but lightly shudder. The demons knew that information was flawed. "Are you forgetting about me?" Spurt. Without looking back, a faint smile appeared on Kevin's lips as another demon died by his blade. Although he did not see what had happened, he did not need to see what had happened. He already knew what the end result was going to be. If even he did not know how to deal with that attack, what could some measly lower-ranked demons do? "Let me." Noticing that the situation was becoming unfavorable, the leader of the demons took a step forward, and immediately an enormous pressure started emanating from his body. Bwom. It was almost on equal terms to Kevin's. "Die." Extending his hand towards Kevin, his long sharp nails stabbed in his direction. Clank. GHH. Blocking the attack with his sword, Kevin could not help but almost lose his footing. Fortunately, I pushed another ring forward, beneath the unstable foot, and helped Kevin regain his footing. "Thanks." Briefly glancing at me, Kevin nodded his head. "What are you waiting for? I will take on Kevin, you attack him." Noticing the ring, glaring at the other demons before him, the leader of the demons pointed towards me as he shouted, "Quickly kill him. Do not just stand there, do something." Fwop, fwop. Thereafter, heeding his command, all of the demons apart from the leader dove down in my direction. Seeing the numerous demons heading in my direction, a deep frown emerged on my face. There were about 7 of them. However, as I looked at them, something did not add up. From the way the demons were behaving, something felt off. Despite their comrades dying by our hands, they seemed way too calm. It was as though they were not even scared of us to begin with. Almost as if they were not worried about losing against Kevin and I. As my thought paused there, I quickly glanced towards my surroundings in hopes of finding anything that could help me. Yet, to my disappointment, I found nothing. Just what were they planning? Who? Exhaling, I closed my eyes. Too many factors that were well outside within my scope of reason just appeared. Although I was somehow remaining calm, it was not enough. I needed to be calmer, more ruthless, more decisive, more indifferent. Slowly the color within the world disappeared as everything around me rebuilt itself in this three-dimensional space. All sorts of distracting thoughts escaped from my mind as the world around me turned black and white. The emotions on my face disappeared, and everything around me turned into chess pieces. Quietly looking up at the demons above me, I softly mumbled, "Monarch's Indifference." Chapter 129. Opening his eyes, Ren calmly stared at the demons coming at him from all directions. As he saw them coming his way, he felt nothing. No fear, no excitement, no anger. Absolutely nothing. With an indifferent expression, Ren slightly moved his neck sideways. The hand of a demon brushed past his cheek. Shua. Thereafter, aiming towards the solar plexus, Ren turned his body 45 degrees as he elbowed the demon. Bam! As soon as Ren's elbow connected with the demon, a shockwave swept the surroundings. The other demons that were similarly headed in Ren's direction halted for a split second. Ka. Falling to the ground, the demon hit by the elbow spit out blood. He held onto his chest area. He was in complete agony. Staring at the demon beneath his feet, Ren slowly said, "Let me end the pain for you." Click. Thud. Without looking at the demon, Ren placed his hand onto the grip of his sword. Shortly after, A subtle clicking sound resounded across the area as the demon's head flew in the air. All of this happened in a matter of seconds. Sha, sha. A split second after Ren decapitated the demon. Moving backward, Ren narrowly avoided the hands of 2 demons. A strand of his hair flew in the air. Dash. Tensing his calves, Ren quickly shot backward and distanced himself from the other demons. As he moved back, a green hue enveloped the bottom of his feet. His movement increased with every step. Get him. Die, you vermin. Staring at the 6 demons that were quickly approaching him, Ren's face remained calm and indifferent. Rather than focusing on their attacks, his attention was drawn towards their faces. He soon noticed one thing: how completely unfazed they were by the fact that their fellow comrades died before them. There was no shred of fear or hesitation in their eyes, almost as if they did not care about dying. Noticing this, Ren glanced in Kevin's direction. He was currently back on the ground fighting against the demon leader. Currently, both Kevin and the demon were in a stalemate. However, upon closer look, Ren could see that Kevin held a bit of an advantage. Despite the fact that neither of them budged from where they stood, Ren could tell by looking at the fine detail of their fight that Kevin was holding back, whilst the demon leader was going all out. Moreover, he was also starting to show signs of exhaustion. Thus, without hesitation, as Ren moved backward, unsheathing his sword, Ren drew 2 circles in the air. Swoosh. Thereafter, whilst still keeping an eye on the demons diving in his direction, he quickly pointed towards Kevin. One of the circles flew in his direction. Right after doing that, stomping his foot on the ground, Ren forcefully changed direction as his body shot towards where Kevin was. His speed did not decrease. No, rather, it increased. No, you do not. Noticing that he could no longer catch up with Ren, who was speeding up by the second, a white glow enveloped one of the demon's hands. Glaring at Ren, he quickly slashed in his direction. Thuum. Subsequently, as the demon slashed, a blue translucent image of a claw quickly headed in Ren's direction. Swoosh. Briefly glancing at the translucent claw headed in his direction, without hesitation, Ren pointed towards them. His other ring directly moved forward and blocked the demon's attack. Bam. Crash. As the claw clashed against the ring, for a couple of seconds neither refused to budge. However, shortly after, the glow around the ring diminished. Not even a couple of seconds after, the ring broke into millions of pieces as the translucent claw image moved forward. However, that was enough. Ren did not need the ring to completely block the demon's attack. All he wanted was to delay the attack. It was enough for him to reach Kevin. With his ever-increasing speed, Ren left after images of himself. As he moved, slowly, a white glow started emanating from his body. With each passing second, the white glow around his body intensified. Who? A couple of meters away from the demon leader and Kevin, Ren exhaled as turbid air escaped from his mouth. Thereafter, arriving before the demon leader, at a speed that both Kevin and the demon could not react, Ren pulled out his sword from the scabbard. A white glow enveloped the surroundings. Click. The first movement of the Keiki style. Quick flash. Clank. Clank. Fighting against the demon leader, Kevin skillfully and deftly dodged the sharp and pointy nails of the demon. With his sword, Kevin would counterattack shortly after the demon attacked. Like this, for the next few minutes, Kevin and the demon leader found themselves in a stalemate. One would attack and one would defend. This pattern continuously alternated between the two. However, this did not last for long. Just as the demon leader was about to once again attack Kevin, appearing from out of nowhere, a translucent yellow ring appeared right when the demon was about to attack. It appeared right at the moment the demon leader was about to lift his hand, and thus completely disrupting his momentum. Swoosh. Clank. Though the ring broke as quickly as it came, it still slowed down the attack by a split second. But that was enough for Kevin. Taking advantage of the opening that was given to him thanks to Ren's ring, Kevin strengthened the grip of his sword, and a red hue enveloped his body. Thereafter, Kevin slashed at full force. Hap. Slash. Clank. Taking a step back, to the demon leader's surprise, he now found himself on the losing end. Noticing this, glancing away, he could not help but curse as he looked towards the 6 demons in the distance. What are you doing? Kill him. Enraged by the disruption, he could not help but shout at them. Turning your head away from me mid-fight. Foolish. Appearing before the demon leader, Kevin hacked towards his body. Clank. Clank. Thus, for the next minute or so, Kevin and the demon leader fought, with Kevin holding the advantage this time. With each passing second, Kevin's sword became heavier and faster. The demon leader was starting to struggle. Beads of sweat started dripping from the side of his face, as movements started becoming sloppier by the second. Clank. On multiple occasions, the demon leader tried to distance himself from Kevin. However, as if he was an octopus, Kevin continuously stuck onto him, leaving him no space to breathe. Hap. Once again, Kevin slashed. Ka. As Kevin's sword connected with the demon's sharp nails, to the demon leader's horror, one of his nails cracked. Noticing this, Kevin once again increased the speed of his attacks. Slash. Slash. Clank. Clank. Like this, Kevin's advantage became even more apparent. As Kevin attacked, he could not help but notice one thing. Even though Kevin knew that he was currently suppressing the demon leader, he could not see this fight ending any time sooner. If things went on like this, Kevin felt that the fight would end in at least 20 more minutes. That was far too long for him. During those 20 minutes, many things could happen. Although he had faith in Ren killing all those demons, from his experience, Kevin felt that he needed to end this quickly. Thinking thus far, Kevin fell into deep thought as he could not help but think to himself, Should I end this with overdrive? If he used overdrive, he could end this fight in an instant. But there was a major flaw with that skill. Right after he activated that skill, depending on how long he used it for, Kevin would find himself unable to move for the next 5 minutes. If he could not kill the demon leader during the time his overdrive was on, Kevin would be doomed. This was a really risky decision. Should I or should I not? Staring at the demon leader, who was struggling under his barrage of attacks, Kevin grit his teeth and decided to go all in. He could not afford to fight for that long. The faster he killed his enemy, the better. Moreover, he was confident he could win this. Over. However, midway through activating overdrive, Kevin suddenly felt a gush of wind brush past his skin, as subsequently after, the world around him turned white. Click. As Kevin's vision was impaired due to the world turning white, his ears managed to pick up a subtle metallic clicking sound. Spurt. Ha. Thereafter, a second after Kevin heard the clicking sound, Kevin felt his sword stab something. The tip of his sword soon became heavier. Not long after he felt that sensation, the world around him regained its normal color, and what Kevin saw made him freeze on the spot. The demon leader's body was impaled on his sword. However, that was not the reason he was shocked. No. Staring at the lifeless corpse of the demon leader impaled on his sword, Kevin's sight was directed towards the top of his forehead where a small yet deep hole appeared. What? Turning his head to the right, he once again froze on the spot. 10 meters away from him, with his back turned on him, and his hand on the grip of his sword, Ren's figure appeared. Who? Exhaling turbid air from his mouth, Ren slowly turned his head and indifferently glanced at Kevin. Take care of the other demons. What? Snapping out of his daze, turning his head around, Kevin soon spotted 6 demons frantically rushing in his direction. Thud. Quickly removing his sword from the demon leader's body, Kevin took a stance as a loud thud resounded beneath his feet. Staring at Ren's indifferent figure, Kevin could not help but recall the time back in Hallberg. Those eyes. Those were the same eyes that he had back when he held Jin by the throat. The eyes of total indifference and disregard. Staring at Ren, Kevin could not help but think, was this the real him? However, snapping himself out of his thoughts, Kevin looked at Ren and shouted, Ren, tell me what is going on and what in the world happened. Ignoring Kevin, taking out a red book, Ren opened the book and slowly read the contents. Flip, flip. As he read the book, his eyes moved left and right as he quickly flipped through the pages. As he read, no emotion appeared on his face. However, pausing on a certain page, a slight frown appeared on Ren's face. Plaque. Closing down the book, emotionlessly looking at Kevin who was about to engage against the 6 demons, Ren opened his mouth and said, stay here and deal with the rest. I have something to do. Quickly turning his head towards Ren, Kevin could not help but look at him as he shouted, what? Something to do? What? What? Stopping mid-sentence, Kevin found the demons assaulting him from all sides. Seeing this, Ren slowly walked away. Hey, tell me. I will be back shortly. Chapter 130. Spurt. Huff. 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 Breathing heavily, with his sword stuck in one of the demons that was stacked on top of 5 other demons, Kevin glanced at his surroundings. Craters and deep marks appeared on the cobblestone streets of Rawa. Everything was destroyed. Though the demons Kevin was fighting were a lot weaker compared to the demon leader, because there were many, he had no choice but to move around a lot. Because he did not have any skill that allowed him to fight multiple opponents at once, Kevin had no other choice but to kill them one at a time. Hence why he was currently tired. Wiping the sweat that had accumulated on his forehead, Kevin looked up and searched for Ren's figure. After directly leaving him behind to fend off against the remaining demons, Ren just disappeared from his view. He had no idea why. Frowning as he looked for him in the distance, Kevin could not help but mumble out loud, just where did he go? However, just as he was about to directly look for him, snapping his head to the right, Kevin sensed something in the distance. It was in the opposite direction of where Ren left. Squinting his eyes, Kevin managed to spot something approaching his location from the distance. At a closer inspection, it was a grown woman in red. The woman's body was slender and fair, and her gaze was calm and stoic. Slowly, she made her way towards Kevin. When Kevin's gaze met her own, an indescribable feeling of numbness spread across his scalp. Thereafter, he soon noticed 2 horns protruding from the top of her head, causing Kevin's heart to sink. Demon. Although the woman did not give off a terrifying aura, a pressuring feeling had emerged across the surroundings. This caused the entire streets of Rawa to become deathly silent. This time, Kevin knew he was in trouble. Tap, tap. Slowly, stopping a fair bit of distance from Kevin, the woman looked towards her surroundings. Her indifferent face briefly glanced at the demons on the floor. However, it was only for a brief moment, as they soon paused on a particular demon in the distance. Looking at a particular demon, with a small hole on his forehead, the woman softly said with a trace of pity in her voice, so he died too. Thereafter, frowning slightly, the matriarch looked towards Kevin. Staring at him for what felt an eternity, the matriarch slowly spoke. You must be Kevin Voss. Increasing the grip of his sword, Kevin did not respond. Right now, his mind was racing as he thought of solutions to get out of this situation. The person before him was on another level compared to the demon leader he had just fought. He even felt that even if he used overdrive, he would not be able to win. Things were serious. Kevin's heart palpitated as he could not help but take a deep breath to try to calm himself down. I see. You are a mute. How unfortunate. Deeply staring at Kevin, who refused to speak, the matriarch looked around and asked, "Where is he?" Frowning, Kevin slowly said, "Who?" Raising her brow and glancing at Kevin, the matriarch lightly smiled as she said, "The boy named Ren." Hearing Ren's name being mentioned, Kevin could not help but frown. Him again. It seemed like everything that had happened today was somehow related to Ren. Just what did he do to earn the ire of the demons? After this was over, Kevin was definitely going to get answers from him. Staring at the matriarch before him, Kevin slowly asked as he tried to buy time, "What do you want from him?" Still looking around for any sign of Ren, the matriarch slowly said, "I am here to finish business." Smiling, Kevin helplessly said, "Sorry, I cannot help you there. You see, I am also looking for him." Soon after Kevin finished speaking, a tense and stifling atmosphere enveloped the area where Kevin and the matriarch were. "I see." Fwom. Nodding her head, the matriarch's figure disappeared and reappeared right before Kevin. Then die. Bang. Thereafter, opening the palm of her hand, she gently moved her palm in his direction. With barely enough time for Kevin to react, crossing his arms, Kevin felt a gentle yet overbearing force pushing his body away. Taking 10 steps back, Kevin felt his arms become numb as the air was knocked out of his lungs. Taking a couple of seconds to recover, staring at the matriarch in shock, the frown on his face deepened. Not bad. Staring at Kevin, and noticing that he was still alright after her attack, Angelica started to understand why a lot of the higher-ups were paying close attention to him. He was definitely a talent to drool over. However, right now she did not care about that. She only had one goal at the moment: kill the one that ruined her life. Once again, the matriarch's figure disappeared as she once again attacked Kevin. As she attacked, although she was considerably weakened by the series of events that had happened to her, with a bit of effort, Angelica was able to overwhelm Kevin. Bang, bang. In the span of a couple of minutes, Kevin was pushed back more than 50 meters as the matriarch kept attacking him. Kevin barely had any breathing space as her attacks were fast and relentless. Damn it. Cursing out loud, Kevin tried his best to get out of the situation. However, no matter what he tried, she would reappear right before him and attack him once again. Moreover, Kevin felt that the reason why she was able to overwhelm him was mostly due to the fact that he was tired. If he was not tired, Kevin knew that he would have been able to fight back. However, that was only wishful thinking on Kevin's end. There were no what-ifs in the world, and thus he could only fight against her in his current condition. In fact, the matriarch was also not in optimal condition. If the matriarch was not injured, Kevin would have long died by her first strike. Right now, he should have been rejoicing at the fact that he was still alive. Sliding backward, Kevin could not feel his arms anymore. It felt as if a truck had rammed into them, causing him to lose the sensation of both of his arms. Quickly glancing around and seeing no one, Kevin could not help but curse inwardly. Damn it, Ren. Where are you? He could barely hold on. If Ren did not come in 10 minutes, Kevin felt that he could very well be dying soon. Fway. Moving backward, Kevin managed to narrowly avoid the matriarch's palm. Thereafter, glancing at her, Kevin grit his teeth. Overdrive. He had no choice. He could not afford to hold back. He had to go all out in the beginning. He needed to buy enough time for Ren to come back. If there was one person who could help him, it was him. As long as he was here, feeling every fiber of his muscles suddenly fill with tremendous energy, Kevin glared at the matriarch as he retaliated. Bam. Ha! Just as the matriarch's palm was about to hit Kevin one more time, to her surprise, she suddenly felt a tremendous force hit her palm, causing her to flinch slightly. Thereafter, she took one step back. Looking upwards towards Kevin in shock, it took a couple of seconds for her to realize what had finally happened. "You." Opening her eyes wide, the matriarch glared at Kevin as her demeanor turned serious. "Die." Thereafter, a red hue enveloped her body, as she subsequently pushed her palm towards Kevin. This time, she exerted all of her force into the palm. She was planning on ending this in one move. Huff. Staring at the matriarch's palm, that was headed in his direction, a similar red hue enveloped Kevin's body. Thereafter, using his sword, Kevin hacked with every single bit of his energy. He knew he could not hold back. He could tell that the matriarch before him was planning on ending things quickly, by using her strongest move early. Thus, without holding back, Kevin put everything he had in this one strike. His muscles bulged dramatically as the veins on his body became even more prominent. Goo-wa. Screaming out loud, he slashed forward as an overbearing sword energy shot out from the tip of his sword. Bam! As the palm and sword connected, a huge shockwave swept the surroundings as the houses in the distance crumbled. The windows shattered and dust and debris flew everywhere. Shortly after, as the dust and debris disappeared, two figures could be seen standing a couple of meters from each other. Silence swept the surroundings as a tense atmosphere enveloped the area. Thud. After a short silence, one of the figures knelt down on one knee. Damn it. Glaring at the matriarch who still stood a couple of meters away from him, Kevin cursed out loud. Subsequently after, as if a jolt of electricity coursed through his body, blue veins wiggled all over his body as his muscles started spasming. Gritting his teeth and trying his best to endure the pain, Kevin could not help but curse at his own weakness. He was still too weak. Even though he had just acquired a 5-star sword manual, because he had only just learned it, he could barely exert any power from it. If only he could use it. Damn it. Staring at the matriarch who was still standing, Kevin could not help but try his best to stand up. He was not going to die today. Not to a demon. He will not die. Staring at Kevin's rising figure, the matriarch could not help but be shocked by his power and determination. Although it looked as if she had come out on top, in reality, she still suffered a few internal injuries from the clash. But they were not as serious as Kevin's, who seemed to be on his last leg. Thus, indifferently glancing at Kevin, the matriarch prepared to attack one more time. I appreciate your determination, but this is the end for you. However, just as the matriarch was about to finish speaking, the soft sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Tap, tap. Slowly walking forward, Ren's indifferent face appeared in the distance. Snapping her head towards where the sound of the footsteps reverberated, the matriarch's eyes shot wide open as she venomously spat. It is you. The image of the youth that was walking in her direction directly overlapped with the photo that was given to her. Unbothered by the matriarch, Ren stared at Kevin, who was weakly standing in the distance. Nodding his head towards him, Ren slowly said, "Good enough." Staring at Ren, who was indifferently walking forward, Kevin smiled slightly as he supported his body with his sword. "Took you long enough." Looking away from Kevin, Ren directly looked at the matriarch before him as he leisurely walked in her direction. As he did so, from the corner of his eyes, he slowly calculated each and every step he took. The pieces have been set. It was time to end this. Chapter 131. Tap. Ren's footsteps halted as he stood 10 meters away from the matriarch. He indifferently gazed at her. She coldly stared back at him. A stifling atmosphere prevailed in the surroundings. Breaking the silence, the matriarch spoke. "So you are him." She looked at the youth from the picture. Staring at Ren standing on the opposite side of her, the matriarch frowned. According to the report she got, her target was only an F-rank kid. Someone that was far beneath her notice. In fact, she did not believe that it was him that killed Elijah. How could an F-rank kill a D-rank? That was impossible. But, even if he did not kill Elijah, he at least must know something. After all, what would Everblood gain from giving her such information? The only reason why she did not attack Ren already was because of her wariness towards Kevin, who was slowly recovering. Moreover, she wanted answers. Staring at Ren, the matriarch coldly said, "Tell me, are you responsible for killing Elijah?" Staring at the matriarch before him, Ren did not respond. He just stood there looking at her with no emotions. "Answer me." Seeing Ren being unresponsive, the matriarch screamed in anger. A red hue expanded out of her body, creating a gust of wind that swept everything near her away. Even so, Ren stood rooted where he was. He was completely unfazed by the matriarch's outburst. Seeing that Ren remained unfazed despite her show of might, the matriarch venomously spat. "If you refuse to speak, then I will make you speak. Ren, watch out." Noticing that the matriarch was about to move, Kevin could not help shouting as he tried to warn Ren about the incoming danger. Having gone against her before, Kevin knew how fast and powerful she was. She was on another level compared to the people he had fought before. Although he did not believe Ren was any weaker than him, if caught off guard, the situation could get serious. Moreover, even if she was injured, he did not see any possibility of Ren being able to beat her. "Answer me." Appearing right before Ren, the matriarch extended her hand forward and reached for his neck. Ren. However, contrary to Kevin's expectations, Ren did not show any apprehension towards the matriarch and merely raised his left hand in the air. Thereafter, with his right hand on the grip of his sword, Ren snapped his fingers. Snap. Key. Just as the matriarch's hand was about to reach for his neck, her hand suddenly froze. In fact, not just her hand froze, but her whole body. The first movement of the Keiki style. Quick flash. Thereafter, the world around the matriarch turned white as the last thing she heard was a subtle clicking sensation, before she felt something pierce the scalp of her head. Click. Soon silence prevailed in the surroundings. What happened? Just as Kevin saw the matriarch's hand reaching for his neck, he opened his eyes wide. Similarly to before when he was fighting the demon leader, the world around him turned white. Thud. Thereafter, as the world regained its color, what Kevin saw next made his blood freeze. With a large gaping hole on her forehead, the matriarch's body slowly fell onto the pavement as a large thud resounded across the place. The look on her face was that of utter shock. Staring at Ren, who remained indifferent, Kevin could not help but point towards him as his voice shook. "You how?" Turning his head around and glancing at Kevin, Ren did not answer. Pointing towards the distance, he slowly said, "Kevin, go and break the dimensional space." Trying to say something, Kevin pointed towards the matriarch. Bullet and dash dot. Stopping Kevin mid-sentence, Ren's indifferent voice rang out again. "Take care of it, I will deal with her." After a couple of seconds, calming himself down, Kevin nodded his head. Since the fight against the demons started, Ren had become a completely different person. He seemed completely emotionless, almost as if anything in his eyes did not matter. A stark difference compared to the Ren he had gotten to know these past few days. Just what happened during that short period of time since the fight started? Sigh. In the end, an extended sigh escaped from Kevin's mouth. Although he had many things to ask, he knew that any type of conversation at the moment was useless. Talking to him now would be equivalent to talking to a wall. Pointless. All right. Thus, Kevin eventually nodded his head and prepared to look for the device responsible for creating the dimensional space. Although he did not know where it was located, it should not be hidden too far from them. Thus, glancing at Ren one more time, Kevin's eyes soon paused on the matriarch on the floor. Deeply staring at Ren for a couple of seconds, he eventually turned his head and went to look for the device. Watching Kevin's figure disappear in the distance, Ren subtly glanced towards the distance where a statue with 2 ruby-red eyes quietly sat on top of a building. E-rank artifact. Twin gargoyle. Staring at the statue from below, Ren knew that the reason he managed to win was because of the artifact that he had picked up not long ago. Currently, the statue's eyes were staring right where the matriarch's body was laying down. Having caught a glimpse of the future thanks to the book, Ren had set everything up beforehand. The reason why he was absent when Kevin was fighting was because he was busy setting the pieces in motion. Because he knew that he could not beat the matriarch one-on-one even if Kevin went all out or worked together with him. Using the book, Ren managed to devise a plan in which he could beat the matriarch. By having Kevin exhaust the matriarch beforehand, Ren took advantage of the time Kevin bought him to set everything up. Cross-referencing with the book, Ren managed to pinpoint the exact location at which the matriarch would move and carefully placed the artifact there. Right after he was done setting up the artifacts, right after Kevin was on the verge of losing, calculating the distance, Ren slowly approached the matriarch and stopped right before the gargoyle's statue operating area. The area where he stopped was also perfectly set up to lure the matriarch to him. Like this, when the matriarch attacked, all Ren did was snap his finger. Although it only stopped the matriarch for a split second, that was enough for Ren. Having calculated the timing, right before the matriarch froze due to the statues, Ren already activated the first movement of the keiki style. Subsequently, as the matriarch was wide open due to her body freezing, Ren's sword directly pierced her in the head. Everything that happened was within Ren's calculation. Nothing escaped his perception. Stop pretending. Wake up. Staring at the matriarch on the ground, Ren's indifferent voice rang out. Raising his sword in the air, he directly pierced her in the stomach. Spurt. Yeah. Letting out a pained scream, the matriarch's wide eyes soon regained some clarity as she glared at Ren. You. Staring at the matriarch, unfazed by the fact that she was still alive despite the hole in her forehead, Ren slowly said. You think I forgot about the fact that you higher-ranked demons only die when your core is destroyed? GHH. Hearing Ren's words, the matriarch glared at him as she tried to retaliate. However, her body refused to budge. Although she was not dead, her injuries were serious. Moreover, with her stomach currently pierced by Ren's sword, she could only helplessly lay down on the floor. Gritting her teeth, she angrily spat. GHHH. What do you want from me? Staring at the matriarch on the ground, with his sword imbued on her stomach, Ren slowly extended his hand towards her. Spurt. Thereafter, reaching out with his hand, to the matriarch's horror, his hand pierced her right where her heart was. Ka. Screaming at the top of her lungs, the matriarch's eyes turned scarlet red as she looked at Ren's indifferent figure, with absolute hatred. You. Unbothered by this, taking his hand out from the matriarch's body, a red orb-like object appeared in Ren's hand. Staring at the orb, the matriarch's face turned crazed as she screamed at the top of her lungs. Don't you dare. Glancing at the matriarch whose body was flailing manically, observing the orb in his hand, Ren slowly said. According to the books in the academy, they say that upon ingesting a demon core, a human can take control of a demon. Pausing there, Ren played with the core on his hand. Once a demon reaches a noble rank they develop a core. From there, the only way they can die is through directly breaking the core into pieces. Ka. Squeezing the orb lightly, Ren's grip relaxed right after he saw the matriarch's face became pale. Because a demon can only die when their core is destroyed, humans found a way to control demons. By directly swallowing the core of a noble-ranked demon, we found out that by simply channeling the mana inside of our bodies, humans can directly break the core with a simple thought resulting in the immediate death of the demon. Moreover, the demons cannot even think of committing suicide, as they cannot die since their core is not with them. Glancing at the matriarch whose face was incomparably dark, Ren slowly said. After years of fighting against the demons, this was what the humans came up with in order to fight against them. Am I wrong? Listening to Ren speaking, the look of terror in the matriarch's eyes became more and more apparent. Being controlled by a human was considered taboo by the demons. Their worst possible nightmare. How could the proud demons stand being controlled by an inferior race like them? Impossible. To make things worse, once they were under the control of a human, even if they managed to get their core back, they would no longer be eligible for any important positions, nor would they be able to live like before, as they would be scorned daily by their fellow tribesmen. It was the worst possible outcome for any demon. Thus, staring at Ren, the matriarch pleaded, "Don't do it. I will give you all my belongings. Treasures." Indifferently glancing at the matriarch, Ren took the orb and slowly placed it in his mouth. Thereafter he swallowed it. Gulp. No. Watching Ren swallowing her core, the matriarch's blood-curdling scream resounded across the area. Fwom. Ingesting the orb, a gust of wind expanded from Ren's body, as everything within the vicinity flew away. As this happened, the matriarch found herself looking at Ren with a look of despair plastered on her face. Stopping all signs of protests, the matriarch's eyes became hollow as she laid down on the ground and repeatedly mumbled, "It's over, my life is over." Unbothered by her expression, Ren extended his hand towards her and coldly said, "Be my peace." Chapter 132. Not so far from where Ren and the matriarch were, sitting on top of one of the rooftops of the houses in the distance, was a black humanoid figure. Kukiku, Kukiku, oh how interesting. With his legs dangling off of the roof of the building, the demon's body trembled uncontrollably as he tried his best to contain his laughter. However, this did not last for long as he eventually laughed out loud and exclaimed, "Kukiku, ha 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 ha, how fantastic." Clapping his hands, the demon looked as though he had just watched the most entertaining movie in his whole life. He just could not stop clapping his hands as he continuously shouted praises in the air. Clap, clap, clap. Kukyuku, what a fantastic twist to the story. Who would have expected such a twist? Ha ha ha, fantastic, brilliant, bravo. After a while, pausing and placing his hand on his mouth, Everblood's smile deepened. Glancing at the black coffin beside him, Everblood slowly caressed it with his long and skinny black fingers. Cuckoo, although I was supposed to be inside of the coffin recovering, my curiosity got the best of me, and I eventually followed the matriarch here. I just really wanted to see him, you know? You understand me, right? Glancing back towards Ren's figure in the distance, with his elbow on his knee, propping his head with his hand, Everblood's smile twisted. Kiwoo, when I saw you I almost could not hold back my impulse and almost appeared before you. I really wanted to appear right before you. I have so many questions to ask. How have you been since the last time I saw you? Do you remember me? Just how much have you grown since the last time I saw you? Just how much more can you entertain me before I can throw you away? The number of questions I have for you are so many that I cannot even know where to begin with. Pausing slightly, Everblood covered his face with his large black hand. Thereafter his body shook slightly. Kukyuku, what I saw was a lot more than I could have ever bargained for. Kukyuku, to think that in such a short period of time you have grown up so splendidly. It was far beyond what I had expected. Holding on to his face with his long fingers, a look of insanity appeared in Everblood's eyes as he could not stop himself from salivating. In fact, you have even made me, a Baron-ranked demon, slightly fear you. But is that not great? With this my drive to crush you increased even more. Yes, just imagining your future growth is motivating me to reach further heights. Hugging his body tightly, Everblood shivered uncontrollably. Just the thought is sending shivers down my spine. Oh Ren, thank you so much. After a while, Everblood stopped and stared at the gargoyle statue not so far from where he was. Glancing back at the matriarch that was on the ground with a large gaping hole on her forehead, Everblood smiled. Although you have used some trickery to deal with her, it was still very impressive. I am impressed, very impressed. Such level of thought to detail and planning. You did not disappoint the expectations I had set for you. Staring at Ren extending his hand towards the matriarch, Everblood stopped for a second. Soon after, as he saw Ren pierce her heart and swallow her core, Everblood's body started shaking uncontrollably. Oh my, what is this? You are planning on taking Angelica under your control. Kukyukuk, ha 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 ha. This is just amazing. To think you would do something like that. Kukyuku, ha 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 ha. Laughing maniacally for the better part of a minute, Everblood eventually stopped. Thereafter, his face became serious. Fortunately, I had taken into account such a possibility beforehand. We would not want our first meeting to be spoilt by something as insignificant as this, now would we? No one likes spoilers after all. Raising his right hand, Everblood snapped his fingers. Snap. With a snap of his fingers, the matriarch that was on the ground beneath Ren's feet opened her eyes wide for a split second. Thereafter, her eyes became white before quickly regaining their clarity. It was so subtle that no one noticed her behavior. Not even Ren, who was under Monarch's indifference. Staring at the matriarch from above, Everblood nodded his head as a smile returned to his face. With this, she should have forgotten everything about me. During the last meeting with the matriarch, Everblood had given her a demon fruit that she had shortly after ingested in order to recover from her injuries. Having thought of the possibility of Ren possibly swallowing her demon core or interrogating her once he defeated her, Everblood decided to place a little something inside of the fruit. Although he did not poison it as that could have been easily discovered by her, he did add a little bit of a surprise for her. A little curse that made her forget about the encounter she had with him. Many factors may have contributed to her not managing to find the curse, her unstable mental state, how well hidden the curse was. But out of all the reasons, the main one was the fact that the curse held no danger towards her. Because it was not a potent and dangerous curse, the matriarch was unable to sense the curse, and thus swallowed the demon fruit without any wariness or apprehension. Big mistake. Staring at the matriarch, who was tilting her head in confusion, Everblood looked at Ren and smiled even more deeply. We cannot be having you knowing of my existence just yet, Ren. Such an important moment will be saved for when our little game will come to an end. So hold on tightly until then. I will eventually come for you, and when I do, the heavens will rejoice. Fwop. Extending his large bat-like wings, Everblood took the coffin of the cursed knight with him, and silently slipped away in the distance. Glancing towards Ren one more time, he smiled and said, I will be seeing you in a while, and when I do, next time, I will let our game be even grander and more entertaining than ever before. Kukyuku, ahahaha. Saturday, CASA headquarters. Sitting on my desk with my hands interlocked together, I seriously looked at Small Snake, who had his arms crossed and was glaring at me from above. Ren, care to explain what is going on? Hearing Small Snake's flabbergasted and angry voice from the side, my mouth twitched. Explain what? Raising his brow, Small Snake retorted. Do I even need to point out what is wrong with the situation? Guess not. A week has passed since the incident in Rawa, and it was already Saturday. Thus, taking the weekend off, I decided to head back to the headquarters of my mercenary group to meet Leopold, whom Small Snake had just recruited. During the week I spent at the academy, nothing much happened apart from me regularly attending classes. The only notable change was Kevin, who seemed to be training even harder than before. Perhaps because of his loss against the matriarch, or because he got his hands on a 5-star sword manual, Kevin seemed to be putting everything he had into training. Well, normally I would have been happy with this development as Kevin getting stronger was a good thing. But for the past week, my mind has been preoccupied with something else. Puff. Not so far from where Small Snake and I were, with his legs on the desk, and puffing out a mouthful of smoke, Leopold stared at the ceiling of the room, and joined in the conversation. I saw a lot of crazy stuff during my days in the Moonlight Mercenary Group, but this tops them all. If not for the fact that I knew this place was sketchy from the very beginning, I would have long refused to come here. Briefly glancing at Leopold from the corner of my eyes, I looked back towards Small Snake and seriously said, "Small Snake, there may have been a little bit of a cock-up." Raising his brow, Small Snake pointed towards his right, where a beautiful woman coldly sat with her arms and legs crossed. "Oh, pray do tell me if that has anything to do with the demon that is in our office, who apparently has been staying here for the past week without me knowing." Coughing in embarrassment, I stood up and walked towards Angelica. Glancing at both Leopold and Small Snake, I introduced her to everyone. Kium, let me introduce you to our guest, Angelica von Doya, previous matriarch of the Charm Tribe clan and a new member of our mercenary group. As I finished introducing her to everyone, the room instantly became quiet as both Small Snake and Leopold were at a loss for words. With the cigarette still in his mouth, Leopold looked at Angelica, who was coldly looking back at them. It looked as though she wanted to skin everyone in the room alive. Puff. Removing the cigarette from his mouth and exhaling smoke in the air, Leopold could not help but say, "Well, that is one hell of a cock-up." Chapter 133. Sigh. I could not help but glance at the matriarch, no, Angelica, from the side. It has been a bit of a rough week for me. Under the influence of Monarch's indifference, it seems like I enslaved her and forcefully brought her here. Fortunately, I was not in any danger. Any time she would try to attack me, all I had to do was channel the mana inside of my body towards where the demon core I swallowed was located. She would be subjected to immeasurable pain, stopping her from whatever she wanted to do. Like this, Angelica was pretty much under my control. However, even if she was under my control, that did not mean she would do anything I asked of her. After all, although I could dictate her life and death with a simple thought, that was of no use for me. How could I use a pawn that refused to move? Such a pawn was not something that I needed nor wanted. There was no point in me keeping her if she refused to listen to my orders. I did not need such a liability to stick with me, especially not when considering how dangerous of a person she was. Leaning back on my chair as I exhaled, I started thinking of a way to fix this problem. Although I hate to say it, taking her in was in fact the right decision. Considering her strength, she was probably the strongest person among us in the mercenary group, and by quite a large margin at that. Moreover, she could still grow stronger, especially since I knew of a couple of things that could benefit her growth. Glancing at the matriarch, who was coldly sitting not so far from where I was, massaging my chin, my mind raced. Since I already swallowed her core, she was definitely somewhat under my control. The problem was, how do I get her to willingly follow my orders without betraying me? Although the demons seemed united, in reality, they were not. If not for the Demon King keeping them in check with his overwhelming power, all hell would have broken loose among their ranks. I could use this fact to my advantage. I could use the fact that her loyalty towards their own race was not very strong. Thinking thus far, I glanced towards Small Snake and Leopold, who were both looking at me. Thereafter, nodding slightly towards them, I said, "Small Snake, Leopold, can you guys give us a minute?" Staring at me for a couple of seconds, Small Snake's head alternated between me and Angelica a couple of times before he eventually nodded his head. "All right." Standing up from his seat and tossing the cigarette in his hand towards the trash can, Leopold lightly waved his hand as he followed Small Snake out of the room. "Take your time, boss." Clank. Shortly after they left, as the doors to the room closed, silence enveloped the room. Breaking the silence, I looked at the matriarch and lightly said, "So, still not speaking?" Crossing my legs, I stared at the matriarch, who was quietly sitting in her chair. Ever since I brought her here, she did not speak a single word. She neither complained nor lashed out. I guess that was her way of telling me that she would not do anything I asked of her. Smiling inwardly, I lightly covered my mouth to hide the smirk that had appeared on my face. Staring at Angelica, who was coldly looking back at me, seemingly wanting to devour me whole, I lightly spoke. "Do you want your freedom back?" Angelica did not respond. There was no way she would believe anything that came from my mouth. In her head, I was a vile worm that only won due to some trickery. To her, every word that I spoke was merely a trap devised to trick her into doing something that she did not want to do. "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Coldly staring at me from her seat, Angelica tried her best to hold herself back from lunging at me in hopes of killing me. Noticing her unresponsiveness, I once again spoke. "Let me rephrase. Do you want your core back?" Once again, Angelica refused to speak. Unbothered by this, as I lazily leaned on my chair, I continued speaking, knowing that I had gotten her attention. "You see, returning your core is not actually that hard of a task for me. It is just that it really would not be profitable on my end. You understand?" Pausing and looking at Angelica straight in her eyes, I smiled and said, "If I were to return you the core, what can you offer me?" Staring at me for a couple of seconds, after a short pause she said, "What do you want?" Hearing her speak, I could not help but lightly chuckle as I spoke. "Ah, so you can speak. Does not this situation seem a bit ironic? I remember you calling me a mute before." Cutting me off, Angelica's cold voice echoed across the room. Get to the point. Smiling slightly, I sat up straight. Staring at the matriarch in the eyes, I shook my finger. Tut, tut. Just listen to what I have to say. I will offer you a deal, and you will decide whether you agree or not. Pausing there for a second, my demeanor turned serious as I coldly looked at her, and a white hue started emanating from my body. Do not think that just because I am keeping you alive means that I will not kill you in the future. After all, what used as a chess piece that does not function have for me offering you a deal is your last chance at keeping your life. If you choose to refuse, only death awaits you. Seriously staring at Angelica for a couple of seconds, after a while, I smiled and my usual lazy and cheerful demeanor came back. Clapping my hand, I lightly said, "All right, now that the serious stuff has been said, tell me, what are you willing to offer me in exchange for your core?" Without hesitation, as soon as I finished speaking, Angelica said, "Money, information, women." Extending my hand forward, I stopped her as I shook my head. "Sorry, I was lying when I said that. I already know what I want." Seriously looking at me, Angelica's ears perked as she leaned slightly forward to hear. "What do you want?" Smiling slightly, I pointed towards her and teased, "You." Opening her eyes wide, Angelica stood up and glared at me. "You filthy bastard." "Wow, calm down, I was just joking, relax." Raising my hands up, I lightly laughed after seeing her reaction. If not for the fact that a white hue was revolving around my body, she would have already assaulted me. Fiercely glaring at me, Angelica snorted, "Humph, if you say one more joke like that, even if I die, I will make sure to bring you down with me." Raising my brow, I shook my head. Thereafter, raising my left hand, I opened my palm and calmly said, 5. Calming down, Angelica raised her brow as she tilted her head to the side in confusion. 5 what? Briefly glancing at the palm of my hand, I looked towards Angelica in the eyes and said, 5 years. I want you to work for me for 5 years. I have thought this through. For the past week, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to solve the issue revolving around Angelica. 5 years. That is how long I was planning on keeping her. For the next 5 years, she will work for me as a member of the mercenary group. Of course, that was not the true end goal. The hope was that in those 5 years that she stayed with us, she would become loyal towards us. If I showed her enough benefits, I was sure that such a task was possible. Moreover, even if in those 5 years she eventually left, she would not be able to go back to the demons. With her core having been taken from her once, getting her old position back was no longer a feasible option. If she were to come back, the highest position she would get would be that of an Elder One. And for someone who had already tasted the power that came from being a leader, I knew very well that it was not something she was willing to accept. Especially not if the leader was someone she used to boss around. Her pride would not allow it. Noticing Angelica fall into deep thought, I patiently sat back and waited for her to give me a response. After a while, looking at me, Angelica softly said, "Mana contract." Leaning forward, I could not quite grasp what she said as her voice was too soft for me to hear. Noticing that I did not understand, speaking louder, Angelica said, "I said I will only do this if we sign a mana contract." Pausing slightly, glancing at Angelica in front of me for a second, a large smile appeared on my face as I said, "But of course, it was originally something that I was planning on proposing to her. However, it seems like she beat me to it. A mana contract. A contract that ties two people with the power of mana. Upon setting the terms and signing it, the two people under the contract must fulfill the other end of their bargain. If one person fails to complete their end, death awaited them, and a very painful one at that. The mana around their body would become erratic, and their body would explode into pieces. It was probably one of the worst possible deaths someone could ever ask for. Though mana contracts were quite expensive, they were worth the cost, as this way I would not need to worry about the other person not holding the other end of their deal. This method was more efficient than just me threatening Angelica, as now she would obediently follow my orders until the contract expired. After all, now that she had a goal to work for, she would definitely comply with my orders as long as they were not unreasonable. Moreover, I did not need to worry about her betraying me for as long as the contract ran, as this could be one of the terms I could insert in the contract. Everything was perfect. Nodding my head in satisfaction, and seeing that Angelica too was satisfied with the outcome, I brushed my hair to the side and asked her something that had been on the back of my mind for a while. "Now, let's get to the main point. Since you're willing to make a contract with me, it is about time I ask you about some things that I have been meaning to ask from before." No. Blinking twice, Angelica looked at me in the eyes and slowly said, "It depends on what you are asking." Hearing her response, a faint smile appeared on my lips. So she still had some loyalty towards the demons, huh? It was understandable. They were her race after all. No matter how much she detested them, she would still have some loyalty towards them, but that is fine. I really wanted to see if her opinion would still be the same by the time those 5 years end. I really was starting to get curious. In 5 years' time, will you still be my pawn? Or will you be something that I will have to discard? Will you choose to follow me after everything I will show you? Or will you go back to the demons? Smiling to myself, I paused my thoughts there. Staring at Angelica in the eyes, I asked her the question that had been bothering me for a long time. What I wanted to ask is, why did you think it was me that killed Elijah, when everything pointed towards Amanda being the killer? Moreover, why me? Chapter 134. As soon as I posed the question, the room became tense. Staring at Angelica straight in the eyes, I asked her something that had been bothering me since last week. Why did she target me? And how did she find out that I was the one responsible for killing Elijah when every news outlet and evidence pointed towards Amanda being the one responsible for killing Elijah? Moreover, this past week I looked through the list of guests that were present in the party, and none of them were targeted by her. Something just did not add up. Staring at me for what felt like an eternity, Angelica slowly said, "Because I could feel how Elijah died, and it was not with a bow." Frowning slightly, I repeated in confusion, "Was not with a bow? How did she know? I made sure to hide all of my traces when I killed Elijah, so how was it possible for her to find out something that even the Union could not figure out?" Noticing the confusion in my face, Angelica explained, "When one of our contractees dies, apart from having our souls become damaged, we are also subjected to the pain they experience right before dying. Therefore, after Elijah died I was able to tell that what had killed him was not a bow. The hit was far too clean for something that an arrow could do." Listening to Angelica explain, the frown on my face deepened. Interesting. I did not know that. I really did not know. I do not ever recall writing about something like this in the novel. Although I have come to realize that referencing the novel too much was bad as things tended to become different, it still came as a shock to me to realize that I did not even know such important information, especially since this piece of information was quite important. Placing my hand on my chin as I fell into deep thought, I eventually looked at Angelica before asking, "All right, I understand why you did not target Amanda, but again, why me?" Opening her mouth, mid-sentence, Angelica frowned. Thereafter, a blank look appeared on her face as she looked at me in confusion. "Well, that is because Noticing the oddity in her behavior, I leaned forward. "Because?" After a while, shaking her head, Angelica said, "I do not remember." Taken aback, the frown on my face deepened. "You do not remember?" Placing her slender fingers towards the middle of her brows, after a couple of seconds, Angelica shook her head as a blank look appeared on her face. "No, no matter how much I try to remember, I cannot seem to recall why I was targeting you." Sitting up straight, interlocking my hands on the desk, and resting my chin on it, the frown on my face deepened even more. Strange. Staring at Angelica for a couple of seconds, I leaned back on my seat and pondered. Out of all the responses that I wanted to hear, this one was probably on the bottom of my list. "I cannot remember," was what she said. Was she lying? Staring at Angelica, who seemed to be trying her best to recall, I lightly tapped on my desk. Tap, tap. I was not sure, but I doubted it. After all, she knew I could force the answer out when proposing for it to be in the Mana contract. Therefore, chances were that she really could not remember. The real question was, how? Did someone perhaps have a hand in this? Or was her memory that bad? I doubt the latter was true, hence it could only mean one thing. Someone had a hand in this. As soon as my thoughts paused there, my face became solemn. Turning towards Angelica, I carefully asked, "What is the last thing you remember before forgetting your memories?" Glancing at me for a brief moment, Angelica's brows tightly knit, as she tried her best to recall anything that she could regarding what had happened prior to targeting me. As she spoke, from time to time she would pause as an occasional look of confusion appeared on her face. I remember. I remember fighting against my previous subordinates, before eventually winning, and then, from there my memories start becoming a blur. However, I do remember someone handing me a picture of you." Taken aback, seriously glancing at Angelica, I could not help but repeat, "A picture of me?" Nodding her head, Angelica confirmed, "Yes, but that is all I can remember. I do not remember who gave me the picture, but I remembered them saying something like the person in the picture was responsible for killing Elijah. From there everything is self-explanatory." As I started, listening to Angelica speak, I could not help but take a deep breath. This news was shocking. Someone was targeting me. Realistically speaking, the only person that came to my mind at the moment was Matthew. He was the only person I could think of that would target me. No, wait. Tap, tap, tap. Tapping frantically on my desk, I realized that Matthew was not the only one that could have been targeting me. There was someone else that could have done this. If we were talking about demons, it would be Everblood. He was another demon that I had come in contact with back in the dungeon. But at that time I was wearing a mask, so chances of him not finding out that. Abruptly pausing my thoughts there, I could not help but ask myself, wait, did I have a mask on? Did Everblood see my face back in the dungeon? Massaging my forehead, I started looking back at the incident in the dungeon. At that time, I recall almost dying at the hands of Everblood's clone. I was too busy trying to preserve my life at that time that I was not sure about what had happened afterward. Did my mask fall off and he found out my identity? If so, it seems that Everblood may indeed be one of the people that could have been targeting me. But something still did not add up. Glancing at Angelica sitting on her seat, I could not help but think, why use her and not come personally? If it really was Everblood that was targeting me, why did he use her instead of going personally? After thinking for a long time and coming up with nothing, I helplessly shook my head. I did not have enough evidence to find out who the real culprit was, but that did not matter. It only meant that I had to be alert at all times. I needed to be more cautious and grow stronger even faster. I now knew that things beyond the plot line would start targeting me now. I could no longer be as carefree as before. I needed to be alert at all times, especially for when the time that another similar situation arose. From now on I have to be prepared for anything. Sighing out loud, I stood up and lightly stretched my neck. Glancing at Angelica, whose face was still cold, I faintly smiled before saying, all right, I guess that is enough talking for now. I will come back later with a mana contract. I will probably send it to you, and after you read through the contents you can decide whether you want to sign or not. If you want to negotiate the terms that I posed, text me directly. Tilting her head to the side, Angelica looked at me and asked with a hint of confusion in her voice. Text. Seeing the confusion in Angelica's face, I could not help but lightly smack my face. All right, demons do not use phones. With a slight frown on her face, Angelica tried to recall where she heard the word phone before and slowly said, phone. Are those the primitive devices that you humans use to communicate with each other? Staring at Angelica for a couple of seconds, I nodded to myself. Yeah, I will leave that task to Small Snake to handle. I was not going to have any part of this. Inwardly shaking my head as I imagined the predicament that Small Snake would find himself in, I put on my jacket and said, all right, I have to go back to the academy now. If you have any questions, you can ask Small Snake. Tilting her head to the side, recalling the two individuals that were here before, Angelica bluntly said, Small Snake? Which one is it? The primate or the stick? Pursing my lips, I tried my best to keep a straight face. After a couple of seconds, I slowly said, the stick. Nodding her head, Angelica said, very well, I shall take note of such individual. As long as I get my core back, I shall not care for such insignificant matters. Good for you. 10:00 p.m. Smiling at Angelica, I glanced at my watch. It was about time I returned to the academy. Although I had skipped going through the details about what Angelica was going to do once she worked for me in the mercenary group, that was a talk for a later time. After all, we still had to sign the Mana contract first. Once she joined, I will then proceed to tell her more regarding the mercenary group. Plus, with her now joining my group, that would mean that we had a total of 4 members in our group. Only 1 member short before being able to start doing missions together. Thereafter, from there, we could slowly increase the mercenary group rank as we complete more and more missions. Moreover, with Angelica in the group, rising to rank 2 would be a breeze. Thinking thus far, I was reminded of Ava. Yes, from what I read from the reports Small Snake had given me, she along with Ryan were the 2 people that only needed a little push to join the group. If I wanted to start doing missions with my group, I first needed to sign the 5th member. And aside from Ryan, Ava was the one that was easiest to recruit. Exhaling out loud, I massaged my forehead before walking out of my office. I really wonder how strong our group will be in the future. Chapter 135. Zip. Exhaling, I put my arms on my waist and nodded in satisfaction. After returning from my trip to the mercenary group headquarters, I quickly returned to the lock. There was a particular reason for that. Today, I was finally moving out of my dorm to a better one. The Manticore building. It was a considerable upgrade compared to the Horned Sheep building I was currently staying in. It did not need to be pointed out why the Manticore building was better. I was going to get my own training room as well as a personal butler. Just those 2 things alone showed how much better the place was. If I had a complaint, it would be the price. Believe it or not, I was paying 100,000 units in monthly rent. Very pricey. That meant I was paying 1,200,000 units in yearly rent. Expensive, but worth it. With my own private training room, I no longer had to hold back. I could finally go all out without worrying about others discovering my secrets. Although I could have gone to the Hydra building, which was even better than the Manticore building, I was firmly against the idea. It was too expensive and filled with annoying young masters. To hell with that. The main reason I moved to the Manticore building, rather than the Hydra building, was because Ava was here. With her in the same building, there was more room for me to interact with her. At the very least, I wanted to interact with her in an organic way rather than creepily approaching her in class. It would look very suspicious. This move was not solely for me. It was also going to be a big help in increasing the chances of recruiting Ava to my group. Today was going to be a good day. All right, Guam. Tapping my bracelet once, all of the packages before me disappeared. Let's see, is there anything else I am missing? After making sure I took every package, I stepped outside my dorm. I took one last glimpse at the inside of my room to check if I was missing anything. After a couple of minutes, I looked back at the time I spent in this place. Although the 4 months I had been in this dorm were short, I could not say I disliked it. If not for the private training facility, I would have opted to stay here rather than move. I would have rather saved money, but the situation called for it, and I really needed my private training room. I had no choice but to switch. Exhaling and glancing at the long scar on the wall to the right, my mouth twitched. Turning off the lights, I closed the door of the room and left. Clank. The scar had nothing to do with me. Name and student card. Arriving at the Manticore building reception, I was immediately greeted by a stern-looking middle-aged man. The middle-aged man before me had a long face, a well-formed nose, and puffy lips. His light brown hair was carefully brushed to the side, but his droopy eyes with black circles beneath them gave everything away. He looked to be on the verge of fainting at any minute. Staring at the receptionist, I could not help but feel a trace of pity for him. Another notable feature was his straight brown hair, which was showing signs of thinning. It looked like he was having a really bad time. Here you go. My name is Ren. I handed him my student identification card. Thank you. Without looking at me, the middle-aged man lazily took my card. After a couple of minutes of checking information and compiling paperwork, he briefly glanced at me before a large yawn escaped his mouth. All the rules will shortly be sent to your phone. If you have any questions, look over there. Taking out a purple card from one of his desk drawers, he swiftly handed it to me before closing his eyes and crossing his arms. Staring at the man, my mouth twitched. Thank you, I guess. Turning around, I looked at the card in my hand and saw 906 engraved on it. I quickly headed toward the elevators. As I walked along the corridor, I was impressed by the internal design. The corridor was illuminated with a soft and welcoming light, as if it were sunshine in a gentle pastel hue. The floor was made out of marble, and a long red carpet covered most of the pavement as it led toward the elevator area. Following the red carpets and arriving in front of the elevators, I pressed a button and patiently waited. Taking a deep breath, I looked back at the incident with Angelica. Pondering over the matter, I realized that I was too arrogant and carefree. My actions led to someone targeting me. A frown emerged on my face as I thought about the fact that they could have also targeted my parents. If the person targeting me went after my parents, I would not know what I would have done. Would the old Ren have taken over my body and done something reckless? Or would I be the one doing something reckless? I was not sure, but I was not eager to find out. Fortunately, because the one targeting me seemed to be a demon, they did not touch my parents. They soon noticed that they were under a curse from another demon. Killing someone already being targeted by a demon was a big no-no for the demons. That would mean they were stealing someone else's food and declaring war on them. Fortunately, my parents were currently still unharmed. I guess the fact that they were cursed was not all bad. It saved their lives. But still, what if my enemy was not a demon, but a human? What would have happened then? I was too naive and immature. I needed to put further thought into every action from now on. I needed to come up with countermeasures for everything. That is why setting up this mercenary group was a must. Only when I had true power would I not need to worry about such things. I had to get even stronger than I was now. Ding. Snapping me out of my thoughts was the loud chime from the elevator. Entering the elevator, I quickly pressed the button that led to the 9th floor. The Manticore building had 15 floors. The floor I was headed toward was the 9th, where my room, 906, was located. Recalling something, I pulled out my phone and checked my notifications. There, tapping on my phone, I looked through my inbox before clicking on a certain email that had an attached file. Opening the file, I read through the contents. To summarize, the butler will only be assigned to me in a month after I choose him from a list. What else? A personalized diet will also be made for me? As I read the contents, I became more satisfied with my decision. I probably should have done this sooner. With all the benefits and services, it felt as if I was staying in a 5-star hotel. It was amazing. Ding. Exiting the elevator, I was greeted with a small corridor that split into two. Checking my phone, I turned right. After walking past a couple of doors, I saw a door with 906 displayed on the side. Without hesitation, I swiped my card. As the doorknob turned green, I opened the door. Click. Entering the room, I was immediately stunned. The first thing I saw was a large window inside the living room that illuminated the whole place. Then, I noticed the decorations. From clean white sofas to a personal kitchen furnished with all sorts of utensils. Compared to my previous dorm, it felt as if I was going from the slums to the city. A huge difference. Turning right from the living room, I spotted the bedroom with a large white bed in the middle. There were a couple of other decorations, but that was not what attracted me. It was a door by the side of the bedroom. I immediately headed for the door and opened it. This was the only thing that interested me. Click. Opening the door, I instantly felt cool air brush past my clothes. Looking at the room, a look of amazement appeared on my face. This? Now, this is exactly why I moved here. A large spacious room that was twice the size of the living room appeared before me. On the right, multiple types of equipment, ranging from dumbbells to squat racks, appeared. They seemed to be made by state-of-the-art technology. The largest dumbbells, the 500-kilogram ones, were only about the size of a water bottle. Very small. On the left side of the room, there was no equipment. However, the pavement and the sides of the wall were made of a special material that was shock absorbent. That was the area in which I could peacefully train my sword art, without worrying about leaving a scar. As I looked at the gym, a satisfied grin appeared on my face. The more I stay here, the more I realize I should have done this before. Now that no one is disturbing me, I do not have to hold back. I can just go all out. Ding dong. Just as I was happily admiring my new training room, I heard the sound of my doorbell ring. Taken aback, a slight frown appeared on my face. Who? I did not recall knowing anyone here. So, who could it possibly be? Chapter 136. Clank. Opening the door to my room, I was immediately greeted by two individuals standing in front of the door. Hello. Nice to meet you. Yes. How can I help you? Standing on the right side, with a friendly smile on his face, was a rather lanky individual with long curly blonde hair and green eyes. Extending his hand towards me, he introduced himself and his friend on the left, who was a stark contrast from him in terms of appearance. Nice to meet you. I am Leo Smith from room 905, and he is Ram Johnson from room 907. With a bulging belly and greasy ginger-colored hair, the individual on the left, Ram, had a rather awkward but friendly smile on his face as he nodded his head. Good evening. Alternating my gaze between the two of them, I raised my brow and looked to my left and right where rooms 905 and 907 were. Thereafter, smiling at them, I said, "Oh, do you guys live next door? Doesn't that mean we are neighbors?" Nodding his head, smiling kindly, Leo said, "Yep. We just received notice that someone was moving in today, and we wanted to be the first ones to greet you." Smiling back, I extended my hand towards them and introduced myself to them. "That is very kind of you. Hello, I am a first year and my name is Ren Dover. Pleased to meet you." Nodding their heads, Leo and Ram shook my hand. Pleased to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Shaking my hand, a couple of seconds after we let go, a rather awkward silence enveloped the corridor. Noticing this, glancing at my room, I suggested, "Do you want to come in?" Hearing my suggestion, looking at each other, Ram and Leo nodded their heads. That would be ideal. Thank you. Seeing how friendly they were being, I decided to let them in. Although this place was filled with arrogant brats, that did not mean everyone was like that. Seeing that they did not arrogantly look down on me, or try to establish their dominance upon our first meeting, I knew that the two of them were rather nice individuals. It was a nice change of pace considering what I was constantly going through in class. All right, please come in. Smiling even more brightly, I stepped to the side and let them in. It was a good thing they came as I had a few things to ask them with regards to this building. Smiling, Leo looked towards Ram and gestured for him to go in. After you. Thanks. Nodding his head, Ram entered the room followed by Leo shortly after. Thereafter, seeing that both of them had entered the room, looking left and right to see if there was anyone else, I eventually closed the door. Clank. Closing the door, I turned around and said, "Welcome. Although I just moved in here, the place was already furnished before I came, so just have a seat while I make some tea." "Sure, thank you." Nodding their heads, Leo and Ram calmly walked towards the sofas and sat down. As they walked towards the sofas, from the side of my eyes, I managed to observe that they seemed to be rather familiar with the layout of the apartment. It seems like their rooms were similarly decorated. Seeing that Leo and Ram were comfortably sitting on the sofa, heading towards the kitchen, I quickly heated a teapot and exhaled lightly. This was the first time I met people that were either not arrogant brats or novel characters. I did not want to leave a bad impression. After all, being a loner was not really something I loved. A couple of seconds after Leo and Ram sat down, coming back with a steaming pot of tea, I sat on one of the sofas and poured tea for them. "Thank you." "Thanks." Thanking me and taking the teacups in front of them, Leo and Ram carefully took a sip of it. Placing the teapot down and blowing on my teacup, I looked at them and asked, "You guys are also first years?" Taking a sip of the tea and savoring the taste for a couple of seconds, placing the teacup down, Leo looked at me and nodded his head. "Yeah, I am from Class A23 and he is from Class A19. What about you?" "Class A25. Silence enveloped the room. Thereafter, I saw both Leo and Ram look at me with a trace of pity in their eyes. "I feel bad for you." "Yeah." Confused, I could not help but tilt my head to the side and ask, "Why is that? Aren't you in the same class filled to the brink with second-generation kids whose arrogance knows no bounds? Isn't it tense?" Frowning slightly, I could not help but ask, "Is it not like that for you?" Glancing at each other, Leo and Ram simultaneously shook their heads. Taking another sip of the tea, Leo softly said, "Nothing of the sort. Our class is pretty chill. Moreover, everyone is united, and we do not form our own cliques like your class does." Frowning and interlocking my hands together, I leaned forward and asked, "How come?" "Well, it is because there really is not anyone important in our class. You get what I mean?" Thinking for a moment, I shook my head. No, not really." Nodding his head, calmly placing the teacup down, Leo explained, "Basically, because there really is not anyone important in our class, no one needs to suck up to someone else. If I had to say, our class is pretty balanced. Ram's class as well. Everyone just gets along with each other rather than having someone commanding others and stuff like that." Listening to Leo speak, from time to time Ram would add a few things and nod his head in agreement. Although we do have some people that have a stronger background, because the majority in our class is similar, we are rather united, and thus no such thing happens." Placing my hand on my chin as I listened to them speaking, I lightly nodded my head. I see. It made sense. With how most of the arrogant second-generation kids ended up in my class, it was not strange that they had all formed their own cliques and segregated themselves from the other students, resulting in this imbalance forming within the class. After a while, looking at both Leo and Ram, I could not help but jokingly say, "Let me join your classes." After a short pause, staring at each other, we all lightly chuckled. "Ha ha ha, ha ha ha." Chuckling along with them, halfway through my chuckle, I stopped laughing and seriously said, "Ha ha ha." I was not joking. I really was not. Maybe at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to move out. Their place sounded like paradise in my opinion. Although now that I took care of Arnold and a few other annoying brats, the fact that I was still ignored and verbally abused from time to time did not change. And just like they said, almost everyone in my class was part of an influential family, or whose parents were important figures in their own right. If I wanted to deal with them, I had to be thorough. I could not just pick a fight with anyone I wanted, especially considering the fact that I had a family to look after now, as they could target them at any time without my knowledge. This fact became even more apparent with the incident with the matriarch. Actions had consequences, and unless I thoroughly destroyed my enemy, until I made sure they were not going to take revenge on me, I could not move. Hence why, their classes sounded like paradise to me, a place where I did not have to think too much about my behavior. Looking at me with a trace of pity in his eyes, Leo tried to console me. "I feel for you, but classes change every year, so you might get lucky next year." Leaning backward on the sofa, a bitter smile appeared on my face as I sarcastically said, "Haha, if only I was that lucky." He was not wrong. Every year we would be assigned to different classrooms, so perhaps next year I would get lucky. But considering my luck so far, I could only helplessly sigh. Ding dong. As I was having a good chat with Leo and Ram, suddenly, the doorbell rang once again. Turning towards the door, I looked at Leo and Ram for a brief moment before saying, more neighbors? Seriously looking at each other, Ram and Leo's faces became tense. Thereafter, grabbing me by my sleeve, Leo carefully said, "Ren, be careful." Raising my brow and looking at them carefully, I could not help but slowly ask, "What is wrong?" Looking at each other, after a short pause, Leo quietly spoke. "We were planning on telling you this later, but actually, this building is not as peaceful as it sounds." Frowning, I suddenly had an ominous feeling. Not as peaceful as it sounds? Nodding his head, Leo and Ram looked towards the door with a little bit of fear. Yeah. Noticing Leo and Ram's odd behavior, the frown on my face deepened. If I said I was surprised by this development, that would be a lie. From experience, I could pretty much guess what was happening. Although I did not know much about this place, it seems like there was a social hierarchy here that I did not know of. Whoever was at the door was definitely someone that I was not going to have the pleasure of knowing. Ding dong. Coming. Staring at the door, I looked towards Ram and Leo before making my way towards the door. I will have to observe first before making a move. Chapter 137. Sorry for my tardiness. Swoosh. Opening the door and scratching the back of my head, I saw 3 people standing on the other side with their backs straight. As soon as I opened the door, a surge of powerful aura came crashing in, creating a powerful gush of air that reminded me of a typhoon. Feeling the gush of air brush past me as my clothes fluttered lightly, I tried my best to keep a smile on my face as I looked at the people before me. Taking a closer look, there were 3 people. The 3 people looked to be in their 20s, however, considering that they were all wearing lock uniforms, they were still not there in terms of age. Their ranks looked to be at around the F rank region, with the weakest of them being F-. They each wore green-colored uniforms indicating that they were in their second years. The one leading them, the strongest one of the lot, I could feel his rank being at around F+. The reason I knew this was because they did not shy away from releasing their oppressive aura. Their intentions were obvious. Intimidate me. Well, it was supposed to suppress me, but it really had no effect on me at the moment. Still, I pretended to grimace under their pressure. KKHH. Who is this? Observe before acting. Seeing my reaction, keeping the pressure for a couple of seconds before removing it, the leading youth looked at me as he said in a solemn voice, "You are the one that just moved in?" Pretending to catch my breath, I slowly nodded my head and responded, "Huff, huff." Indeed. As I responded to them, I tried my best to hold back. Although the way they talked and behaved irked me, I had to hold it in until I found out who their backer was. Chances were that they were someone I should probably not offend for the time being. After making sure he had exerted his dominance over me, the leading youth briefly glanced at his 2 lackeys behind him before looking back at me and saying, "My name is Noah Riley, a fellow student who resides in this building. Currently, I am gathering all of the people in this building for our usual end-of-the-week meeting. Seeing that you are here, you should also come and introduce yourself. Do not worry. He just wants to get to know you better and help you adapt to this place faster," Noah said in a casual manner. Although he claimed that he was requesting a word, his tone did not contain any trace of a request. It seemed like something annoying was about to happen. Overbearingly stepping into my room, without asking for my permission, Noah and his lackeys glanced around the room before a smirk emerged on their faces as they saw the 2 people inside of the room. Turning his attention towards them, crossing his arms, Noah snorted as he spoke. "Humph, it seems like Leo and Ram are also here. Perfect, you guys must come with us too." Silently clenching their fists beneath their clothes, Leo and Ram both smiled towards Noah and stood up. "Yes, understood." Nodding his head in satisfaction, Noah calmly watched as Leo and Ram left the room with their heads hung low. Thereafter, turning his attention towards me, he said, "Hurry up as we do not have much time to waste." "All right." Watching from the side, I calmly observed everyone present in the room. From the way that the trio was looking down at Leo and Ram, and by how they both refused to retaliate. Although I wanted to help them, as they were the first people I actually got along with in this academy, now was not the time. From the way I saw things, it seems like whoever was backing the trio was rather powerful. To give his lackeys that much confidence. From the way they spoke and talked, it looked as though they owned the place. This situation may indeed become troublesome. After making sure Leo and Ram went out, looking at me, nudging me with his head, Noah coldly said, "Follow along." Smiling amiably, I nodded my head. "Sure, good choice." Seeing me nod, Noah turned around and left. Nodding his head towards his 2 lackeys, Noah directly turned right and walked through the long corridor that seemed to stretch to no end. As I looked at Noah and the rest from behind, for a split second my eyes narrowed. Thereafter, an amiable smile appeared on my face as I closed the door behind me. Clank. I really am curious as to who the person they are following is. Taking the elevator and going all the way up to the 15th floor, we soon arrived in front of a large wooden door decorated with fine golden patterns. Straightening their backs and clothes, Noah and his 2 lackeys carefully fixed their clothes and made themselves look presentable. Turning my head to the side, I soon noticed Leo and Ram shivering slightly as they had their heads held down. Observing everyone around me, I carefully imprinted everyone's behavior in my mind. This was so that I could get an idea of who I was about to meet. "All right, After making sure that they looked presentable, fixing his hair, Noah carefully knocked on a large door. Knock, knock. Thereafter, a couple of seconds after Noah knocked on the door, opening the door was a young man dressed in a butler outfit. With his black hair neatly brushed to the side, and wearing a nice butler outfit, a young man that looked to be in his mid-20s came to greet us at the door. Extending his hand forward and smiling, the butler said, "Please come in." "Thank you, Chris." Nodding his head towards the butler who seemed to be named Chris, Noah entered the room followed by his 2 lackeys. Shortly after, following Noah's lead, Leo, Ram, and I also entered the room. As I stepped into the living room of the apartment, I was immediately left speechless by the grandeur of the place. With a mixture of endearingly vibrant colors, matched with the nicely decorated room, the arrangements of the furniture and plants made this modern and multifunctional living room come to life in an instant. The cotton white walls and the dark wooden floors acted as a blank canvas that further emphasized the color introduced by the furniture and accessories, such as the paintings on the wall and the green plants placed by the sides. Best of all, a large window at the end of the room enabled the light from the sun to freely illuminate the room, creating this brilliant veil of light that warmed the colors of the room. There also seemed to be a second floor, as by the side of the apartment a wooden staircase could be seen. As I admired this room, I could not help think back to my new room. This penthouse apartment was by far a lot better than the room that I had just moved into. However, I was not jealous. After all, thinking about the monthly rent price of this place made this place look less attractive in my eyes. "Ah, Noah, are these the last batch?" Just as I was finishing admiring the place, walking forward, a youth with a gray suit and white t-shirt came to greet us. "Yes." Pulling his gray blazer forward lightly, the youth raised his brow as he spotted me standing next to Leo and Ram. "Oh, it seems like we have someone new here." Nodding his head, Noah calmly introduced me to the youth. "Yes, he is a new student that has just arrived today. His name is Ren." As Noah was introducing me, I observed the youth next to him from head to toe. Aside from the obvious penthouse apartment, another reason I could tell that he was from a prominent family was his clothes that seemed to be made by top-end designers. His face was rather handsome, as his skin seemed to be devoid of any pimples or imperfections. The most notable feature of the youth were his pair of eyebrows that were akin to a sword edge, as they made him look sharper and more commanding. As I was observing him, the youth was similarly observing me too. Shortly after observing me for a couple of seconds, smiling, the youth looked at Noah. Thereafter, after seeing Noah nod, the youth smiled brightly. "So this is the new student. Great." Extending his hand forward, with a friendly smile on his face, the youth looked at me and said, "Welcome to the Manticore building. My name is Gerard Lim, and I am currently in my 3rd year at the Lock." Similarly smiling, extending my hand towards him, I shook his hand and introduced myself. "Right, very nice to meet you. My name is Ren." "Haha, great." Shaking my hands for a couple of seconds, I soon noticed that something was not right as a cold glint flashed past Gerard's eyes as the aura around him erupted. Coo. Surprised, I immediately realized what he was doing, and put on the greatest performance I could muster. Thud. With one knee on the ground, I fearfully looked at Gerard from the ground. My hand shook shortly after. "Coo. What is going on?" After a couple of seconds, seeing the shock and fear in my eyes, letting go of my hand, Gerard laughed out loud as he helped me up. "Haha, I was just joking. There is no need to look at me so seriously." Patting me on the back, he along with the others laughed out loud. "Haha, what a nice prank. Haha, that was funny." Standing up, nodding my head towards Gerard, I thanked him for helping me up. "Thank you, E-rank." During that brief moment that he exerted his strength, I noticed that his strength was E-rank, just a tidbit stronger than me. But that did not matter. All I needed was a couple of seconds, and his head would be rolling on the floor. "Haha, sorry about that prank of mine. Here, why don't you join the others?" It was only after I got up that I managed to spot a crowd of students standing on the 2nd floor of the apartment. It also seems that Leo and Ram, who were with me moments before, were both escorted upstairs moments prior. "Yes." Nodding my head, I pretended to still be shaking from the incident and slowly walked upstairs. Slowly walking upstairs, from the corner of my eyes, I managed to see Gerard nod to Noah and the others in satisfaction. Spotting them from the distance, the corner of my mouth inadvertently pulled up. Just you wait. I will pull an even better prank on you later. One that you would not forget for a lifetime." Going up the stairs, I joined the rest of the students that were gathered in the room. I soon spotted Ram and Leo standing quietly in the corner. Without hesitation, I joined them. Moving towards them, as soon as they noticed my presence, I found them both quietly moving towards me to check if I was alright. "Hey, we saw what happened. Are you alright? Are you hurt?" Smiling, I shook my head and reassured them. "Haha, nothing to be worried about. I am fine." I was not lying. Although Gerard's rank was indeed higher than mine, his pressure was not actually affecting me that much. As I thought back at Gerard, who was still downstairs talking to his lackeys, staring at Leo and Ram, I started probing. Right, this Gerard Lim guy. Why is everyone so fearful around him? Isn't he just E-rank? Although that is indeed an impressive rank. For a 3rd year that is rather, how should I say, lacking. Just as I was about to finish my sentence, to my surprise, I found both Leo and Ram putting their hands on my mouth as they tried to stop me from speaking any further. A look of panic appeared on their faces. "SHHHH, do you want to die? Taken aback, I could not help but look at them in confusion as I asked, "What is wrong?" Quietly glancing towards his left and right side to make sure no one was paying attention to them, lowering his voice, in an almost inaudible whisper, Leo slowly said, "Do not ever mention anything regarding his talent again, or you might find yourself in deep trouble." Deep trouble? Nodding his head, Leo solemnly looked at me as a trace of fear flashed past his eyes. In an even lower tone, he quietly said, "One time a student made a similar mistake to yours, as he made fun of Gerard's rank. Do you know what happened next?" Shaking my head, I asked, "What happened?" Slightly biting his lips as he moved his head closer, Leo quietly said, 3 weeks after the incident, the staff from the lock found him dead in his own apartment, with a suicide note neatly written on the corner of the desk." Opening my eyes wide, I looked at Leo in shock. "A suicide note?" Nodding his head, unfazed by my shocked expression, Leo continued, "Yes, and the strange thing was that even though everyone knew it was Gerard who was responsible for this, as the school and the authorities could not find any evidence of it being a homicide, the case was ruled as a typical suicide case. However, the reason why everyone knows that it was him who did it is because shortly after, the student's family also died by the hands of a series of strange accidents ranging from car crashes and cardiac arrests. Everyone dead. Who?" Listening to Leo recount what Gerard had done, I could not help but exhale out loud. Even his family was targeted. Thank God I did not act rashly, else things might have become serious. Scratching the top of his nose, in a solemn voice, Leo said, "Trust me when I tell you this, but Gerard is crazy. He is not right in the head. Provoking him is like asking for yourself to be killed." Listening to Leo speak, the frown on my face deepened as I could not help but softly mumble, "Psychopath. To openly kill a student just because they made fun of his talent. Moreover, their parents too? This guy was beyond redemption." Gerard was not right in the head and everyone in this room understood that fact. Perhaps this was why everyone was so scared of him. Seeing that I understood, sighing in relief, Leo added, "Yes, so please refrain from ever mentioning what I just told you to not mention." Nodding my head, I reassured him as I switched the topic. "All right, I will be careful, but what is his background? What kind of background does he have? I mean, for him to be able to hide the evidence so cleanly, it must be quite a big background." Hearing my question, both Leo and Ram looked at me strangely. Thereafter, Ram joined in the conversation as he asked me with a hint of doubt in his voice, "You really do not know?" Shaking my head, I denied, "Nope, I really did not know. This man was not someone that appeared in the novel, nor that I ever remembering writing about. Therefore, it was only normal that I had no idea about him. You really need to inform yourself better." Looking at me strangely, lowering his voice, Ram started speaking. "Gerard Lim is the only son, of the #1 pharmaceuticals company WV Pharmaceuticals, who is said to be worth over a 100 billion in value. A giant amongst giants who recently have seen a major market share increase in the potion market." Raising my brow, as Ram was talking, my head quickly snapped in his direction as a certain word caught my interest. "Did you just say WV Pharmaceuticals?" Nodding his head seriously, standing beside Ram, Leo once again spoke as he warned me about the consequences of provoking Gerard. "Yes, so be extra careful and try your best to not pee." However, contrary to Leo's wishes, as he tried to lecture me, his words went from one ear to the other as the corners of my mouth threatened to pull themselves upwards at any given second. Massaging my chin, I could not help but think back at an incident that had happened not so long ago. "I see. So Gerard is the son of the chairman of WV Pharmaceuticals. The very first company I bet on during my first 2 months in this world, and the ones that were responsible for Tobias Church's death." This was starting to get more and more interesting. The more I thought about it, the more the corner of my mouth inadvertently pulled upwards. In the end, even though I tried to hide it, a large smile appeared on my face. What an interesting piece of news. What a very interesting piece of news indeed. It seems like I was going to be pulling a big prank soon. Chapter 138. WV Pharmaceuticals. It has been a while since I heard of that name. Because at that time I was in desperate need of cash, I practically sold most of my stocks. Should I have saved it? Yes, most likely. Do I regret it? Not really. After all, it is not like their value shot up by that much. I would have probably made a couple of million more units. Either way, the fact that Gerard was the son of the current chairman of WV Pharmaceuticals was a pleasant surprise. And when I mean pleasant, I mean it in a very interesting way. If I played my cards right, I could probably kill multiple birds with one stone. Thank you for gathering, everyone. Talk of the devil. Walking up the stairs followed by Noah and 2 other burly individuals, Gerard calmly walked towards the middle of the room. There were approximately 50 people gathered here on the 2nd floor. All of them seemed to be first years as they all had an azure blue blazer. Calmly observing everyone present, raising his hand, Gerard tried to gather everyone's attention towards himself. As soon as his hand raised in the air, the room instantly became quiet. With his 3 lackeys glaring at everyone present, everyone immediately shut up. Noticing this, smiling at everyone, Gerard calmly started speaking. "Once again, thank you all for coming this weekend to the weekly meetings I have established. I hope that it does not bother any of you as." As Gerard was speaking, every word that came out of his mouth went from one of my ears to the other. The reason why I was not paying attention was not because I was not interested in what he said. Well, I was not interested, but the main reason was because of a particular person in the room. More precisely, a young girl who was quietly standing in the corner by herself. She had a rather petite figure with semi-long hair and bangs that gently covered her eyes. She looked extremely shy as she avoided making eye contact with everyone. Ava Leafs. It seems like my trip here was not in vain. Although I was initially put off by Gerard's forceful show of power, now that I found Ava, my anger subsided a little. Calmly observing Ava from the side, I thought back at the files that Small Snake sent me. According to the files he sent me, Ava Leafs came from a pretty well-off family. She was the 6th child of the family, and the only one with the monster tamer profession. Although she was not neglected at home, because of her profession, she developed a sort of inferiority complex over her siblings who, in their own rights, were quite talented. Although the files had a bit more information, those were the key points I took notice of. Observing her from the side, I could tell that the information was accurate. From the way she avoided everyone and seemed very shy, it was apparent that she did not have a lot of confidence in herself. This was definitely something I could work with. Clapping his hands once, snapping me out of my thoughts, Gerard smiled brightly as he got to the main point of this meeting. All right, I will keep it short. I am sure you guys know why I called you here, right? As soon as Gerard posed the question, instantly silence enveloped the room. Raising my brow and noticing the strange tension in the room, I soon spotted every student in the room helplessly looking at the ground. What is going on? Staring at everyone before him, Gerard once again spoke. This time his voice was colder and more authoritative. Did you guys hear what I said? Please hand me a timestamp. One per person, please. Hearing the word timestamp, I could not help but tilt my head in confusion as I glanced next to me where Leo and Ram were. Lowering my head a little, I quietly whispered, "What is going on?" Glancing at me, understanding something, Leo pulled me closer to him and quietly whispered, "All right, since you are new here you do not know much about what happens here. Essentially, each week, same time today, we are gathered here by Gerard and we are to give him one of the 2 timestamps that we are given each week." Frowning as I was listening, I glanced towards Leo and quietly asked, "What is a timestamp?" As I asked, I could not help but curse at my own lack of preparations. Honestly, I should have probably done more research on this place and the people living here. Although there were over 1,000 people staying in this building, I should have taken note of all the important people beforehand so that I could have been more prepared. For example, considering the fact that there were only 50 people gathered here, I figured that this was not the only group that coerced students into doing something that they did not want. There were probably many others with a similar group of students, blackmailing them into handing them something important, which in this case seemed to be the so-called timestamp. Placing my hand on my chin, I made a mental note to myself. Find everything about this place, from the leaders to the rules and anything that has to do with how this place operated. Only when I had enough information would I be able to quickly come up with countermeasures, or at least be prepared for what was to come. Well, in my defense, with everything going on with Angelica, things just passed my mind. Moreover, with how busy Small Snake was these past few days, asking him to research all of the people here would be basically asking for him to die. This time, I had to do it without relying on Small Snake. Here, this is a timestamp. Taking out a green-colored card from his pocket, Leo showed it to me. Taking the timestamp from Leo's hand, I calmly observed it. The card seemed to be the same size as a credit card and apart from a few patterns on it, it did not look anything special, just like a regular card. As I was observing the card, from the corner of my eyes, I managed to spot students taking out a similar colored card and handing it to Gerard and his lackeys. Staring at the students lining up in front of each lackey, handing the card back to Leo, we quickly lined up. As I lined up with them, Leo quietly pointed towards the students who were handing in their cards. Right now just observe what is happening. Since you are new, you do not have to hand them a timestamp, but from next week you must give them one of the 2 timestamps you receive each week. Pausing slightly and seeing the confusion on my face, he calmly explained. Regarding timestamps, to summarize what a timestamp does, it basically is an access card that enables people to gain access to the time regressive machine. Abruptly turning my head in Leo's direction, I repeated, "Time regressive machine." Frowning slightly, Leo asked, "You do not know what that is either?" Shaking my head, I placed my hand on my chin as I fell into deep thought. "No, I do know. I am just surprised by the fact that this building has it. A time regressive machine." Of course, I knew what it was, a virtual machine that slowed time down. It had a high degree of realism, and through the neuron-enhancing liquid provided in the capsule of the time regressive machine, humans were able to develop a machine that made time flow much slower compared to real life. It was the perfect machine for students looking to increase their strength in a short time. However, there were obvious downsides to this machine. 1. They were expensive. The neuron-enhancing liquid required rare ingredients to make and was difficult to mass produce. 2. Low supply and high maintenance cost. Moreover, they could not be used for prolonged periods of time, as that would put heavy strain on the brain. I knew about the time regressive machine, as there were a couple of them in the Leviathan building where Kevin was. However, what I did not know was that this building had one too. A machine that allowed someone to train inside of a virtual world where time was slower. The benefits were immense. Although it was not useful for helping students improve their rank, as only the brain was functioning faster whilst the body was flowing at a normal time, it was very useful for students who were looking to improve the mastery of their arts. It was understandable as to why Gerard was willing to go this far just to collect the timestamps. I mean, for untalented students like him, this was like a lifeline for them. Alright, we are done. It did not take long for Gerard and the others to collect all of the timestamps from everybody present in the room. In fact, it only took a couple of minutes, with no one protesting, as they just handed their cards to him and his lackeys. Everything went smoothly. Moreover, from what I observed, this seemed to be happening everywhere, as everyone present accepted this situation like it was normal. 1, 2, 4, 7, 37, and 51, perfect. Counting the timestamps in his hands, a big smile appeared on Gerard's face. Thereafter, looking at everyone in the room, he casually dismissed everyone present. Thank you very much for giving me your timestamps. I will not take any more of your time, so you may go now. And just like that, everyone that was present in the room quietly descended the stairs and made their way out of the penthouse apartment. Let's go. Tapping me on the shoulder, Ram and Leo quietly followed everyone out of the apartment. Looking back at Gerard for a brief moment, turning my attention back to Leo and Ram, I could not help but ask, "That is it?" Glancing at me from the side of my eyes, Leo shot back, "What more do you want there to be?" Opening my mouth, I tried to say something, but I eventually relented and followed them out of the building. Oh, never mind. I guess this gathering of his is only for the time passes. Pretty much. As I got out of the apartment with Leo and Ram, my attention was once again drawn towards Ava, who was not far from where I was. However, although she was not far from me, I refrained from talking to her. It was not the right time to approach Ava just yet. With all of the information that I had gathered from this meeting, a plan had already started formulating inside of my head. One that, if executed properly, could solve a lot of the issues I was currently facing. Although it was not a short-term plan, the wait was going to be worth it. After all, you cannot topple a king in one move, right? Chapter 139. Clank. Saying goodbye to Leo and Ram, I quietly went back to my dorm. Thereafter, I sent a quick message to Small Snake with regards to Western Victoria Pharmaceuticals and threw my phone on my bed. Sigh. As a sigh escaped from my mouth, sitting on my chair in front of a large, spacious wooden desk, I took out my computer and booted it up. So far, this was what I gathered from the small conversation I had with Ram and Leo on my way back. The current Manticore building was ruled by the stronger, more influential people. Taking advantage of the fact that there is a time-regressive machine, they forced and coerced weaker students into giving them their time passes. In a way, this was pretty much how gangs operated. It was sort of cliché, but with this world being filled with clichés, I wasn't really surprised. Taking a small notepad from the drawer of my desk, I immediately summarized the information that I had gotten from them. I first started writing about the social hierarchy of this place. From what I remember that they told me, there were 5 people I had to watch out for in this building. According to Leo and Ram, these 5 people were known by everyone here as the 5 tyrants, because of how influential and powerful they were. Through their connections and parents' fame, these 5 people ruled the Manticore building with an iron fist. Gerard Lim, Western Victoria Pharmaceuticals chairman's son. Romila Connell, both his parents are A-ranked heroes and work under Platinum Rank Guild. Adria Fersetti, son of the elder of Gladiator, Platinum Rank Guild. Jessica Pandef, daughter of one of the school instructors. Gabriella Lemus, daughter of branch manager of Ashton District Bank, one of the largest banks in the city. As I looked through the list of names, apparently, I was quite lucky to be under Gerard's rule. According to what I heard from Leo and Ram, he was the nicest of the lot. Although from what I've gathered they didn't kill as Gerard did, what they did was even worse. They would torture you to the point that you wished that you were dead, be it through targeting your family or anyone that was around you. As long as they didn't like you, they would immediately subject you to intense bullying and include your family in their nonsensical acts. They were all practically psychopaths. I wasn't really sure how these people even existed, as there is a clear boundary between arrogant and insane, and this was on that level. To be called the 5 tyrants because of what they did was understandable. From the way they behaved and pressed people, they were nothing short of tyrants. The worst thing was that because of the connections they each had, working together they managed to secure this ironclad rule. It basically prevented any of the students present from voicing out what was happening, meaning that they had free reign of this place. Unless your background was something they couldn't handle, if they deemed you to be their target, you were pretty much done for. Taking note of this information, I knew that eventually I may be implicated in this nonsense. I had to act before that happened. Browsing through the internet with my laptop, I looked through each of their backgrounds in more detail. Whenever I saw something interesting, I would quickly write it down on a small notepad that was next to me. From time to time, I would also stop and ponder for a couple of seconds as the gears of my brain started moving. Many different plans started formulating in my mind as I briefly glanced through their profiles. I was not having any of this. The reason why I moved in the first place was because I thought it was going to be a better place compared to the Horned Sheep building. But it seems like I was too naive. I was initially only planning on dealing with Gerard, but after hearing what Leo and Ram had said, I changed my mind. They all needed to be removed. Not only because they were going to be interfering with my training and daily life, but also because it was a necessary measure I had to take in order to make Ava join my group. Thus, with my notepad open, I took a large piece of paper and started creating a mind map with 5 large squares by the sides, each representing one of the 5 tyrants. Although I didn't have enough information yet, with all that I currently knew, I started creating connections and links between each member. Though I wasn't planning on acting anytime soon, preparing myself earlier was never a bad thing. Thus, as different plans and connections started formulating inside of my mind, I quickly got to work. I tried my best to come up with a foolproof plan that would achieve my goals whilst maximizing my gains. Playing with the pen in my hand, I softly mumbled to myself, "Tut, tut, tut. I hope you don't blame me for doing this. After all, I am just doing this for self-defense. Blame yourselves for threatening to ruin my daily life." Class A25, Lock. Hugh. Yawning out loud as I stretched my arms in the air, I wiped the tears that had formed on the corner of my eyes. If I said I wasn't tired, that would be a lie. Having spent most of yesterday going through all of the information I could find regarding the 5 tyrants, I only got around 4 hours of sleep. I was understandably tired. Clank. Entering the class like usual, Donna calmly walked towards the podium. Thereafter, placing all of her stuff down, she took out a tablet and did the register. Rank 1, Kevin Voss. Yes, present. Rank 2, Melissa Hall. Present. Rank 3, Jin Horton. Present. Propping my head with my hand, as I listened to Donna, I calmly observed the classroom. Kevin and the others were sitting in their usual seats on the right side of the classroom. It was the usual sight. Kevin was talking with Emma, Jin was with Troy and Arnold, Melissa was going through a bunch of papers in here, and Amanda was staring at Donna, with an emotionless look on her face. Everything was pretty much the same as it was during the first time I had come here. Although if I did have to point out a notable change, it would be that I was pretty much on speaking terms with most of them. I was no longer a nameless nobody in their eyes, which I didn't really mind at this point. With everything that was going on, their connections were indeed quite useful for my future plans. Rank 197, Ren Dover. Present. Hearing my name being called, I quickly raised my hand and responded. Staring at me for a split second, Donna looked back at the tablet and checked my name off. Thereafter, she continued doing the register. Rank 209, Ruben Nasri. Like that, for the better part of the first 5 minutes of the class, Donna did the register. Thereafter, after finishing the register, placing the tablet down, and glancing at everyone in the class, Donna spoke up as she announced, "I wanted to inform you guys that the tryouts for the Inter-Academy tournament have been pushed to tomorrow morning. I want all of the individuals who were previously chosen by me to be prepared." Sitting up straight as I stared at Donna from above, an audible gasp escaped from my mouth as I looked towards Donna in confusion. Soon after, a wave of whispers resounded across the classroom. What? Why did it suddenly move? What is going on? Wasn't it supposed to be in another couple of weeks? Looking around, I could see that I wasn't the only one that was caught off guard by the news, as almost everyone present felt the same way. Their reaction was understandable. I clearly remembered Donna saying to me last week that there was still a month left before the tryouts. How did the time suddenly go from a month to a week? Noticing the commotion that the announcement had caused, raising her hand, Donna's eyes shone for a split second as she spoke up. "Please be quiet and let me explain." Thereafter, as her voice traveled through the ears of everyone present, every one of the students speaking found themselves unable to move as their minds went blank for a split second. Soon the room was once again enveloped in silence. Brushing her hair to the side as silence returned to the classroom, Donna casually said as she continued, "As most of you know, the tryouts were supposed to happen in a couple of more weeks. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, we have no choice but to push it to tomorrow. This was not something that was decided on a whim. It was something that all of the heads of the departments have agreed on during the last meeting we had during the weekend." Pausing for a second and glancing at certain people within the class, me included, Donna continued speaking. "So for those of you that have been selected beforehand, please meet me at the arena grounds in Section G tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. There, you will be joined by the rest of the candidates from the other classes. Any questions?" Stopping there, Donna looked around the class and pointed towards a student. "Yes." Raising her hand up, one of the female students stood up and asked, "Miss Longburn, if we participate in the tryouts, what about the register for the classes?" Hearing the question, Donna kindly smiled. "You don't need to worry about your attendance as the professors have already been notified in advance." Sigh. As I was listening to Donna answer questions, a sigh inevitably escaped from my mouth as I buried my face in my arms. You know what? Whatever. As I had put a time skip in this part of the novel, I had no knowledge of any of the circumstances happening right now. Honestly, even if this deviated from the original plotline, I wouldn't even be surprised anymore. With everything that had happened to me these past 5 months, I now knew better than to not be surprised by an unforeseeable change. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Well, I did get fooled more than twice, but that was beside the point. I no longer should just think something will always go my way. There will always be something that will go against what I predicted. It was just how life worked. Knowing this, I decided to just go with the flow and adapt to any of the changes that were happening around me. I guess you could say that this was my own way of maturing. Chapter 140. Looking towards the sky as I covered my eyes with my arm, I could not help but yawn. The sun was exceptionally bright today, and even though it was early in the morning, 8 o'clock, the sunlight was brightly illuminating the surroundings. Arriving at Section G, I I was immediately greeted by a large crowd of students. I would estimate that there were a total of 100 first years alone. They each stood on the upper areas of the arena, as they all looked below where the platforms were located. Usually, the platforms would have had many students sparring and fighting against each other. However, today there was no one present. It was a strangely odd sight. After looking at the platforms of the arena below for a couple of seconds, turning around, I soon spotted Donna, who was in front of the representative members of our class. Although I could not see clearly as I was still quite far, I spotted around 12 students sitting behind her. Leisurely making my way there, I soon was able to see the identity of the members, and lo and behold, apart from a few, they were the usual suspects. Kevin and his group. Hurry up, you are the last one. Spotting me from the distance, Donna quickly nudged for me to come over. I am late. Checking her watch, Donna added. Yes, by a full 7 minutes. All right. Secretly clicking my tongue, I increased my pace. Hurrying up, I soon arrived before our group and sat down on the ground. Thereafter, taking out my music player, I put my earbuds on and played some music. It was too early for me to be socializing. Moreover, it seems like I was not the only one that felt that way, as almost everyone was busy doing their own thing. 10 minutes after I started playing music, appearing in the middle of the arena below, an imposing man wearing a black instructor uniform calmly looked at the audience before him. Thereafter, his booming voice reverberated through the whole area as he warmly smiled and introduced himself. Welcome everybody. My name is Sean O'Leary, and today, I will have the pleasure of hosting the tryouts for the Inter-Academy tournament. Stopping there as he waited for everyone to turn their attention towards him, Instructor Sean clenched his fist and raised it in the air. Thereafter he started speaking, and with every word he said, his voice became louder and louder. Young aspiring heroes, this is the chance of your life. If you are able to shine in this tournament, not only will you bring honor to the Academy, you will also bring honor to yourselves and your relatives. This is the moment that all of you have been waiting for, the chance for you to spread your name far into the human domain. Let them know about you and your splendor. Pausing for a second and glancing at every student present, Instructor Sean's already loud voice boomed even louder as it reverberated throughout the whole arena, resulting in the handrails shaking. Instead of looking for guilds, make the guilds look for you, and what better way than by shining in this year's edition of the Inter-Academy tournament. So rise to the challenge and show them just what you are made of. Stopping there, raising both hands in the air, his imposing figure basked underneath the sunlight. After a short silence, staring at the instructor's imposing figure in the middle of the stage, the whole stadium erupted in cheers and applause. Yes, we will definitely join. We will do our best. With my mouth half open, I took off one of my earpieces as I looked towards my left and right, where students could be seen cheering everywhere. My face could not help but scrunch up as my body involuntarily shook. Seriously? What was that just now? Did no one notice the fact that he was purposely posing to make himself look cooler? Was I the only one? What in the world did I just witness? Scanning the audience before him and seeing everyone pumped up as a result of his speech, the corner of Instructor Sean's mouth pulled upward. Dramatically raising his hand in the air to stop everyone from talking, the instructor continued as his voice became more solemn. I will skip with the unnecessary information and get straight to the point. Because of some unforeseen changes, as most of you know, we have decided to push forward the tryouts. I know some of you may not be ready, but we simply had no choice, and for that, we apologize. Pausing for a second, Instructor Sean carefully glanced at everyone present. Thereafter, he subtly lowered his head in an apology. After a couple of seconds of silence, looking back up, he once again started speaking. This time, his voice was much brighter. However, don't be demoralized. Take this setback as a lesson. Never take anything for granted. Situations might change when you least expect them to. Therefore, what you need to do is adapt and persevere through the setback. Only then will you truly be fit to be a hero. Scanning everyone in the room present to make sure they understood his message, Instructor Sean looked towards his left where an old man stood. Clap. Shortly after, seeing the old man nodding his head slightly, Instructor Sean clapped his hand once and said, "All right, enough with that. Let's get back to the tryouts." Rubbing his nose, taking out a piece of paper from his pocket, Instructor Sean started reading it. As he read the paper, his tone started becoming more monotonous with every passing second. It was apparent that he was only good at improvising. "We will shortly be separating each year, and from there, we will once again split you according to your classes. Each class will compete with another class from the respective year, and the matches will be displayed on the large monitors above." Pausing and pointing upwards where 4 large monitors, that were each the size of a large truck, stood, Instructor Sean's monotonous voice continued to ring across the arena. "This examination will take part in the virtual world, and thereafter, based on performances, the teams that perform the best will directly be chosen as members for the tournament." Pausing there to make sure that everyone understood, Instructor Sean started flipping through a couple of pages before he resumed speaking. "Today's trial is simple. It will be a 6 versus 6 code breaker competition, one of the main competitions in the tournament. The rules are simple. All you have to do." Listening to the instructor speak, I could not help but roll my eyes. How can someone's personality change so much, going from being an overly dramatic individual to this monotonous and boring one? He must really hate boring stuff. Anyhow, that did not matter at the moment. Currently, he was explaining the rules of the code breaker game, and as I had made the game, I already knew the rules, hence why I was not paying attention. The rules were simple. It was sort of like capture the flag. No, it was basically like capture the flag with some twists to the game. Each team, through the virtual world, would enter a map which was selected at random by the professors, and from there, each team, in order to defeat the other team, must insert a specific code on a metal pillar that they each had to protect. Sort of like the flag from Capture the Flag. Once the code was put in, the team would win. Simple as that. However, there was a catch. In order for someone to break the code, they needed to first get the code that was given to a team member before the competition started. The person holding the code was not selected at random, as the team could choose who held the code before the game started. Thus, the goal of the team was to first get the code before making their way towards the other team and breaking the code by inserting it in the metal pillar on the other side. Therefore, the hardest part of the game was not inserting the code, but actually finding the code, as one of the 6 people present had it. To make matters worse, there was also a time limit for the game, making this trial even harder, as defeating a person one by one was put out of the equation. Alright, that's enough from me for today. I will let your instructors take over. I hope to see you when the time the real tournament comes. I wish you all the best of luck. Finished with what he was saying, Instructor Sean smiled once again at the audience before he turned around and left. A wave of applause followed suit. Clap, clap, clap. After Instructor Sean finished speaking, taking out her tablet, Donna calmly looked at her students. There were a total of 12 students, representing our class, and apart from the usual people, there were a couple of new faces, me included. Pursing her lips, Donna scrolled through her tablet before looking at everyone and saying, "There will be 2 A25 groups, and before you say anything, the teams have already been decided beforehand, therefore no, you can't choose." Pausing and pointing towards certain individuals, Donna continued. "Now, the teams are, on my right, Melissa, Kevin, Troy, Emma, and Christopher. You will be the first team." Staring at the people whose names she had just called and seeing them nod at each other, Donna looked away and continued. "On my left, Jin, Amanda, Ren, Arnold, Donald, and Zach." As the members of our group were being announced, my mouth could not help but twitch as I realized who was part of my team. I was fine with Amanda, but Jin and Arnold, oh dear. Unbothered by my distress, after making sure she got the names right, putting the tablet down, Donna calmly explained. "You 6 will each be competing against a team from another class in a 6 versus 6 scenario, and from there we will judge your performances. Considering that there will be a lot of matches today, you only have to fight once. However, even if you win, it won't mean that all of you will be chosen. So if you want to make sure you get selected, you must think of an adequate strategy first, and make sure that you crush your opponent." Pausing there, Donna solemnly looked at everyone present before saying, "That's enough from me. Huddle up in your teams and come up with an adequate strategy. I have high expectations from you." Finished with what she wanted to say, Donna briefly glanced at everyone present before leaving. Sigh. As I watched Donna leave, an exhausted and tired sigh escaped from my mouth. Brushing my hair to the side, I glanced towards my group in the distance. My eyes soon interlocked with theirs, and a bitter smile appeared on my face. Now how am I going to deal with this? Chapter 141. Been a while. With an awkward smile on my face, I headed towards where Jin, Amanda, and the rest were. Glancing at my group, I pretty much knew everyone apart from a certain individual. His name was Zach, I believe. Leisurely chatting with Donald, whom I was in a group with back in Hallberg. Zach was a rather skinny individual with black hair and black eyes. He was around my height, and apart from his long nose, he didn't particularly stand out. As I observed him from the distance, apart from the fact that he was in my class, I really knew nothing about him. He wasn't even in the tournament arc, therefore, it was safe to say that he had failed the tryouts in my novel. Arriving before the group, I nodded my head towards Jin and Amanda, who nodded back. Thereafter, as I nodded towards Arnold, I saw him snorting and looking away from me. Looks like he still hated me. Well, not that I cared. In my eyes, he was merely putting on a show in front of Jin. Turning my attention back towards Donald, who was talking to Zach, I casually smiled as I greeted him. "Hey Donald, been a while since I've seen you." Turning around and glancing at me, Donald's casual smile faded from his face as he nodded his head. Oh, it's you." Noticing Donald's attitude, which was a stark contrast to what it was back in Hallberg, I couldn't help but tease him. I see. Now that I'm ranked higher than you, you're starting to be more polite, huh?" Hearing my remark, glaring at me, Donald raised his voice. "Do you want to fight, you bastard?" Raising my brow, I couldn't help but shake my head as I said, "You still won't stop calling me bastard. Hey, how many times did I tell you? My name is Ren. Do you want me to spell it for you? R-E-N. You think I care about your damn nom dash? Please stop." Not so far from where Donald and I were, noticing that things were about to get out of control, Amanda sighed and spoke up. Her tone was neither overbearing nor cold. She was really speechless at the moment. In a couple of minutes, they would be participating in the tryouts for the Academy tournament, and yet 2 of their members were already fighting. Were they not nervous at all? Brushing her hair to the side, Amanda curtly said, "Please, calm down, and let's start discussing our strategy." Thereafter, as she finished speaking, Amanda expectantly looked at me. Shortly after, as if mimicking Amanda, everyone else looked in my direction. Noticing everyone staring in my direction, my brow couldn't help but twitch. What's going on? Hold up, why is everyone looking at me? Unbothered by my expression, Jin looked at me and said, "Do you not have a plan?" Glancing at Jin, after a short pause, I nodded my head. "I do. Yeah, I did in fact have a plan. But the script wasn't supposed to go like this. I originally predicted for Jin to boss everyone around and tell them what to do, but to my surprise, he directly asked for my opinion. Damn, he really did mature a lot since the last time I saw him. Although I knew that he had changed, he was completely different from what he was a few months back. What in the world happened since the time I didn't see him?" Hearing my response, Jin coldly said, "Then what is the problem?" Sigh. "No problem, no problem." As an extended sigh escaped from my mouth, lowering my voice, I pondered for a few seconds before saying, "Fine, the plan is relatively simple. Give the code to me and you guys do the rest." After I finished speaking, everyone looked at me strangely. Evidently, they did not understand what I meant. Frowning, the first to voice out their confusion was Donald as he irritably asked, "What sort of plan is that? And why you?" Glancing at Donald, I raised my brow as I mockingly said, "Isn't it obvious why?" "Why?" Instead of answering immediately, I answered back with another question as I looked at everyone. "Normally, if you had the code, who would you give it to?" Hearing the question, everyone started pondering. The first one to speak up was Amanda, who carefully said, "The strongest person?" Nodding towards Amanda, I answered, "That is an option, yes, but not the ideal one." With his hand on his lips, Jin frowned as he seriously asked, "Then what is the ideal one?" Staring at Jin and the others, a faint smile appeared on my lips as I explained. "The ideal candidate would obviously be someone who could run fast or hide well. Since we will be inside of a random map, if we were to be put on flat terrain, someone who can outrun the opponent so that the other team wouldn't catch up would be the most appropriate. And if the map wasn't plain, but let's say filled with obstacles, someone that could hide from the enemy's prying eyes would be the most obvious candidate." Pausing, I looked at everyone and said, "You guys are following what I'm saying, right?" Staring at everyone, and seeing them nod in understanding, my eyes soon paused on a certain individual as I said, "Can you guys think of a certain individual in our group who best fits such criteria?" Hearing my words, soon everyone's attention turned towards Jin. With his arms crossed, a slight frown appeared on Jin's brows as he said, "So you want me to be bait?" Looking at Jin straight into the eyes, I nodded my head and bluntly said, "Yes, and you will be operating alone." I'm glad he caught on. With him being the most likely candidate for holding the code, chances were that the other team would mainly focus their attention on him. Therefore, if everyone was focused on him, with me holding the code, chances were that even if they caught Jin, by the time they realized he didn't have the code, it would have already been too late. Staring into my eyes for what felt like an eternity, Jin eventually looked away and nodded his head. "Fine." Smiling, I secretly nodded my head. With Jin listening to what I was saying, the chances of us successfully passing the tryouts increased. Not that I was worried, as originally Jin, Arnold, and Amanda made it past the tryouts. Well, although I now knew that things outside of the plot could happen, with the plot armor they had, chances were that they were very likely going to pass. As I was rejoicing at Jin's newfound attitude, Donald, who was quietly pondering for a while, suddenly frowned as he asked, "But what if they don't target Jin?" Hearing Donald's question, I secretly nodded my head. He wasn't as stupid as I thought he was. Good question, I've also thought about that. Yes, when I was coming up with the plan, I had already thought of this. With Jin being the obvious target, the other team could also think that it was a trap and decide to focus on us, which wouldn't be ideal. Fortunately, I had thought of this problem beforehand. Staring at Amanda, Donald, and Arnold, I smiled at them and said, "That's where you guys come into play." Cocking her head to the side as her black hair gently fell to her shoulders, Amanda's brows lightly frowned as she looked at Arnold and Donald. With a hint of doubt in her voice, she asked, "Us?" Nodding my head as I looked at both Amanda and Donald, I explained, "Yes, you both will always be within a 50-meter distance from Arnold. Always be 50 meters away from him. Whenever he gets into trouble, secretly help him." As Amanda listened, her brows couldn't help but knit in a deeper frown as she asked, "Why is that?" Glancing at Amanda for a brief moment, I explained, "So that it looks like Arnold is the person that holds the code." It was simple, really. If the other team thought that Jin was not the one that carried the code, naturally it would be either one of us. Since I was the one with the code, we needed to divert their attention away from me. And if we carefully made it seem like Amanda and Donald were secretly protecting Arnold from the distance, then they would instantly assume that the one carrying the code was Arnold. Therefore, with Arnold being their primary target, I would be left alone with the code, allowing me to protect the code fairly undisturbed. Finishing my explanation, I glanced at everyone and asked, "Do you understand?" Placing his hand on his chin as he pondered, Jin eventually nodded his head. "Makes sense, I'm fine with this strategy." Thereafter, hearing Jin's confirmation, everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Me too. Me too." Smiling, I looked at them and asked, "Any other questions?" Thinking for a bit, Zach, who hadn't spoken since the very beginning, looked at me and said with a hint of doubt in his voice, "What makes you so confident that they are not going to target you?" Looking back at him, I shook my head and responded, "I don't." "Then what happens if they decided to target you?" "Target me?" Smiling, I didn't respond. The answer was obvious. With Jin's arrogant character being famous throughout the whole academy, chances of me having the code were almost null to zero. In fact, I didn't even need to come up with a plan B revolving around Arnold. With Jin's character being famous, chances were that people would instantly assume he was the one holding onto the code. Still, even though I knew this, it was better to be prepared rather than being unprepared. Moreover, as we didn't know who our opponents were, it was better to not let Jin do all the work. If there was one thing I learned since being in this world, it was to always expect the worst. As I was thinking to myself, staring at me, to Jin, Arnold, and Amanda, my unresponsiveness had a completely different meaning in their eyes. As their thoughts stopped there, one frowned, one shivered, and one sighed in relief, not noticing the different emotions displayed on their faces as I was deep into my own thoughts. Staring back at Zach, I quickly added, "Either way, Zach, you and I will be responsible for finding the code from the other members." Wait, what make dash, beep. All contestants please make your way towards the virtual arena. We will be beginning with the first years. Just as I finished explaining my plan, stopping Zach mid-sentence, the loudspeaker coming from below the stadium resounded across the arena. Thereafter, hearing the announcement made by the speaker, every student wearing an azure-colored uniform headed downstairs towards the arena. Similarly, following them down with my group, I started thinking about the upcoming tryouts. With the plan set, we should be able to breeze through this. Worst case scenario, I could just expose a small portion of my strength. With 3 E-rank members in our team, apart from Kevin's team, I doubted that we could lose. Still, it was better to be safe rather than sorry. Thus, as my thoughts paused there, I quickly made my way down the stairs with my group. Chapter 142. Going down the stairs, we soon found ourselves beneath the arena grounds, inside of a large, spacious room that looked to be the size of a football stadium. Glancing around, I could not help but be amazed by what I saw. The whole room was filled with capsules, endless amounts of capsules. If I had to estimate, I would say at least over a couple hundred of them. Just imagining the costs made me shudder. Observing the capsules from the distance, I took special notice of how the capsules were arranged. The capsules were grouped together in groups of 6. They each faced outwards and were positioned in a way that they formed a circle. Behind them, large monitors with numbers displayed on the screen could be seen. Next to the capsules, people clad in white uniforms holding onto some tablets and doing regular checkups on the capsules were a common sight. Staring at the scene before me, I could not help but be amazed. So this was the virtual reality arena. It was a truly spectacular sight. The machines were far bigger and more advanced than the ones in the virtual class I took at the beginning of the year with Professor Thabot. Moreover, with them being more advanced than the ones in the virtual reality class, we did not need to wear those tight and uncomfortable suits. Everyone, please look at me for a moment. Just as I was busy admiring the underground virtual reality area, Instructor Sean, who was announcing moments before, appeared in the middle of the room as he gathered everyone's attention towards himself. Great. After seeing everyone turn their attention towards himself, with a satisfied smile on his face, Instructor Sean continued speaking. I will make this short. As most of you already know, you will soon be facing each other in the virtual world, and the game that you will be playing will be the Code Breaker game. Pausing and staring at all of the first years, Instructor Sean continued. Since I have already explained the rules of the game beforehand, I will not explain them again. This time, I will tell you a few of the things that you should be careful of. Raising one of his fingers, Instructor Sean said, "First things first, everyone that participates in the game will have their strength suppressed to G rank by default." Pausing and noticing that a commotion was about to erupt, raising his hand and speaking louder, Instructor Sean continued speaking. "Before you say anything, this was a decision that the Academy has made in the last inter-academy tournament, and there is a specific reason as to why we chose to do it that way. In short, it is so that we can see the students' actual skills, instead of just watching them dominating the opponents through ranks. This is so that we can provide a fair." As I was listening to Instructor Sean speak, a frown involuntarily appeared on my face. This completely changed the playing field. Right now, the chances of us winning diminished by a lot. Although Jin and Amanda were skilled, if the opponents played their cards well, we could very well lose this game if we were not careful enough. Still, I believe it was still safe to continue with the plan that I had previously proposed, as it did not particularly focus on brute forcing our way towards the opponent. Moreover, as soon as they would spot Jin, they would immediately realize who they were up against. After all, Jin was famous in the first years. From there, the plan should proceed as I had mentioned. Thinking thus far, I could not help but secretly sigh in relief. Good thing Jin changed. Just imagining what would have happened if he selfishly did everything by himself almost caused me to have endless headaches. Another thing that you must take notice of when in the game is that you will not know who your opponents are until the very last moment. This was decided by the Academy beforehand to make this more realistic. Because when you are fighting against opponents in real life, chances are that you will know nothing about them. As listening to Instructor Sean speaking, I could not help but nod my head. What he said was absolutely true. Unless you were actively seeking the opponent, if someone attacked you, chances are that you knew nothing about them. Thus, this was a great idea by the Academy, as it made the test more realistic. And that is why we decided to do it this way. Pausing there and staring at some of the students, who seemed to have grown more nervous due to the new developments, Instructor Sean smiled kindly and said, "Don't worry, take this as a good experience for the future. Even if you don't pass, you may use this as an experience for when you graduate from the Academy. If you get nervous from just this, then how are you going to react when you enter the real world?" Stopping there, Instructor Sean smiled and pointed towards the capsules nearby. Alright, enough said. Please make your way to your capsules. Your group and names should be on one of the monitors above the capsules. Best of luck. Finished with what he wanted to say, Instructor Sean glanced at the students for a brief moment before going back upstairs. He still needed to host the tryouts. Shortly after Instructor Sean left, all of the first years dispersed and made their way towards their designated capsules. Imitating them, I, along with my group members, started looking around and checked to see where our group was designated. As we walked around in hopes of finding our designated capsules, we had to be careful to not trip on the thick metal wires that extended from the virtual reality machines. They appeared everywhere and extended from the capsules like spider webs. Here, a couple of minutes into the search, waving his hand, Zach pointed towards a set of capsules next to him. Shortly after, as we all arrived before the capsules, an instructor wearing a white uniform came up to us. Wearing thick-framed glasses, the instructor stared at the tablet in his hand for a couple of seconds before briefly glancing at us. You guys must be the group from Class A25, correct? Nodding his head, Donald responded for the rest of us. Yes, that is correct. Moving his head down and staring at us through the upper gap of his glasses, after a couple of seconds, the instructor turned his attention back onto his tablet and proceeded to say, "Okay, please enter the virtual machines." Bwom. Shoo. Thereafter, pressing onto his tablet, steam slowly started rising from the virtual reality capsules next to us as the lid slowly lifted upwards. Seeing the capsules open, without hesitation, we quickly sat in the capsules. The capsule I was in was beside Donald and Amanda, who quickly sat down, to which I followed suit. After I comfortably positioned myself inside of my capsule, I took a deep breath. Thereafter, staring at my group members next to me for a brief moment, I carefully placed the helmet on my head. Soon my vision turned dark. Turning on the virtual reality simulation. The tryouts will begin as soon as you spawn in the map. As my vision was dark, I heard the instructor's voice ring next to my ears. Shortly after I heard the instructor's voice, I slowly lost consciousness. Simulation initiating. Best of luck. Shoo. Processing student information. Retina scan. Check. Fingerprint scan. Check. Genetic data test. Check. Loading time. 57%. 87%. 94%. User information loaded. Rank 197. Rend over. Confirm access Y or N. As I regained consciousness, opening my eyes, the first thing I saw were rows upon rows of blue texts. Thereafter, taking a minute to adjust my mind to the sudden changes, I looked through the information and pressed Y. As I had already experienced this once, I was not as overwhelmed as I was before, 4 months ago. After confirming, abruptly, a lively jingle began playing as it echoed through my ears. Soon after, the world around me started changing as buildings and roads started constructing themselves around me. Gradually, as time passed and the world around me started to become clearer, I could see the faint outline of a city appearing before me. The buildings that appeared from beneath the ground gradually started obstructing my vision. As I was watching the world around me construct, a frown soon appeared on my face. This was not a regular city. As the outline of the buildings next to me started to become more clear, I could see that they were all worn down and broken. Rubbles and broken glass appeared all over the streets, and moss and vines covered some of the buildings in the distance. This looked just like a post-apocalyptic ghost city, completely deserted and worn down, almost like Chernobyl back on Earth after the nuclear power plant incident. Looking up at the sky, I could see that the sky was covered by thick gray clouds with a sparse amount of sunlight, making its way down the abandoned city. Shoo, shoo. Shortly after, as I was staring at the city before me, appearing next to me were Arnold, Amanda, and the rest. Opening his eyes, Donald was the first to speak up as he looked around in confusion. What map is this? Glancing at Donald and then the city, with her hand on her chin, Amanda pondered for a little bit before curtly responding. Judging from the infrastructures of the buildings, it seems like we are back in the past, right after the first cataclysm. It is indeed that. Staring at Amanda, I nodded my head. Having been born in the 1980s back on Earth, I could tell that this map was set during that time as some of the infrastructures were similar to my memories of my childhood. Turning towards Jin, I nodded my head and flashed the watch on my wrist. Jin, you know what to do. Make sure you report everything that you see. Without responding, Jin nodded his head and disappeared from where he was standing. Shoo. Staring at where Jin used to be, I turned to look at Amanda and the others. We proceed as planned. If possible, try taking out your opponent when you meet them, and always make sure you keep in touch in case something goes wrong. Nodding their heads, Amanda and Donald looked at Arnold, who snorted and left in the opposite direction as Jin. It was evident that he was dissatisfied with the fact that I was the one arranging the plans. Still, since Jin was complying, he could only hold back and do as I said. Moments after I finished speaking, Donald and Amanda separated themselves from Arnold, who moved around the city by himself. Just as I had previously mentioned, they stayed within a 50-meter radius of him. Staring at Amanda, Donald, and Arnold's figures disappearing in the distance for a couple of seconds, turning my attention back towards Zach, I softly said, "All right, we should get moving too." Chapter 143. This place is fine. Entering one of the abandoned buildings with Zach, I made sure to scan the perimeter to see if anybody was there before setting up camp. After settling down, still standing, Zach looked at me in confusion as he asked, "What do we do now?" In all honesty, if not for everyone following his orders, Zack would never have let someone like Ren order him around. He really was tempted to just leave and do as he wished, but since it would incur the wrath of the other team members, he decided against doing so. Glancing at Zack from the corner of my eye and reading his thoughts, I briefly responded to him before turning my attention back towards the distance. Nothing yet. Our turn has yet to come. From the very beginning, I could tell he was dissatisfied with me. However, unfortunately for him, I really did not care. In the first place, who told him that he had to do as I said? Inwardly shaking my head and turning my attention back towards the city, I carefully observed the city from the building I was on. For now, everything was calm and quiet. However, I knew that things would soon change. Placing my hand on my chin, squinting my eyes as I stared into the distance, I fell into deep thought. According to my deduction, whoever was going to target Jin was definitely not going to be the code holder. With how skilled Jin was, sending their code holder to fight against him would be suicide, and may prove to be fruitless. Thus, it was safe to assume that whoever was going to target Jin was definitely not going to be the code holder. Preferably, I would hope that they send more than one person to pursue him, as that would cut off a lot of possibilities. But even one was enough. Couldn't be too greedy. Now, with that set, I needed to figure something out. Was the code holder going to hide? Or was he or she going to blend with the rest just like what I had done with Arnold? Thinking thus far, glancing at my watch, I immediately dialed a number. Fortunately, we were allowed to communicate with each other during the game as both teams were given access to a communication device in the form of a watch. It could not do anything else apart from that, but it saved a lot of time. Jin, can you hear me? Swish. Stealthily moving around the abandoned houses, Jin quietly scanned the perimeter. Thereafter, like a cat, Jin kept moving forward without making any sound. Fast and stealthily. Jin, can you hear me? As Jin arrived on top of one of the buildings, suddenly his watch vibrated. Briefly halting his steps and hearing Ren's voice, a slight frown appeared on Jin's face before it quickly disappeared. Tapping on the screen of his smartwatch, Jin coldly answered. Yes. All right, perfect. I need you to expose yourself so that the other group is aware of your existence. Closing his eyes, Jin did not respond immediately. Thereafter, understanding the intent behind Ren's words, Jin nodded his head. Understood. All right, perfect. Click. Turning off the watch, without giving a chance for Ren to respond, Jin quickly jumped higher until he was at the roof of the buildings. Thereafter, he jumped from one building to the other. As he moved, he made sure to be as overbearing and fearless as possible. Since he knew about his personality, if he acted according to how others thought he would, chances that they would think he was the bait would reduce. If not for the fact that he was following Ren's plan, Jin would have originally done the mission like this. After all, how could others match him in a fight? He was that confident in himself. Swish, swish. As Jin moved from one building to the other, he suddenly felt an extremely repulsive feeling well inside of his body. His mind could not help but start drifting away from the trials as a result. Shortly after, recalling something, Jin's fist clenched tightly. To think he was following someone else's order. He, Jin Horton, the proud son of the Horton family, was following someone else's order. How repulsive. Those were the words that subconsciously came out of his mouth as he kept moving forward. Never in his life had he ever had someone order him around. Never. If not for the fact that the person he was being ordered by had already beaten him, Jin was never going to follow his orders. Suddenly, as his thoughts paused there, Ren's face appeared in Jin's mind. More specifically, the cold and emotionless eyes back in Hallberg. He never forgot that moment, nor will he ever forget that day. The day where he truly felt powerless for the first time in his life. Although Jin hated Ren, that moment back in Hallberg had taught him a lesson. That was to never be too conceited, as there was always someone better than you. Still, just because he lost did not mean he feared Ren. No, that innate pride that had been engraved deeply into his body since birth could not just vanish like that. Scared over a single defeat. Pathetic. He was not as weak-willed as that. Hugh. Exhaling as turbid air escaped from his mouth, Jin accelerated as he quickly moved around the buildings. Ever since that fateful day in Hallberg, Jin had set his mind. Be it Kevin, Amanda, Melissa, or Ren, he no longer cared for them. He had realized that he was too fixated on the idea of comparing himself to others rather than just focusing on himself. Thinking of how he was currently holding back and working with the others, something that he would have never done before, Jin could not help but mutter to himself. How disgusting. He wanted nothing more but to quickly get this over with. The feeling of working with other people rather than just himself repulsed him to the maximum. The only reason he was doing this was because he believed that he could learn something from Ren. However, as he moved around the buildings, Jin could not help but feel like that was the wrong decision. How could being a bait help him in any way, shape, or form? Damn it. Gritting his teeth, Jin increased his pace even more as he overbearingly moved around the infrastructures around him. Staring at his surroundings as he moved, he coldly spat. Since my job is to attract the attention of the others, that is just what I will do. Standing on top of a building, a youth with long black hair and deep green eyes was currently staring at the city before him. With his watch close to his mouth, the youth softly muttered, "Have you spotted the enemies yet?" The youth's name was John Redgrave, and he was currently the leader of his team representing Class A04. Being the leader of his group, John took responsibility for his group, and was the one responsible for coming up with the team strategy. Currently, they were inside of what seemed to be a post-apocalyptic ghost town. Since he was not familiar with the enemy nor the environment, his first order was to split into 3 groups of 2 to scan the perimeter in hopes of finding the enemy team. He had to get a better idea of who their enemy was and their precise location. Moreover, considering the fact that everyone's strength was the same, John felt more reassured. But he still did not let his guard down. Recalling something, he softly mumbled to himself as a hint of worry appeared in his voice. I just hope we are not against those monsters from Class A25. If it was them, John was not too sure on how to proceed. Especially against the first-year rank 1, Kevin Voss. If they were up against him, he really could not foresee any chance of victory. Captain, I have spotted someone, but it is not good news. After 10 minutes of silence, John's watch vibrated. Thereafter, as he heard the message, John's heart could not help but sink. Could it be that they were truly against Kevin? Was his luck really that bad? Expecting the worst, John looked at the watch and softly said, "What is the bad news?" After a short 5-second pause that seemed to last for an eternity, the voice on the other side of the watch responded. "It is Jin Horton." Hearing the name, John froze for a second. Thereafter, a frown emerged in his brows as he thought for a bit. After a couple of minutes, the frown on John's brows lessened as he thought to himself, if it is Jin Horton, then things may actually be easier than I thought. Shortly after, as the gear of John's mind moved, a smile appeared on his face as he quickly turned on his watch and sent a few commands. "All right, I want you to track him from far. Make sure you keep a close eye on him, and do not for a single second lose sight of him. Understood?" Roger. Click. Thereafter, turning off his watch, a smile appeared on John's face as he thought to himself, we might be able to win this. Chapter 144. Receiving words of Jin's sighting in the distance, John's first thought was to immediately send everyone and attack him. The reason was obvious. Considering Jin's personality and strength, the most obvious candidate for being the code holder was him. With his strength and agility, he could just outrun everyone. However, after a bit of thinking, John refrained from doing so. This could very well be a smokescreen. Although that was the most obvious course of action, Jin was not stupid. He could very well be trying to act as bait. Biting his nails out of habit, John thought to himself, is Jin really the one holding onto the code? That was the most logical conclusion John could think of. After all, Jin was famous for being proud and arrogant. He being the code holder was a very real possibility. However, John still hesitated. Eventually, he shook his head. He needed more information before deciding on the right course of action. Beep. Just as John was immersed in his own thoughts, his watch vibrated. Thereafter, John heard one of his teammates' voices coming from the speaker of the watch. "Captain, spotted someone on the west side." Hearing this piece of news, John's brows furrowed slightly as he carefully asked, "Dante, do you know the identity of the individual?" "Unsure." "Wait, I am getting a closer look." "Yes, be careful and do not get spotted. Make sure you keep a safe distance from them." Nodding his head, John warned Dante, his teammate, in advance. If the other team found out that they had a visual of them, their advantage would immediately disappear. They had to be extra careful. Roger that. Turning off his watch as he waited for Dante to respond, John's brows furrowed as he fell into deep thought. Before the tryouts started, John had looked through the list of students that he had to watch out for. Therefore, as soon as he knew Jin was one of the people present, he already knew the general composition of the opposite team. From what he recalled, the other team comprised of Jin, Amanda, Arnold, Donald, Zach, and Ren. Apart from Jin, Amanda, and Arnold, John was not very wary of the other 3. To him, they were extras, nothing worth taking note of. Therefore, his current focus was now on finding out the whereabouts of Amanda and Arnold. Once he had a read on them, he could come up with an appropriate plan. Beep. A couple of minutes since Dante last contacted him, John suddenly felt a vibration on his wrist. Quickly turning on the watch, John seriously asked, "You have got something?" "Captain, Dante here. I have got a visual. According to what I can see, Arnold is walking by himself." "Arnold? Wait, are you sure?" "Affirmative." Hearing Arnold's name being mentioned, rather than being happy, John's frown deepened. That was because he was not with Jin. Since he had investigated the group in advance, he knew who Arnold was. Jin's lackey. The real question was, why was he by himself? However, before he could think any further, Dante's voice raised a few pitches resulting in John snapping out of his thoughts. "No, wait, Captain. It seems like there is someone else a fair distance from him. No, there are 2 people quietly moving next to him. If not for the fact that I am using my skill, I do not think I would have spotted them. Can you get a visual?" "I am not sure because I am too far, but I see the silhouette of a girl and a boy." "A girl and a boy? Are you sure?" "Affirmative." "Cool. All right, that is enough. Keep a close watch and make sure you do not lose sight of them." Click. Turning off his watch, John's mind raced. Since there was only one girl in the group, John could already figure out the identity of one of the 2 individuals around Arnold. Amanda Stern, someone that was on par with the likes of Jin. However, John was not too worried. Since everyone's strength was the same, it should not be too difficult to defeat her if they ganged up on her. Moreover, she was an archer. If they ambushed her from a close distance, she was probably the easiest member to defeat. "Captain, it is me, Roman. I have got a visual on the other 2 members." Just as a plan started formulating in John's mind, he suddenly heard another one of his teammates contact him. Pausing his thoughts, he carefully asked, "Where are they?" They are at the center making their way towards the pillar. Towards the pillar? Hearing the piece of news, placing his hand on his chin, John fell into deep thought. Thereafter he smiled. All right, I have got the gist of the situation. Clenching his fist tightly, John quickly ordered, send Sierra and Bob on the east side where Jin is. Tell them that all they have to do is buy time. Do not let them fight against Jin at any cost. The rest go attack the trio in the distance. Understood. But what about the other two members of the opposite team? Do not worry about them. They are merely cannon fodder. Even if they are aware that their teammates are being ambushed, they won't be able to make it in time to reinforce them. Humph. Those two were obviously ordered to go to the pillar and wait there for them to place the code once they defeated the other team. How arrogant of them. Their intention was obvious from the start. Thus, John did not even bother giving those two a spare thought as he chose to directly split into a group of two. One to hold back Jin, the other to attack and snatch the code from Arnold. Snorting, a smile appeared on John's face. Your arrogance is going to be your downfall. To think that they were so confident in their win that they just directly sent two of their members towards his team pillar, which was a fair distance from where Jin and Arnold currently were. By the time his group attacked Arnold's group and Jin, it would take too much time for them to assist them. Furthermore, even if Arnold did not have the code, with 3 members gone, victory was still well within his grasp. The more John thought about it, the more his heart started beating due to the excitement. Victory never seemed so close in John's eyes. John, will we be all right? As John was starting to gain more and more confidence in his deduction, he suddenly heard Dante's worried voice coming from the speaker of the watch. Feeling the worry in Dante's voice, John smiled as he reassured him. Don't worry, although I have the code, I will be careful when engaging against them. This is going to be a 4 versus 3 scenario. No matter how strong they are, with our strengths being relatively similar, we should be able to defeat them quickly. Moreover, we will be ambushing them. If we catch them off guard, chances of us winning would be increasing exponentially. I understand. Click. Turning off his watch, John stared into the east side as he thought to himself. Oh Jin. Although you are talented, it seems like you are not very good at coming up with strategies. I guess you only amount to this much. Pausing his thoughts there, John smiled as he quickly jumped off the building he was on and sped towards the west side where Arnold and his group were. This was going to be his victory. 15 minutes, 31 seconds. 15 minutes, should be about time. Checking my watch as I moved forward, my footsteps halted. Thereafter, as I looked at Zach who was behind me for a brief moment, I tapped on my watch and contacted Jin. If my guess was not wrong, the other team should have already made their move. Jin, what is the situation? 2 on me. As I thought. They really had made their move. All right. Click. Turning off my watch as I nodded my head, I quickly got in contact with Amanda to get a read on their situation. Amanda, what is the situation with you guys? After a short pause, Amanda's crisp and pleasant voice echoed from the speakers of the watch. The loud sound of metal clashing could be heard in the background. 4 people on us. All right. Click. Turning off my watch, I sighed in relief as a smile appeared on my face. It seems like they have taken the bait. Turning my attention back towards Zach, I pointed towards the large black metal pillar in the distance and ordered, Zach, go to the pillar and wait for me to tell you the code. Taken aback, Zach looked at me. His voice could not help but raise a few pitches as he asked, what? Why me? What about you? Deeply staring at Zach straight into his eyes, I answered him in a firm tone. Just do it, trust me. Regarding me, just go, you do not have to worry. I will take responsibility for everything. Staring at me for a couple of seconds, only after Zach heard that I was going to take full responsibility, did he finally relent and nod his head. Shortly after, just like I had ordered him, he made his way towards the pillar in the distance. All right, I will do it. A moment after Zach left, turning around, I quickly activated my movement art, drifting steps, and took a step forward. Thereafter, my speed increased with each step I took. Feeling the virtual wind brush past my skin, a faint smile appeared on my lips as I quickly moved towards where Arnold and Amanda were. If my deductions were correct, I was currently being underestimated. Just like I had predicted, they probably assumed Arnold was the code holder. Moreover, if my guess was not wrong, the reason why they sent no one to obstruct Zach and I was because they thought nothing of us. They were confident in defeating Arnold before we could arrive and reinforce them. The more I thought about it, the funnier the situation became. Rather than being angry, I was actually quite relieved. This just meant that no one was paying attention to me. That was good. This was exactly what I wanted. Low-key. Plus, if they actually thought I could not help Arnold and the rest on time, they had grossly miscalculated. I had already predicted this scenario beforehand. Since the very start, they were playing within the palm of my hand. Chapter 145. Swish. Quietly moving around the buildings, Amanda made sure to always be within a 100 to a 50-meter radius of Arnold. Just as Ren had told her, along the way, she and Donald made sure to only subtly hide their presence. They hid just enough so that the opposing team could spot them if they used a skill or looked carefully. This was one of the things Ren had specifically told her to do. Honestly, this was much harder than Amanda thought it was. If she was too obvious, the other team would notice that something was wrong. If she hid too well, the other team would not find her and thus be unable to deduce that Arnold was the code holder. What a troubling situation. Still, since Amanda said she would do it, she tried her best. Gripping tightly onto the handle of her bow, Amanda glanced at Arnold below her. She quietly climbed higher up into the buildings. However, just as she was about to reach the top of the building, she sensed something. Amanda shifted her head to the right, as the silver body of a blade flew past her. Swish! Narrowly avoiding the blade by a hair's breadth, Amanda suddenly somersaulted backward. The tip of a spear penetrated the area she was previously in. Ka-cha! Whilst still in the air, with a cold face, Amanda extended the string of her bow. Shortly after, 2 blue translucent arrows materialized on her bow. She caught sight of 2 individuals, one with a spear and one with a blade. She soon released the string of the bow. Swish! Swish! Like a bullet, the 2 arrows split the air. They quickly made their way towards the 2 individuals. Clank! Clank! Staring at the incoming arrows, the spear user stood in front of the individual holding the blade. Using the body of the spear, he quickly rotated it in his hand as a whistle arose. Thereafter, the loud sound of metal clashing reverberated across the surroundings. Coo! Taking a couple of steps back, the spear user could not help but grunt. He felt the impact of the arrows clashing against his spear. Staring at Amanda in the distance, the spear user, John Redgrave, could not help but say, "Damn, you are just as strong as the rumors say." Softly landing on the ground, Amanda coldly glanced at the 2 individuals before her. Skilled. That was the first thought that came into Amanda's mind as she stared at the 2 of them. Although the clash had only lasted for a brief moment, the duo was definitely not simple. From the way they coordinated and how they managed to quickly react to her arrows, they were clearly talented. Unbothered by Amanda's unresponsiveness, John stared at the youth next to him. The youth wore small-framed glasses and had short blonde hair. John moved forward as he once again thrust his spear towards Amanda. "Dante, cover me." Thereafter, synchronizing with John, the other youth called Dante leaped forward like a leopard. He quickly arrived beside Amanda. Ka-cha! With John's spear aimed at Amanda's face, Dante followed up by slashing towards her waist. Like this, Amanda suddenly found herself in a disadvantageous situation as the flow of the battle was currently in the duo's hands. Although she was avoiding most of the attacks coming from the duo thanks to her flexibility and agility, from time to time, she would use the frame of her bow to defend. Some of the incoming attacks resulted in the loud sound of metal clashing. Clank! Clank! The loud sound of metal clashing resounded across the space where Amanda was. "You are pretty good, but for how long can you keep up?" Staring at Amanda, John smiled as he increased the intensity of his attacks. Dante followed suit. Thus, for the next minute or so as Amanda fought with the duo, the longer they fought, the more she found herself at a disadvantage. Her hands started to become numb with every single clash. Frowning, Amanda could only grit her teeth. She tried her best to dodge and counterattack whenever she had the opportunity. Swish! Swish! Although Amanda was strong, because she was currently fighting in close quarters, her real advantage was taken away from her. It seems like her opponents knew her weakness well. Swish! As she once again narrowly avoided the spear and blade coming from her front and left side, Amanda quickly glanced towards Arnold and Donald in the distance. She wanted to see how their situation was, and what she saw made her heart sink. Both Arnold and Donald were currently in a similar situation to hers. Although it seemed like Arnold wanted to help her, his opponent seemed to be constantly harassing him from the distance. It had to be noted that the opponent Arnold was currently facing was a bow user just like Amanda. Arnold's worst enemy and weakness. Although the archer that was attacking Arnold was nowhere near as skilled as Amanda, he was effectively kiting him. Because Arnold did not have any long-ranged attacking methods, he was currently unable to do anything. Thus, although Arnold was not hurt from any of the arrows coming his way, he was unable to come to help her. Seeing this, Amanda glanced to her right in Donald's direction. She saw him fighting against another person. His situation seemed to be a little bit better than Arnold's. However, it still was not good as it seemed like he was evenly matched with the opponent. The battle would definitely not be decided anytime soon. Ka-cha! Thrusting his spear toward Amanda, John shouted, "Where are you looking around for when your opponents are right in front of you?" Narrowly avoiding the spear, Amanda turned right as a blade slashed in the direction of where she was previously standing. Clank! Clank! As John and Dante once again increased the intensity of their attacks, Amanda briefly glanced at Arnold and Donald below. A triumphant smirk appeared on John's lips as he looked at Amanda. "Everything is going just as planned. Your teammates will not be able to help you anytime soon. Moreover, with Jin and your reinforcements being too far from your location, the only option you have is to lose." The more he fought, the greater the excitement John felt. He was finally going to do it. He was finally going to beat the arrogant Jin Horton and the cold Princess Amanda. He was going to accomplish a feat that no one thought he could have ever achieved before. The more he thought about it, the more excited John became. After this, everyone will definitely remember who he was. John Redgrave. Coldly staring at John, Amanda indifferently muttered, "You talk too much." Bam! Seeing that the current situation could not go on, Amanda stomped her feet on the ground. Fine miniature crevices appeared on the ground beneath her foot. Amanda distanced herself from the duo. Thereafter, pulling the string of her bow towards her lips, a blue hue surrounded her body. Bwom! Shortly after, in a matter of a couple of seconds, the glow around her body intensified at an alarming rate. She was prepared to end things quickly. Staring at Amanda in the distance, opening his eyes wide, John cursed as he shouted, "Shit, she is using a skill, stop her." Coldly looking at the duo, Amanda softly said, "Too late." Swish! Releasing the string of the bow, Amanda's arrow shot down like a comet hurtling towards the duo. The arrow's velocity reached its limits. Even though Amanda's rank was suppressed to G rank, that did not change her proficiency in her arts nor her skills. E rank Apollo's Descent, a skill that enables the user to conglomerate the mana in the atmosphere towards the tip of her arrow. It releases an arrow that could devastate anything within its vicinity upon contact. High mana consumption. Crap. Staring at the arrow hurtling towards them like a fallen star, John could not help but curse out loud. Thereafter, seeing that he could not do anything about the situation, he gritted his teeth. He briefly looked at Dante before softly saying, "Dante, you know what to do." Staring at John, a faint smile appeared on Dante's lips before he quickly ran towards the arrow. As he moved closer towards the arrow, he could not help but laugh out loud as he looked at John before shouting, "Once this is over, you better buy me dinner at the restaurant of my choice or you, KAA." Thereafter, as Dante moved towards the arrow, a massive yellow hue revolved around his body. It created some form of shield around him. Shortly after, before he could finish speaking, John suddenly saw Dante's body colliding with the arrow. Boom! As the arrow came into contact with Dante's body, a huge explosion reverberated across the surroundings. The windows and the already worn-down buildings started crumbling down. Standing on the ground, John found himself completely unharmed as the area he was in was completely unscathed. At least for a couple of seconds. Shortly after, John saw Dante's body slowly turn into light particles as he disappeared into the air. "Your teammate Dante has died." Gritting his teeth, ignoring the blue text that appeared in his vision, John tried his best to ignore the situation. He activated his movement art. Thereafter, he appeared right next to Amanda and thrust his spear towards her. Kacha, ha, caught off guard, barely reacting on time, Amanda managed to block the attack using her bow. However, due to the sheer amount of force and strength put into the attack, Amanda's body flew and crashed against a wall. Bam! Feeling her back crash against the hard wall, Amanda could not help but groan out loud as she let go of her bow. Coo! A couple of seconds after she hit the wall, letting out another pained groan, Amanda was left in a daze. As her eyes regained a bit of clarity, she stared at her bow that was a few meters away from her. Amanda tried to move towards it. However, before she could get close to it, a foot stepped on it and kicked it towards the opposite direction of where she was. Her heart sank. Not so fast. Arriving before Amanda, after he made sure to kick her bow as far away from her as possible, John ferociously glared at her with the tip of his spear pointed toward her face. "It is over." Staring at the sharp tip of the spear, Amanda froze on the spot. Thereafter, understanding the situation, Amanda lowered her head in defeat. She had failed. Although this was not the first time Amanda had failed in her life, the bitter aftertaste of her loss made her unable to say anything. She was too arrogant. Never had she expected her opponent to willingly sacrifice one of his teammates just to defeat her. She was too complacent and arrogant. She had let her achievements get to her. Had this been a real battle, she would have died for real. As her thoughts paused there, Amanda closed her eyes and waited for the opponent to finish her. Ignoring Amanda, John turned around and glanced below him. He soon caught sight of Arnold and Donald still being in the same situation as before. "Humph, it is over." Turning his attention back towards Amanda, who still had her eyes closed, John strengthened his grip on the spear. Thereafter, he slowly started speaking. As he spoke, his voice became louder with each word. "You see, we may not be as talented as you guys are, but that does not mean we do not want to win. You probably think we are crazy, sacrificing one of our teammates just to win against you guys. But that does not matter. This is the drive that we lower-ended people have. We will do anything in our power to win. You and Jin's arrogance is what caused your downfall. Blame yourselves for losing." As he spoke, staring at Amanda, who had her eyes closed throughout the whole time, John realized that his opponent was not listening. Thus, raising his spear in the air, John prepared to finish off Amanda. This is the end for. Bam! However, just as John was about to thrust his spear towards Amanda, in the distance, a loud explosion reverberated across the surroundings. Thereafter, appearing next to Donald, Ren's smiling figure could be seen. He was holding onto a youth by the edge of his collar. He soon turned into light particles. "Your teammate Nicholas has died." Briefly staring at Arnold and Amanda, Ren could not help but say, am I perhaps interrupting?" Chapter 146. Am I perhaps interrupting? As light yellow particles flew in the air, I stared at Arnold and Amanda in the distance. Soon, my eyes interlocked with Amanda's. Noticing her situation, my brows slightly furrowed. The situation was a lot worse than I had imagined. According to my prediction, considering her skills, she should have been evenly matched against her opponents. Yet, why was she on the ground on the verge of losing? Waking up from his stupor, staring at me, John flusteredly said as his mind raced. You, who are you? What is going on? How did he make it all the way here from the center of the map? According to his calculations, it would have taken 10 minutes to make it from there to here from the center of the map with a decent movement art. Yet, not even 5 minutes after they ambushed Arnold's group, reinforcements had already come. What was going on? Ignoring John, who was currently flustered, Amanda's eyes interlocked with mine. Thereafter, without me needing to say anything, Amanda capitalized on the moment when John was distracted due to my appearance. She quickly moved her head away from the tip of his spear and dashed towards where her bow was located. Where do you think you are going?" Noticing Amanda's action, recollecting himself and glaring at her, John quickly raised his spear. He prepared to thrust it at her exposed back. Ka-cha. Hearing the sound of the air being split due to the spear thrust, Amanda did not stop moving. She knew that Ren had her back. And she was not wrong. Swish. Just as the spear was about to stab her right in the back, pointing in her direction from the opposite building, a translucent yellow ring quickly headed in her direction. It directly stopped right before the tip of the spear. Clank. A shockwave swept the surroundings as the ring came in contact with the tip of the spear. Debris and dust flew everywhere as a consequence of the impact. Not long after, as the ring and the spear were locked in a stalemate, the ring slowly lost its luster. The spear soon broke through it. However, it was already too late. Picking up her bow, Amanda quickly turned around. With an arrow materializing in her hand, without hesitation, she quickly pulled the string of her bow until it touched her lips before releasing it. Swish. Like a shooting star, the arrow coursed through the air as it hurtled in John's direction at an unimaginable speed. It was so fast that a blue line could be seen tracing the path of where the arrow traveled. Shit. Opening his eyes wide, John tried his best to evade the arrow. However, it was already too late. Brushing past the body of the spear, the arrow quickly pierced through John's right chest area. Thereafter, John found himself helplessly thrown all the way to the other side of the building as his body crashed against one of the walls. Bam! Coo! As his back crashed against the wall, John could not help but groan out loud as spit escaped from his mouth. His mind blanked for a couple of seconds. Coo! A couple of seconds after John collided against the wall, as his mind regained some clarity, he heard the sound of soft footsteps headed towards his direction. Step, step. Walking in John's direction as she coldly looked at him, Amanda's brows were tightly knit. She was not happy. Although she had won, that did not change the fact that she had still lost moments before. Staring at Ren standing on the opposite building to hers, Amanda did not say anything. Had he not come on time, she would have already lost. But that was not what made her bitter. What made her bitter was the fact that everything went according to Ren's plan, and yet she still lost. She had been warned beforehand of such a situation happening. He had specifically told her that she would be attacked first, and that at least 2 people were going to attack her. She knew, and yet her arrogance led to her downfall. Ren had told her to just stall for time, yet she did the opposite. She thought that she could win, but it seems like she was wrong. She was still too naive. Staring at John who was right before her, Amanda's feet paused. She still had a lot to learn. I'm possible. Snapping Amanda out of her thoughts was John's angry yet bitter voice. With his arms down, John weakly looked up towards Amanda. Thereafter, shifting his head to the right, John found a tangible blue arrow puncturing his body, right where his heart was. Shortly after, to his sadness and bitterness, John found his body slowly turn into yellow particles. Cough. As he watched his body turn into particles, coughing a couple of times, John could not help but softly mutter in a bitter tone. Cough. I'm possible. How could I have lost? Everything went according to my plan. It should have been perfect, yet why am I losing? What happened? His plan should have been perfect. He was so close to beating Amanda, and from there, winning the whole game. He was going to be hailed as a hero right after this. He could have already imagined his whole class looking at him in reverence once he returned triumphantly. Yet, just when his dream was about to come into fruition, appearing out of nowhere and foiling everything was the youth standing in the opposite building. Turning his head to the right, with jet black hair and deep blue eyes, the youth in the opposite building was currently aiding Arnold. Arnold, with the help of his strange rings that stopped his spear attack previously, managed to close the distance with his team member, the bow user. Seeing this, John knew that they had lost. With one last struggle, staring at the youth who had jet black hair and blue eyes, John raised his voice as he weakly shouted. Tell me, how did you make it here this quick? He had to know. He wanted to know how he was defeated. His plan should have been perfect, yet at the very last moment, he lost. Just where did he miscalculate? Hearing John's voice, turning my attention back towards him, I looked at him strangely. Haven't you ever heard of something called a movement art? Well, that was only part of the reason as to why I managed to aid Amanda, and the rest quickly. Although yes, my movement art was indeed the reason as to why I made it here this fast, it was not the most critical point. Since I had predicted the opponent's decision beforehand, just when we spawned in this map, I had already told Amanda and the others the area in which they were to move. Like this, I did not need to go to the trouble of looking for them on this enormous map as I already had an idea of which area they were going to be in. Moreover, as they were fighting, all I needed to do was head in the direction of where the sound of them fighting was coming from to get an accurate location of where they were. This allowed me to save a lot of time. Though I really do have to say, our opponents were not half bad. Although they had moved according to my wishes, I did not expect them to be this strong. I was genuinely impressed. You dash. Unsatisfied with the answer, John was about to rebuke. But just as he was about to speak up, his body suddenly turned into light particles, before a blue text appeared in front of his eyes. You have died. Thereafter, as John's body disappeared, what replaced it was a white card that emanated a golden hue. Swish. Subsequently, bending over and picking up the card, after a brief glance, Amanda flicked her wrist and threw the card in my direction. Thanks. Catching the card, I quickly looked through the contents of the card. Shortly after, turning on my watch, I called Zach, who should have been waiting near the pillar. Hey Zach, are you there? After a short pause, Zach responded. Yeah, I am currently standing in front of the pillar. Do you have the code? Yup, it is 2041689. 204 1, 6, 8, 9. Yup, alright, I am putting it in. Click. After telling Zach the code, turning off the call, I quickly glanced at the time. 5 minutes and 36 seconds. 5 minutes to spare. Not bad. Just in the nick of time. Had I come a little bit later, this would have ended in a draw. Smiling, I quickly tapped on the screen of my watch and called Jin. Since I did not get notified of his death, he should still be fine, no? On the opposite side of where Ren was located, in the eastern area, feeling his watch vibrate, Jin heard Ren's voice coming out from the speaker of his watch. Jin, how is the situation going for you? Hugh. Exhaling, Jin stared at the ground beneath him where two bodies slowly turned into particles. Raising his wrist near his mouth, he coldly said, "Done." After a short pause, Ren's voice could be heard echoing from the speaker of his watch. "All right, good job. We are done on our side too." Click. Turning off his watch and staring at the post-apocalyptic world before him, after a couple of seconds, Jin slowly saw it crumble before his eyes. Thereafter, a blue text appeared in front of him. "Congratulations, your team has successfully inserted the code. You win." Staring at the blue text for a couple of seconds, clenching his teeth, a curse escaped from his mouth. Shit. Although he won, Jin was not happy. In fact, he felt repulsed by the blue text before him. This just did not feel right to him. Before, whenever he won, he felt thrilled. Beating his opponents alone with his absolute strength felt thrilling to him. Alone. Yes, he had always done things alone before. He had always crushed his opponents through brute strength and by himself. Why did he suddenly change? Since when had he started working with others? Why could he not just directly crush his opponents like before instead of resorting to some petty strategy or scheme? Clenching onto his clothes tightly, Jin gnashed his teeth. What was this feeling he was experiencing? How disgusting. Chapter 147. Fa. As the top of the capsule opened and steam slowly rose in the air, I steadily stood up and stretched my neck. Frowning slightly, I could not help but think to myself, did I perhaps overdo it? Interlocking my fingers and raising my hands in the air as I stretched my body to increase the blood circulation, I looked back at the game that we had just played. Although we won, I was not happy. This game once again shed light on the things that I had to work on. Yes, everything went according to how I predicted it would go. At least on how the opposite team behaved, not so much on my side. Turning my head around and briefly glancing at Amanda, who had her head held down, I softly said to her, "You did good." Raising her head slightly and staring at me, Amanda weakly nodded her head and got out of the capsule. Subsequently, she walked towards the exit of the virtual reality grounds. Staring at Amanda's back, sighing inwardly, I did not say anything else. It was evident that she held herself accountable for almost losing. In reality, it was my fault. It was me. I had made a couple of miscalculations in my plans. Although I did not place much hope in Amanda beating two guys, I did not expect her to downright almost lose. The plan was for her to hold them back. I thought that she could have accomplished such a task considering her strength, but I was wrong. Perhaps I was too confident in her, or perhaps I was too inexperienced. In the end, the plan had almost failed. Looking back at it now, there were a lot of things that I had not taken into consideration when coming up with the strategy. Things such as the opposing team's strength, teammate mentality, the synergy between members, the synergy between opposite team members, opposing team composition, and so on. I had neglected a lot of factors. In the end, there was still a lot of room for me to improve as a person before I could confidently be able to strategize or scheme without any loopholes in my thinking. Still, I was not discouraged. This served as a good lesson for future plans and strategies. It was a good reference point for me in the future, when I planned on coming up with similar strategies and plans. The more mistakes I made, the more I learned. It was just who I was. I was not born perfect. Just like most humans, I was prone to failure. It was normal. It was what made me human. However, it was also from those failures that I learned to grow and improve. Mistakes were fine. As long as the mistakes I made were not the same mistakes that I had made before, it meant I was growing. And only when I no longer repeated any of my previous mistakes, as well as made any new mistakes, that I knew that I had finally matured. Yawning out loud, I took a step out of the capsule. As I did, I swore to myself, next time, I will not make the same mistake again. Next time, I will make sure to thoroughly crush my opponent, with the lowest possible percentage of failure. Inside a private room made out of glass that overlooked the arena grounds below, multiple screens displaying different battles could be seen inside of the room. Standing behind the screens, a group of around 10 adults were currently intently staring at the screens before them with different emotions displayed on their faces. How did he do that? Did you see that? Check him out. This is not bad. The instructors present were each selected beforehand by the academy to assess the students and determine who was qualified for participating in the tournament. Obviously, in order to remove any bias, the instructors present in the room all came from different departments and did not teach any of the first years. If one looked closely, although there were multiple screens before them, everyone's attention was currently gathered towards one specific monitor. More specifically, towards a certain youth displayed on the monitor. From time to time, with every second they spent watching the youth, some of the instructors could not help themselves as they excitedly whispered to the person next to them. Their voices carried a myriad of emotions, from disbelief to shock, surprise, envy, and much, much more. Everyone was stunned. How is that even possible? He is amazing. To think that not only his rank is high, but his proficiency in his arts too. When I was his age back then, I was not even close to his level. Every single one of the instructors present could not take their eyes off of the youth on the screen, as he battled against 3 opponents at the same time. Each time the youth hacked or slashed his sword, an instructor would let out an involuntary gasp of amazement. Amazing. Such high proficiency. What an unbelievable talent. In between each sword strike, the youth's sword would fluently link with his next move, revealing no gap in his swordsmanship. His every sword strike was both gentle and overbearing, and each time his sword clashed against one of his opponents, they would stumble a couple of steps back with a look of disbelief on their faces. To the instructors, more than this being a battle, it looked more like a performance to them. His swordsmanship was simply too good. The youth on the monitor was Kevin Voss. If there was one thing that every one of the instructors present in the room understood from watching him fight, it was that he had put an endless amount of blood, sweat, and tears into polishing his swordsmanship up to this point. Regardless of how talented someone was, unless they practiced hard, they were never going to have such refined and polished swordsmanship. Moreover, from the way he was fighting, it was evident that he was very experienced in combat. What a truly talented youth. Standing at the forefront of the instructors present in the room, a rather old yet imposing man stood with his hands behind his back. His deep and hazy eyes would alternate between different screens at the same time until finally, his eyes focused on 2 particular screens. One displaying Kevin fighting, and another one that was currently focused on a handsome youth with blonde hair wielding 2 daggers, one in each hand. The blonde youth was currently fighting against 2 students, and similarly to Kevin, he was dominating his opponents. However, unlike Kevin, who was suppressing his opponents through his amazing sword technique, the blonde youth had a completely different fighting style. His figure would constantly melt within the shadows and reappear behind his opponents at lightning-fast speeds that made it hard for them to fight back. It was almost a one-sided beatdown. His speed was something that most of the people present in the room took notice of. Just the way he moved in between opponents made some of the instructors present show similar reactions to Kevin. He was brilliant. While watching the monitor displaying the blonde youth fighting against 2 opponents, the scenario suddenly changed, and the old man's eyes were immediately attracted towards a certain youth displayed on the screen. Who is he? Turning around and pointing towards the second monitor, the old man, Charles Mandengrove, one of the main people in charge of assessing whether students had the qualifications to enter the tournament or not, looked towards his left where a young man with a gray suit stood. Without beating around the bush, pointing towards the monitor, Charles once again asked, "Tell me who that youth is." Glancing at Charles, the assistant leaned closer and carefully asked, "Who?" "That youth on screen 9. Without looking at the monitor, and remembering which group was being displayed on monitor 9, the assistant instinctively responded, "That is Jin Horton, sir." Shaking his head and pointing towards the monitor, Charles's deep voice faintly echoed into the assistant's ears. "No, not that youth. The youth with black hair and blue eyes that is on the screen right now." Taken aback and staring at monitor 9 where a youth with black hair and blue eyes stood, the assistant made an awkward smile as he turned on his tablet. Thereafter, after a couple of seconds, he soon found a picture that matched that of the youth on the screen and slowly said, "Student rank 197, Ren Dover." Staring at Ren, Charles's attention was drawn towards the strange rings that he controlled. Out of curiosity, he asked, "What art is he practicing?" Tapping once again on the tablet in his hands and scrolling through a large number of data, after a couple of minutes, the assistant spoke. Cross-referencing with the lock database, the student seems to be using Ring of Vindication and Drifting Steps, both 3-star manuals. According to the data, Ring of Vindication, although rated 3 stars in terms of defense, can be argued to be a 4-star. However, because of the lack of offensive abilities, and by how hard it is to practice, it was rated to be 3 stars. Regarding Drifting Steps, it is a fairly decent movement art that is not suited for combat, but rather traveling at fast speeds. Frowning slightly, stroking his short gray beard, Charles faintly nodded his head in understanding as he softly muttered to himself, "Ring of Vindication and Drifting Steps? 3-star. I guess it makes sense now. What is the student talent assessment?" Hearing this part of the question, with an awkward smile on his face, the assistant softly said, "Talent assessment D rank." Hearing the D rank talent assessment, Charles deeply stared at the monitor for a couple of seconds before he stopped speaking. Thereafter, a couple of seconds after receiving word of the youth's talent, one word escaped from his mouth as he stared at the youth on the screen. Pity. Charles truly did feel like it was a pity. Although the youth was not as outstanding as some of the other youths he had seen on the screen, his appearance alone shifted the balance of the situation. From the way he first took out one of the opponents by surprise to then distracting another one and covering for his teammate, it truly was a pity that he was only ever going to achieve D rank in his life. He was without a doubt talented. Having seen many youths in his stay at the lock, Charles was sure about his judgment. However, in the end, such a youth would forever be forgotten due to the insurmountable wall known as talent. A true pity. Inwardly sighing to himself and staring at his assistant next to him, after pondering for a couple of seconds, Charles softly said, "Still, place his name in the name of students who passed the tryouts. Though his talent is bad, that doesn't really matter in the first year. He should be decent enough for the rookie games." "Understood." Faintly nodding his head, without questioning Charles's decision, the assistant tapped on the profile of the student and dragged it towards one of the folders that said eligible. Chapter 148. Donna's office. Section B. Sitting at her desk, Donna swiped her hand to the right to look through the battle videos of the Inter Academy tryouts that happened today. Although she had spectated the whole thing through the monitors displayed in the arena, she only saw it once and could not properly analyze her students' performance. Overall, she was generally satisfied with both teams from her class. Both teams won, and Donna was naturally happy. However, being happy did not mean she was totally satisfied with everyone's performance. As she reviewed the videos, Donna was especially disappointed with two people, Amanda and Emma. They both performed at standards far below what they were truly capable of. Amanda made a series of irrational choices, whilst Emma was being completely overshadowed by Kevin, letting him do everything. There were times where she could have helped him and ended the battle faster, but she just dully stood by the side and allowed Kevin to do his thing. Disappointing. Replaying the video over and over again, those were the words that came out of Donna's mouth as she stared at Kevin's team. It was a truly disappointing sight. Aside from Kevin, his whole team was fairly disappointing. It was understandable for Melissa, as she did not particularly specialize in combat, but the others only performed satisfactorily at best. Satisfactorily. To Donna, it just seemed more of a one-man show rather than a team performance. Aside from Kevin, all the 5 other members had to do was take care of the remaining 3 people on the opposite team, and yet, Kevin managed to beat his opponents faster than them. Aside from satisfactorily, what other words could she have used to best describe how she felt as she watched the match? Donna sighed out loud and replayed the other team's match video. As she watched, her mood brightened up a little. The second team was a lot better regarding team performance, however, they almost came close to losing at a certain point. Had Amanda died, the situation would have turned in the opposing team's favor. Fortunately, things did not turn out that way. That was because of one student. Staring at Ren's figure in the holographic video before her, Donna's lips curved slightly. With her hand supporting the side of her cheek, Donna softly muttered, "It seems like I will soon be holding on to my end of the bargain." At around the same time Donna was reviewing the team performance in her office, at the Leviathan Building training grounds. Standing with her back straight and her bow drawn, Amanda's eyes remained fixed on the targets that were distanced 500 meters away from her. The targets standing on the opposite side of her comprised a large black box, with 10 evenly spaced concentric rings that signified different points for the arrows to hit. Squinting her eyes slightly and staring at the target before her, a blue arrow appeared on the tip of her fingers as a blue hue of magical energy slowly started pulsating out of her body. Hue. Taking a deep breath and aiming at the target in the distance, Amanda slowly released the string of her bow. As if the arrow had never been there, it disappeared from her hand. Swoosh. A whistling sound arose in the training grounds as the arrow coursed through the air at an unimaginable speed. Because of how fast the arrow was, a translucent blue line tracing the arrow's path could be seen in the air. Bam. Seconds after the arrow left Amanda's bow, appearing right before the target, the arrow hit the target straight in the middle, as its body directly dug itself into the target. As if the target was made out of cotton, like a piece of gum, the target stretched all the way back as the arrow continued driving itself into the target. Plaque. This phenomenon persisted for a couple of seconds, before the arrow slowly lost its momentum and eventually dropped to the ground. Shortly after, the target returned to its original position almost as if it had never stretched. Ding. Seconds after the arrow fell on the ground, Amanda felt a small vibration on her wrist. Turning her wrist and glancing at her watch, Amanda looked at the data displayed on the screen. Shot power, 150 kilograms. Shot accuracy, 89%. Penetrative power, 15 centimeters. Points, 9. After staring at her watch for a couple of seconds, closing her eyes, Amanda bit her lips. Compared to last week, her values considerably dropped. Ever since the tryouts, Amanda felt her confidence drop, resulting in her performance dropping alongside her confidence. It was only after what had happened in the tryouts that Amanda finally realized how complacent and arrogant she had become. She was still too immature. She knew very well that she could have handled the situation better. Knowing beforehand that she was going to get ambushed, she could have come up with countermeasures so that she could quickly distance herself from her opponents and take control of the situation. To make matters worse, she had clearly underestimated her opponents. Just the way her two opponents were working together to take her down finally made her realize that this was not the top human academy in the human domain without a reason. Just because they were not famous or their rank was low did not mean that they were weak. In fact, they were strong. Compared to a large majority of the other teenagers in the world, they were the top of the top. People that stood out from the mass. This critical flaw in her thoughts had almost caused her team the loss. Had it not been for Ren saving her on time, Amanda could already envision her team losing. Thinking thus far, pursing her lips tightly, walking back towards the archery section, Amanda once again prepared to train. However, just as she was about to once again resume her practice session, out of nowhere, a crisp and pleasant voice entered her ears. "Amanda, you are training here today?" Turning her head towards the direction of where the voice came from, Amanda soon spotted Emma walking in her direction. Wearing tight black sportswear with pink stripes on the side, with a hairband in her mouth and her hands on her hair, Emma slowly approached Amanda. As she moved closer, successfully tying her hair in a ponytail, Emma curiously looked at Amanda as she said, "Cannot focus?" Nodding her head, Amanda pulled the string of her bow back. Thereafter, unconcerned by Emma's presence, Amanda released the string of the bow, and the arrow once again coursed through the air as it made its way towards the target in the distance. Swoosh. Unbothered by Amanda's lack of response, taking out her two broadswords, Emma loosened her neck. Staring at Amanda before her for a couple of seconds, after hesitating for a second, Emma sighed as she spoke her mind. I feel the same. Ever since the tryouts, I cannot seem to focus anymore. It feels as if my confidence has dropped significantly. No matter what I do, I am always reminded of what happened in the tryouts, especially after recalling Kevin's figure fighting against 3 students by himself. For the first time in a while, I truly realized the gap between me and him. Pausing for a second, Emma bit her lips and stared at the ground beneath her. After a short pause, she continued speaking. The more she spoke, the more emotional Emma became. I do not like it. I do not like the feeling of being helpless and a burden for my team. I really dislike that feeling of just watching someone else do all the work for me while I sit back and take care of the scraps. Abruptly stopping mid-sentence, Emma apologetically looked at Amanda as she said, sorry. I did not mean to waste your time with my rumbling. I just wanted to let you know how I felt. Perhaps I really needed someone to vent my frustration on, but somehow I feel a lot better. Thank you." Smiling more cheerfully, Emma brushed her ponytail to the side. Staring at Amanda, who remained quiet throughout the whole time, Emma softly said, "I wonder if you went through a similar situation as mine." As Emma's words left her mouth, silence befell the area yet again. Waiting for her reply, Emma faced Amanda with a determined face. After a brief moment of silence, noticing the determination in Emma's voice, Amanda eventually nodded her head. "Yes." Hearing Amanda's reply, a look of relief appeared on Emma's face as her lips curved slightly. "I see. I am not alone." It seems like she was not the only one that felt that way. After the tryouts, Emma felt her confidence drop dramatically. Recalling how useless she felt as she just watched Kevin do all the work, Emma's grip on her short swords increased. She really hated that feeling. The feeling of being unable to do anything. Moving away from Amanda and taking a stance, Emma slowly exhaled. Thereafter, she slowly swung her right arm. As she swung, the air split apart. Subsequently, following the first swing, swinging her left hand, Emma moved around the training grounds almost as if she was dancing. With every step she took, the tip of her short sword would constantly dance and cut through the air around her, creating a truly spectacular yet deadly sight. Swoosh, swoosh. Thus, for the next hour or so, the sound of her short sword splitting the air resounded across the training ground. Next to her, similar sounds could be heard from Amanda's side, as she continuously shot her arrows towards the targets in the distance. In the end, apart from the sound of the air splitting, no other sound could be heard in the training grounds that were currently occupied by the two girls. As they practiced, though the duo said nothing, sweat dripped down the two girls' faces as they trained without stop. Though the girls said nothing, they both shared the same sentiment. They wanted to be stronger. Chapter 149. Congratulations, student rank 197, Rendover. You have been selected as a candidate for the Inter Academy tournament. Read more. Turning on my phone and staring at the notification that had appeared on my screen since yesterday, a faint smile appeared on my lips. I did not fail. I had successfully passed the tryouts like I had promised Donna. Attention. Snapping me out of my thoughts was a loud and hoarse voice. Placing my phone back in my dimensional storage, I stared in front of me where a large field appeared in my sight. With my back straight and standing next to a row of about 30 students wearing thin exercise clothing, under the cool morning breeze, a rather imposing man stood in front of me. Briefly staring at everyone before him, the man walked back and forth. As he moved, as though the wind was blowing, each of his steps caused a thin undulation of magic power to sweep the area he was walking on. This was purposely done by him to look more intimidating to the students before him. Walking back and forth a couple more times, after he made sure everyone's attention was gathered towards himself, the instructor finally started speaking. As most of you have been notified yesterday night, congratulations to you all for making it past the tryouts. You have successfully impressed us and thus are now eligible for participating in the Inter Academy tournament. Pausing and staring at a couple of students, the instructor continued speaking. For some, this may not be the only time you will be participating in the tournament, as you may as well be able to enter to next year's edition. However, for some others, this may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. An opportunity to drastically change your life and actually accomplish something whilst you are here in the academy. Halting his steps and imposingly looking at every single student before him, the instructor introduced himself. My name is August Bartolomeu, and I will be the guest instructor in charge of you all. Is that really him? W.A. Who would have thought that he was the one in charge? As soon as the instructor finished introducing himself, some of the students besides me could not help themselves and started whispering. Thereafter, like a chain reaction, all of the other students followed suit and whispered amongst each other. Standing with my back straight and staring at the large field before me, I kept my back straight and did not utter a word. In all honesty, the students' reaction was understandable. August Bartolomeu, an unranked S-ranked hero, who could very well enter the ranks if he tried. He had many accomplishments under his name and killed many demons back when he was fighting in the front lines. He was one of the few unranked heroes whose name was known by most people in the human domain. The Black Ogre was what they nicknamed him, known for ripping his opponents in half with just his bare hands. His relatively short hair spiked upwards, and he had a well-trimmed beard that extended all the way down to half of his neck. The feeling I got as I stared at him from the distance was that of a huge unmovable mountain. A monster, if I would say. Looking around the training grounds with his sharp eyes, the S-ranked hero August Bartholomew murmured quietly, "These bastards not paying me enough for this shit." It was so subtle that only a few people could hear it. Even then, those who heard it did not say a thing. That was due to instructor August being infamous for his short temper. The reason as to why I kept my back straight and did not say a thing was also because of this. Fortunately, the professor seemed to be in a good mood today, as no one was punished for interrupting him. Ignoring the students' whispers, pointing towards the large field before us, Instructor August started ordering us. "All right, your first task is to run around the field for 5 laps. Quickly get moving." Staring at each other, the students did not move immediately. They were confused. According to what they were told today, was only an introductory class. After a couple of seconds, and seeing that no one was moving, raising his voice, Instructor August stared at everyone before clapping multiple times. Each time he clapped, a small shockwave swept everyone's faces, startling them. Raising his voice, he shouted, "Hurry up, when I say do something you do it. You know what, I have changed my mind. You guys are running 6 laps now. Go, go, go." I take whatever I said back. It seems like he was not in a good mood. Like a swarm of bees, most of the students present instantly sprinted towards the field and ran like there was no tomorrow. Shaking my head as I watched the students run, I did not mindlessly sprint like some of them. I kept at my own pace. Although this resulted in me being behind others, I was not concerned. These idiots probably forgot that this was only a warm-up. "Hey Ren." As I was jogging, feeling a light tap on my shoulder, I turned around and found Kevin jogging next to me. Raising my hand to stop Kevin from speaking, increasing my speed, I distanced myself from him as I said, "Nope, I do not know you, nor am I interested in knowing whoever you are." Confused, Kevin increased his speed and once again caught up to me. "What are you?" Before Kevin could finish speaking, I quickly increased my pace once again. Nope. Though my reaction seemed unreasonable, I was in fact purposely avoiding him. Right now, Kevin's fame was at an all-time high. At the moment, he was so famous that there was not anyone in the academy that did not know of his name, especially since his exploits in the tryouts were seen by almost everyone. With how widespread Kevin's name was right now, interacting with him publicly was definitely not going to do me any good, especially considering the fact that blood supremacy was after him. Kevin was literally a walking contradiction of their beliefs. If they assumed I was his friend, high chance I could get swept in a ridiculous situation that I was not too keen on participating in. Shaking his head, Kevin kept matching my pace as he spoke. "It is regarding our trip to you-know-what." Glancing behind me, slowing down my pace, I smiled brightly as I looked at Kevin. "Ah, is that you, Kevin? Where have you been?" "Been a while." Scrap what I had just said. Interacting with him a little bit should not really be a problem, no. Speechless, Kevin did not know what to say. However, used to Ren's erratic behavior, Kevin eventually relented and asked, "I just wanted to know when we are going on our vacation, as I need to make preparations starting tomorrow." Just in case someone overheard our conversation, as we spoke we kept it as vague as possible. We also made sure to use vacation whenever we referred to Imura. Glancing towards my left and right to see if anyone was paying attention, after a bit of thought, I softly said, "In 2 months' time. We will be going on vacation in about 2 months' time." There was a reason why I had said 2 months. Currently, the situation in Glaxicus was not too bad. Although my intervention a month back had delayed the inevitable, according to my estimation the guild would be taken over in about 7 months. That is about how much time I had to look for the cure for the curse. Honestly, the time was too short. The reason why I delayed it for so long was because I simply was not ready. Considering how dangerous the place was, I was far too weak to enter that place. Especially considering my current abilities, I was far from being strong enough to enter that place. I needed these 2 extra months to increase my strength as much as possible. The stronger I was, the higher the chance of success. And the first step towards that was my private training sessions with Donna, which would start tomorrow. If I said I was not nervous, that would be a lie. I was actually quite excited at the prospect of having someone help me get a better understanding of how Sun worked, as well as help me improve the mastery of my arts. Since I could no longer increase my rank as fast, the only way I could get stronger was through increasing the mastery of my sword arts. Thus why I could not wait for tomorrow. Placing his hand on his chin as he jogged, Kevin nodded his head. 2 months, I understand. Kevin, wait for me. As Kevin and I were conversing, calling Kevin's name from behind was Emma. However, just as she caught up with Kevin, as soon as she spotted me, I heard the sound of her tongue clicking as she softly mumbled, "Tisk, it is this fucker." Shaking my head as I glanced at her from the corner of my eyes, I briefly said, "I heard that." "Oh, you did. I am sorry, was not on purpose." "Is that so? Good for you." Staring at Emma, I smiled and proceeded to ignore her. I was not sure why, but ever since the train ride back from the Northern District, Emma had some sort of vendetta against me. Well, I did not really care, if I had to be honest. As long as it did not implicate me directly, she could hate me as much as she wanted for all I cared. Alright, Kevin, tell me more later. Alright. Increasing my pace, I quickly distanced myself from Emma and Kevin. Staring at my departing figure in the distance, jogging next to Kevin, Emma curiously looked at him as she asked, "What were you guys talking about?" After a short pause, Kevin glanced at Emma and responded, "Nothing much, we were just planning on going on a trip in the near future." Taken aback by the response, Emma suspiciously looked at Kevin as she asked, "A trip? Since when have you and that guy become so close?" "It just happened. You guys are suspicious. We just had matching interests." As they were talking, trying to switch the topic, Kevin stared at Emma and asked, "Why do you hate him so much?" He had been wondering this for a while now. Whenever he saw Emma interact with Ren, he would always see her glaring at him. Though Ren did not seem to care, Kevin was really curious as to what happened between the two of them. What caused her to hate him so much? Was it perhaps because of what happened to Jin back in Hallberg? Hearing the question, Emma froze for a split second. Thereafter her brows involuntarily knit as she murmured, "Why? Because he ignored me," was what Emma wanted to say, but as she looked at Kevin's red eyes that seemed to be able to see through her, Emma could not find any words to say. Looking back at it now, Ren did not really do anything to make her hate him. In fact, although he had only ignored her, she would have been a hypocrite to be angry just for that. Thinking back at her past behavior, Emma realized that she had no right to complain. Having done a similar thing to many other people before, she would look like a total hypocrite if she said that. As she thought that far, Emma realized how immature she still was. I guess it all stemmed down to her pride being hurt. Thinking thus far, Emma stared at the blue sky in the distance. Just cause. In the end, those were the only words that came out of Emma's mouth. Chapter 150. Huff. Huff. The sound of heavy panting resounded across the training field as students could be seen sprawled on the ground with deadpan eyes. Apart from a few students, Kevin being one of them, almost everyone was on the ground on the verge of passing out. I too was one of those people. Though I was not as tired as some of the students on the ground, and I could have remained standing like Kevin, I did not see the need of doing so. I did not need the ego boost. Without saying a word and glancing at the watch on his wrist, Instructor August glanced at the students before him. As he stared at the students, his eyes briefly paused on the few students that remained standing before clearing his throat and coldly saying, "All right, this is enough for today. You may go back." Thereafter, turning around, he directly left the field without saying another word. His reaction, or lack of reaction, was something I had expected beforehand, as Instructor August was a pragmatic and busy man. He was the type of man that set a clear boundary between work and private life. Therefore, as soon as he finished instructing the students, he acted as if he did not know anybody here. Plamp, plamp. Staring at Instructor August's departing figure, the students around me all sighed in relief as the ones that remained standing dropped on the ground as their chests rose and fell. It was evident that they had remained standing with the sole purpose of impressing Instructor August. I am beat. I want to go back and rest. I cannot even feel my legs anymore. What is it with this Spartan-like training? Hearing their complaints, I sort of sympathized with them. What we went through for the past 2 hours could only be described as hellish. After running for 5 laps, we were made to do a CrossFit-like workout where we would alternate between stations every given set amount of time. Let us set aside the fact that the weight that we used weighed over 100 kilograms. What was worse was the fact that we trained every single muscle in the body. Nothing was missing. From the upper body to the lower body, every single muscle. Thinking thus far, I could already envision the nightmare I would wake up to tomorrow. Just the thought made me shudder. Qualm. After a couple of minutes, yawning out loud and regaining some of my energy, I weakly stood up and headed back towards my dorm room. Most of the students around me had already left a couple of minutes ago, and thus I was one of the only people left on the field. Nodding towards Kevin, who was one of the people that were still on the field, I decided to head back to my dorm. It was probably best if I took a quick shower before heading to bed. Considering that I had to wake up early in the morning to train with Donna, the most sensible thing to do at the moment was to go to sleep early. Ring, ring. As I was headed back towards my dorm, feeling my phone vibrating, I took out my phone and looked at the caller identification. Confirming that it was someone I knew, I swiped right and quickly answered the call. "Hello?" Answering the phone was Small Snake's distressed voice. "Ren, we have a situation." Frowning slightly, I cautiously asked, "Small Snake? What happened?" What could have possibly happened? For Small Snake to sound so distressed, something big must have happened. "It is about Angelica." "Angelica? What did she do?" Taken aback, I suddenly recalled the fact that she was staying in the headquarters with Small Snake. Was she perhaps threatening him? Thinking back, this could be a possibility, as Angelica only listened to me. After a short pause, Small Snake responded, "Nothing yet, but things are quickly getting out of control. She is constantly throwing a tantrum about wanting, hey, Don, hey." Just as Small Snake was speaking, I suddenly heard his voice cut off as the sound of a light scuffle echoed from the speaker of my phone. Frowning, I called for Small Snake. "Small Snake? Small Snake, you there? Small Snake, can you hear me?" After a couple of seconds of fruitless calling, just as I was expecting the worst, a pleasant and crisp voice resounded from the speaker of my phone. "Human, I am bored. Bring me out. I do not want to stay in this cramped space anymore." Recognizing the voice as Angelica's, I quickly asked, "Angelica, what is going on? Did you not hear me, human? This matriarch wants to get out." Staying in this place for such a long time is stifling for someone like me. I demand you come back and bring me out of this place. Sigh. Hearing Angelica's demands, an extended sigh escaped from my mouth. Thereafter, shaking my head, I softly responded, "All right, please hold out until this weekend comes and I will figure something out. Is that okay?" After a short pause, Angelica softly said, "Fine. This matriarch shall wait." "You are no longer a matriarch," was what I wanted to say as soon as she referred to herself as this matriarch. However, I held my tongue and tried to appease her as much as possible. Arguing with her was not worth it at the moment. "Angelica, please pass me small snake." "All right, stick like human. This matriarch is done. Take this thing back." "Ren, hello? Did you figure things out?" Ignoring the hilarious nickname Angelica used to call Small Snake, I once again heard Small Snake's voice on the other end of the phone. Trying my best to hold my laughter back, I calmly responded, "Yeah, I will make time this weekend, so please wait until then." "Can you wait for me then? Can you not come faster? Also, what are those sounds you are ma?" Clank. Before Small Snake could finish speaking, I hung up the phone. There was no need for me to listen to what he wanted to say. Unfortunately, I could not come back sooner, especially since I now had private training with Donna. Thinking thus far, staring at the darkening sky, I softly muttered, "Sorry Small Snake, you are on your own until the weekend comes." The next morning, Section B, 6 Anti-Mary DM. "Here, you may enter." Showing my identification card to one of the guards patrolling the area of Section B, I quickly entered the building and took an elevator to the bottom floor. It was already the next day, and although my muscles were sore, I was still somehow relatively okay. The reason probably being the fact that I was excited about the training session that I was about to have with Donna. Beauty aside, she was a ranked hero, one of the strongest people in the human domain. The fact that I was being privately tutored by her was enough to make anyone jealous, be it student or even instructor. Everyone would drool at the chance of being taught by her. Ding. As I arrived at the bottom floor of the main building of Section B, I was greeted by a training ground that was almost entirely white and was the same size as a football field. Entering the training ground, I fell into deep thought. While I was not too sure of what arrangements Donna had in store for me with regards to training, I was certain that it would focus along the lines of combat and scene control. This worked in favor of me as better scene control was what I needed in order to improve my arts. As long as I could improve my strength further, I was going to be satisfied, especially considering the fact that my rank was not going to increase anytime soon. "You are already here?" With her hair tied in a ponytail and wearing a dark blue sports bra and tight black leggings, Donna nonchalantly entered the training grounds. Staring at Donna for a brief moment, I lowered my head and greeted her. "Good morning." Nodding her head faintly, Donna proceeded to walk towards the center of the training ground. Thereafter, doing a couple of stretches, Donna glanced at me and started speaking. "Student Ren Dover, you will undergo daily combat and scene control sessions from today onwards. Since on Wednesdays and Fridays your lectures start at 12 post-meridium, twice a week for 4 hours a day at this time, I will train you." Taking something out from thin air, Donna proceeded to throw an object resembling a suit in my direction. "Put it on." Heeding her order, I quickly wore the suit on the clothes I had on. As soon as I put the suit on, Donna disappeared from where she was standing. Subsequently, launching a vicious kick towards my solar plexus, Donna's figure reappeared before me. Bang. Coup. Too fast. Caught off guard, and because of how fast the attack was, I was unable to react on time, causing me to groan out loud as I felt a couple of my ribs crack a little. Staggering back and clutching onto my chest, I started coughing. Cough. Cough. Damn, that hurts. As expected of a ranked hero, just a simple kick and I was already on the verge of passing out from the pain. The power she exerted in that kick felt as if an elephant had run at me at full speed. Heavy. Moreover, her speed. Let us not talk about her speed. Although she was obviously not going all out, she was still several times faster than Jin, whom I thought was fast. 30 seconds of rest. Glancing at her watch, Donna blandly stated, "Gulp, gulp." Gritting my teeth and taking out a potion, I quickly downed it and felt my cracked ribs quickly heal. Thereafter, taking a stance, I stared at Donna intently. This time she was not going to catch me off guard like before. Naive. However, before I could react, appearing next to my ears and lightly whispering, I suddenly felt my body fly towards the other side of the room. Bang. Coup. Feeling my back become numb due to my body impacting against the wall, it took me a couple of seconds to recover from my daze. Looking up, I soon found Donna's violet eyes deeply staring at me from above. "It is clear that you lack battle experience. You are not using all of your senses. Don't just rely on what you see in front of you and actually use your other senses. You rely too much on your sight, and that is why you fell for the illusion I had set." Listening to Donna's explanation, weakly standing up, I proceeded to nod my head. I see. What she said made sense. As I relied too much on my eyesight, I created a fatal weakness for myself. Just a simple illusion, and I was already a goner. Had Donna not pointed this out to me today, I would never have learned of this. Gulp, gulp. Taking out and flicking the lid of a potion open, I quickly downed it and proceeded to heal my injuries. Taking a stance, I stared intently at where Donna was. This time, rather than just staring at her, I also made sure to keep my ears alert. Combat training was tough but straightforward. After Donna explained what I needed to do, no words were exchanged between me and her. I instantly understood her intentions. "Let us go again." Faintly smiling, Donna nodded her head in approval. Good. Bang. Thus, for the next 2 hours or so, Donna ruthlessly beat me up like a sandbag. At the end of the 2 hours we had set beforehand, I was completely exhausted and covered in bruises. My face was beaten black and blue, and if not for the healing potions that Donna provided me every 10 minutes or so, I would have long passed out. Looking back at it now, Donna's training was several times harder than that of August. In comparison, his training sounded like paradise to me at the moment. Instructor August, I miss you. Staring at Donna, who had her arms crossed and stood in the middle of the training grounds without a single drop of sweat dripping from her face, I could not help but wonder as I weakly stood up. Does she perhaps have a grudge against me? As she beat me up, I could not help but notice the fact that Donna had a faint smile throughout the whole time. Did she love beating me up that much? Seemingly unbothered by my situation, glancing at her watch, Donna softly said, "All right, take a 5-minute breather, and we will soon start scene control training for the remaining hours we have left." To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update as soon as possible. See you then.